He was a summoned beast despised by everyone. But the moment he appeared, our protagonist embraced him with joy and kissed him with fervor. His robust classmates began to mock him as if he were a complete fool, and even the director, who once had high hopes for him, now regretted his training. The young man simply smiled without saying a word, and instead, he sold all his possessions to buy 50 kilos of lean monster meat. To activate the hidden talent within the puppy, he gently touched its little head, and a contract notification echoed in his mind. Loyalty, he will never betray you. Do you wish to establish the destiny connection? Immediately after, he made his choice and clicked yes with absolute decision. In the midst of a soul-shattering pain, he let out a cry and collapsed onto the ground. All the classmates standing around assumed he simply couldn't handle the blow of his failure. As the mocking continued, his ex-girlfriend, Lu Rian, approached him and spoke with a hint of an apology. She told him she was sorry, but the college entrance exam was the only real opportunity they had. It was the only way for ordinary families like theirs to finally climb the social ladder. She explained that a spear knight had already agreed to team up with her, so she wouldn't be staying by his side. He stood up and gave a light, simple response, which seemed to catch her off guard. The explanation she had prepared died in her throat, replaced by a cold snort and the sting of feeling undervalued. Then, without a shred of mercy, she turned on her heel and prepared to leave him behind. The girl standing next to her watched him with a look of pure disgust. She insisted that Rian had done nothing wrong and that he was surely just acting out of jealousy. She wondered why anyone would be so humble for a man who could only summon a tiny black dog. In her eyes, he didn't deserve her, but he wasn't paying the slightest bit of attention to either of them. Because after completing the destiny connection, he discovered that the little puppy had finally awakened. An SSS-level talent, gluttony. It allows the creature to convert all ingested food into energy, growing without any restrictions whatsoever. To break all bonds and evolve. It seems that all his recent suffering hasn't been in vain after all. In this world, many have been affected by disaster, but very few ever awaken an SSS-level talent. Why? Because they are truly rare. In fact, they can be counted on one hand, and whenever a new one appears, the country provides them with absolute protection. The reason for this, naturally, is that they are simply too powerful to be left to their own devices. We see him pick up the little black dog and pull it close to him with newfound affection. From this moment on, he decides that the creature's name will be Imeen. He tells the pup it will have to work hard for him, and Imeen responds by licking him affectionately. With a look of pure joy, he tosses the dog a meat chop, and it doesn't take long for the pup to devour it all. A notification appears. Evolution value increased by 0.5 just for devouring ordinary meat. As the sound echoes, Imeen's body seems to grow just a tiny bit, almost imperceptibly, but it's there. Every single one of the creature's basic statistics increases by a point in an instant. And to think, this was achieved just by eating a single piece of ordinary meat. Imagine the possibilities if, later on, the creature is able to devour even more substantial food. What terrifying level would it reach? Just thinking about it makes his heart beat with relentless excitement. What is even more surprising is that his own spiritual power seems to increase slightly at that very moment. It appears the system allows a portion of the energy obtained by the summoned beast to flow back into him. Immediately after this discovery, he spends over 6,000 credits without a second thought. He buys 50 kilos of cheap lean meat and, with a slight movement of his mind, summons Imeen once more. Seeing the pile of red meat before him, Imeen feels a powerful desire to devour it rising from deep within. Immediately, the creature opened its mouth and began to bite, frantically transforming its entire body and improving in every aspect. After half an hour, Imeen's body had already grown to over 2 meters, and all of his own statistics had increased by 10 points. Compared to any other class, this progress is truly exceptional. To be honest, it's almost unheard of. Imeen's almost cheat-like way of becoming stronger allows him to quickly close the gap with everyone else. Thinking about this, he didn't hesitate for a second longer and clicked the system's evolution button. At the moment of confirmation, the terrifying talent deep within Imeen trembled, and a special black evolutionary force suddenly erupted. Cellular division, gene reorganization. We watch as life itself advances toward a much higher level. A notification appears. Congratulations, your summoned beast Imeen has obtained a new ability. The skill is tier. Furthermore, Imeen has awakened a new talent called Berserker, which significantly increases his vital speed. It increases his body size threefold, boosting strength and defense by 300%, though his speed decreases by half. With this evolution, every single one of Imeen's statistics has surpassed 50 points. And this is only at level 1. Even the very best summoned beasts cannot hope to match him. We should note that the human race divides summoned beasts into 4 distinct levels in total. The first is high level, where the primary standard for evaluation is the creature's inherent talent. S rank is considered high, while SS rank is seen as superior. As for summoned beasts reaching SSS level talent, well, they have never actually appeared until now. Afterward, he took Imeen home to sleep, preparing to see what kind of monsters and demons would await at tomorrow's college entrance exam. The next day, we see countless people participating in the entrance exam gathering together in the main square. The professor is explaining in great detail certain points that must be kept in mind when entering the instance. This time, the entrance exam will bring together students from several top-tier high schools, making the competition fiercer than ever. The level of competition is reaching its absolute peak. The level of competition, it is almost at its maximum. The level of this competition is reaching its absolute peak. The level of competition is reaching its absolute peak. The level of competition is reaching its absolute peak. The level of competition is reaching its absolute peak. The level of competition is reaching its absolute peak. The level of competition is reaching its absolute peak. The level of competition is reaching its absolute peak. He headed toward the heart of the forest, and just then, accompanied by a faint, inexplicable cry, small, ugly creatures with green skin appeared. He recognized them immediately as goblins. Textbooks describe them as fierce and obsessed with reproduction, and in the absence of food, they will even resort to cannibalism. By a rough estimate, there must be between 50 and 60. With such numbers, if they were to rush him, survival would be nearly impossible, so he immediately called out. Deep within Min's heart, a white light suddenly appeared. Shooting out like a cannonball, it instantly crushed the skull of the goblin running in front. The remaining force didn't diminish, sending the creature flying backward into the others. The goblins to the left and right screamed, raising their weapons to strike with all their might. But sharp bone fragments hit Min's back with an unpleasant cracking sound as he was blown back repeatedly. He struck a goblin's head with a claw, causing its brain to explode instantly. Abandoning all defense, he killed frantically, as if he were in a deserted land. Even these low-intelligence goblins felt a deep, instinctive fear, stopping their attack to flee in terror. But once they arrived, he had no intention of letting them leave. He pointed out the direction of the pursuit to Min, while he himself moved to kill the nearest goblin. Witnessing this brutal scene, the world outside fell into an uproar. People cursed in disbelief, wondering how their school could have such a fierce senior. Even if his summons were strong, having such high combat power himself felt like cheating. In the observation seats of the second school, a group of younger students looked on with excitement. 10 minutes ago, everyone assumed he would be eliminated by the goblins. However, we see him and his beast slaughtering the entire group. Seeing this, Li Min's expression filled with joy, realizing he had reached this point so quickly. He clearly has at least a B-level talent or a growth type. That potential is nearly as good as an advanced summon, giving the school a true genius to represent them. He immediately asked the person behind him how many points Chung Lin had. According to the registrar's calculations, his current score sat at 560 points. They feared being the first in the second school, but Su Liju from the third school was even more terrifying, with 830 points leading the entire field. Hearing this, Li Min and the other teachers took a sharp breath. Less than 20 minutes had passed since they entered the dungeon, which was an incredible pace. This performance was even qualified to compete for the top spot in the entire province. Inside the dungeon, rays of light emerged from the goblins, merging into him as his level rose. He quickly reached level 2, and though he felt a strange red rift growing within him, he relied on Black Name's feedback to stabilize himself. Although his score had already reached the passing limit for the Academy's land district, his goals were far more ambitious than that. Meanwhile, Black Name was busy. The creature crunched as it devoured the goblin corpses. He urged Black Name forward, knowing the hunt was just beginning since goblins are social monsters with nearby nests. About 10 minutes passed on the road without encountering a single monster, which only confirmed his suspicions about the nature of this unique secret realm. It functioned like a living world where things didn't just reset, but operated according to natural laws. Suddenly, several spears made of bone were hurled from the air. Goblins emerged from all directions, screaming and brandishing weapons as they charged. His face showed no fear as his staff began to transform. A blade instantly decapitates a goblin. He moves like an unstoppable berserker, focusing his entire attention on rapidly massacring this group of fragile creatures. Every time he dodges, his blade takes a life with surgical precision. In this moment, he is like a butterfly dancing in the wind, though its wings are scythes of death. This battle, as elegant as a work of art, thrills the outside world. The teachers and students of the second high school are stunned by his refined technique. His swordsmanship is even more impressive, accurately cutting throats every time. If he strayed even slightly, he wouldn't be able to kill so efficiently. No one can look away for even a moment. Nearby, Lu Guan's mouth twitches, remembering that in 3 years of high school, he never once saw the boy touch a sword. He was simply too good at hiding his skills, perhaps a bit too good, but things are about to get difficult as 13 level 6 rabid goblins appear. Among them are iron-skinned goblins and fire goblins, creating a chaotic mix of elemental threats that would challenge even the most seasoned veteran. The situation shifts rapidly as the instructors watch the diagrams, realizing the sheer scale of the challenge the young man now faces. Some of the onlookers begin to recognize his talent, sensing the raw energy he channels as the night deepens and the stakes continue to rise. Despite the mental strain, he refuses to fail, having studied every instinct and subsidiary effect of this geological and magical environment. He grabs a goblin by the neck and hurls it toward an approaching fireball. The dazzling flame explodes, engulfing the creature as he transforms into a human launcher. He continues throwing goblins like projectiles, smashing them into the fire mages. The students watching from outside are absolutely speechless at such a creative strategy. Even tutor Lu Guin is dumbfounded, as he certainly didn't teach this particular method of attack. Meanwhile, Cheng Lin beats a fire goblin into a daze. The monsters are trapped in a dilemma. If they cast a spell, they hit their allies. If they don't, they die. Soon, Black Name arrives to finish the job. Of the 100 goblins, only a few remain to flee in terror. However, he doesn't kill them yet, choosing to follow them slowly to find their nest. Chasing the survivors into a cave, several slender, greenish figures suddenly leap from the rock walls. He tightens his grip, ready for the ambush. The sword hidden in his staff strikes out firmly, separating a goblin's head from its body. The other two are quickly caught by Black Name's night vision. With a sickening crunch, the beast devours them. Suddenly, countless lights flicker at the corner of the passage, and his expression shifts as he retreats. Innumerable grotesque figures cover the rock wall. With a solemn expression, he calls out to Black Name, who begins to grow in size to meet the threat. With explosive speed, the beast charges forward against the airborne goblins, knocking them aside to the left and right with sheer, brutal force. Black Name strikes with his massive claws, crushing them directly until their bodies explode, leaving the area covered in blood and flesh. Just then, a brutal, deafening noise erupts. Imagine the scene: fists and palms covered in dense, sticky hair, muscles swelling as a monstrous, terrifying beast as tall as a small building slowly emerges. It walks forward, glaring furiously at Black Name. The young man's face darkens as he realizes this is the boss. The giant takes a step forward with both legs. It begins to charge, causing the cave to echo with every step as the ground trembles. Black Name, showing no fear at all, meets the creature head-on. Black Name's sharp claws gleam with a dark light, striking the giant first and leaving 4 superficial wounds. Feeling the pain, the giant instantly becomes even more savage. With 2 hands a meter wide, it grabs Black Name's head and slams him down hard. Black Name's limbs go weak as the corner of his mouth is struck. He spits blood and howls. Seeing Black Name suppressed, the young man quickly uses his class skill, Reinforcement, providing a total 20% increase to all basic attributes. Fine rays of white light shine upon Black Name, who instantly knocks the ogre back and bites off a chunk of flesh. The ogre's eyes turn a deep, vengeful red. The beast activates a visual skill, and the two become entangled, fighting with increasing frenzy. While maintaining the reinforcement, the young man also uses recovery. The sounds of the struggle echo for hundreds of meters. Nearby students are shocked, knowing the bosses of the buried forest are at least level 12. A small team of 3 rushes toward the noise, hoping to help and perhaps claim a share of the loot, but when they finally arrive at the scene, they are left completely stunned, because it isn't a team fighting the boss at all, it is only him. At that precise moment, he uses the sword in his hand to deliver the final, decisive blow. We watch as the health points above the ogre's head begin to rapidly dwindle. They drop from 1 to 0. During the entire process, not a single student nearby dares to intervene. Zhao Huiyin and Lu Rian are also among the crowd, both of them staring forward in utter disbelief. To think this little wolf had transformed so much in a single day. Just then, another group of 4 people approaches. It is Zhao Huiyin, from the Star Department, who steps forward to address him. He opens his mouth with a smile, admitting he never expected their school to have someone quite as fierce as him. He notes that Zhao Huiyin's injuries look quite serious, and asks if he needs any help with healing. He introduces one of his teammates, a priest with abundant healing powers, but as soon as he finishes speaking, Zhao Huiyin is kicked by the adorable girl behind him. The young man looks at the other group and simply smiles, telling them that such help won't be necessary. He offers his thanks, and while the other group is ready to leave after hearing this, they unexpectedly catch a glimpse of something. It is the score line in the young man's hand, and seeing it, Zhao Huiyin lets out a curse of pure shock. He can hardly contain himself, and just at that moment, Lu Rian approaches with her cheeks flushed red. She seems to have fallen right back into her own world of affection and tenderness. After that, we return to the cave, where Black Name continues to devour the remains to grow even stronger. Once all the monsters have been consumed by Black Name, a strange, different kind of energy begins to envelop him. It appears this particular evolution far surpasses anything gained from the beast meat he ate before. One can only wonder what kind of combat power he will possess when he finally emerges, which happens not long after. Sharp claws tear through the cocoon of light, and as Black Name steps out, we see he has grown in size once again. His fur has turned a noble, solemn dark blue, and he has gained new skills like intimidation and fire. Even his talent has leveled up. It is a complete, comprehensive transformation, and now only 1 hour remains before the college entrance exam concludes. The young man takes his seat upon Black Name's back and begins his journey toward the Twisted Tree King. Outside the dungeon, Lamincia watches the monitors, her brow furrowed with constant, growing concern. She knows all too well that the Twisted Tree King, whether in health or raw attack power, is a different league entirely. The boss far exceeds the ogre they just faced, and our protagonist is still only at level 4. To bridge such a massive gap in combat power is a feat rarely seen anywhere in the entire country. Inside the dungeon, the moment he steps onto the muddy ground, trees with blood-red eyes awaken one by one, their massive trunks splitting open. We see them rising from the earth, branches stabbing toward him like spears, but he shows no fear whatsoever. Advancing fiercely, he instantly draws the sword held within his palm. In the blink of an eye, he delivers 5 rapid slashes. His speed is so incredible that an afterimage appears in his wake. The trunk is sliced through instantly and collapses heavily to the ground. His gaze turns cold as he closes the distance in a few quick strides, rushing toward the tree spirit. The sword stabs directly into the creature's exposed leg. A massive hole opens up, and a seemingly endless amount of sap begins to flow out. The tree spirit's health bar empties in an instant, and the creature crumbles. Seeing the tragic death of their companion, the surrounding tree spirits wave their claws and begin to encircle our protagonist. Black Name lets out a furious roar and shatters the tree spirit in front of him with a single swipe of his paw. Then, a jet-black flame erupts from his body, covering him completely. The fire ignites the tree spirit and spreads relentlessly to the others, leaving them screaming frantically. They writhe in terror, yet no matter how much they struggle, they simply cannot extinguish these black flames. The jet-black fire continues to burn through their very lives as they stand side by side. Watching this unfold, even the young man finds himself a bit surprised. He hadn't expected Black Name's flame ability to be quite so overwhelming, bordering on the absurd, really. Quickly, the tree spirits are reduced to nothing but ash beneath that sea of black fire. The jet-black flames then return, receding back into Black Name's body. This flame essentially allows Black Name to skip the tedious step of eating beast meat. He can now simply absorb energy directly and in a very short amount of time. And so, we see that Black Name and the young man both level up at the exact same time. His score shoots up immediately, reaching 7,120 points at this very moment. Suddenly, the ground explodes, and countless golden branches as thick as a man's arm shoot upward instantly. A furious roar echoes from the distance as hundreds of spirits appear, guarding a massive tree king over 100 meters tall. Seeing this, he quietly takes a step back. Even though his basic attributes have now surpassed 50 points. He knows that if he rushes in now, he'll likely meet his end. He's always had a very clear sense of his own limits, after all. A truly powerful enemy must definitely be left for the summoned pet to handle, and that means it's time for Black Name to step up. As he watches them, Black Name's eyes snap open, gleaming with pure ferocity. Jet-black flames erupt across his body as he charges toward the Twisted Tree King in his strongest form, the fire greedily devouring everything in its path. While the tree spirits let out constant howls of pain, the young man takes the opportunity to move in and harvest them, watching as each companion dies a painful death. The new Ku Tree King lets out a long, mocking laugh as countless golden vines lash out at Black Name, who simply ignores the need for defense. He runs frantically, closing the distance toward the main body of the new Ku Tree King. Black Name's sharp claws glint with a dark light as he launches a frenzied attack against the massive creature. As he tears away the bark, the Tree King's face contorts in pain, and all its golden textures pierce through him from every possible angle. However, Black Name relies on his physical defense to trade wound for wound, while the black flames begin to slowly spread upward. The new Ku Tree King is suddenly filled with dread, feeling its very life being devoured bit by bit. Terrified and wanting to escape, the king finds no mercy as Black Name sneers, the black flames instantly binding the creature like a heavy chain. With his target trapped, Black Name's assault becomes even more explosive and devastating. At that moment, Zhao, Yan, and the 4 others who came to help can only stand by and swallow hard. They watch with expressions of pure shock as the level 15, second-tier Tree King is beaten down in such a brutal fashion. Seeing them there, we can tell he was also a little surprised by their presence. Just at that moment, the thunderous sound of a giant object collapsing echoes through the forest. The new Ku Tree King has been defeated. A bright white light rises over him as he levels up, leaving the young girl nearby completely speechless. He reaches level 8, and simultaneously, the score on his recorder shoots up by another 3,000 points. As for the remaining tree spirits, he decides to leave them for the other 4 to finish off. To be honest, these points are proving to be almost too easy to obtain. Meow Sanson can only stare with her mouth slightly agape at the score he managed to rack up in barely 10 minutes. He has already reached the minimum admission standard for the Elite Snow Academy. They can't help but wonder, when have they ever not had to fight for their lives against such monsters? Zhao and Yin simply shake their heads, realizing the deterrent power of the now fully grown Black Name is simply too vast. It seems it no longer matters how they choose to kill these tree spirits. None of the spirits dare to look back, and by now, all the black flames have returned to Black Name's body. In his normal form, Black Name has grown to a height of 7 meters. Our protagonist notes that his own basic attributes have now surpassed 70 points. Having just reached level 10, he realizes he is finally ready for his first promotion. And so, for him, this university entrance exam has effectively come to an end. The dungeon instance begins its mandatory teleportation process. Under the halo of white light, we see countless students returning to the wide plaza. Suddenly, a massive wave of cheers breaks out to welcome them back. As the black flames settle, Black Name stands tall at 7 meters, a sight so intimidating that no one dares to even glance back. Having just reached level 10, he realizes he is finally ready for his first promotion. And so, for him, this university entrance exam has effectively come to an end. The dungeon instance begins its mandatory teleportation process. Under the halo of white light, we see countless students returning to the wide plaza. Suddenly, a massive wave of cheers breaks out to welcome them back. The atmosphere is electric as the crowd celebrates their successful return. At the edge of the plaza, however, Lu Rian's face has turned a bitter shade of blue from regret. An hour earlier, she had abandoned the instance and was subsequently eliminated. Now, her final score isn't even high enough to get her into an elite university. In her mind, it's all his fault. He never told her his summoned creature was so powerful. She tells herself that if she had known, she never would have joined that other team. As she dwells on this, Lu Rian's eyes fill with a deep, simmering resentment. Meanwhile, Linsu finds himself surrounded by the teachers and the principal of middle school number 3. They exchange pleasantries, noting that middle school number 2 was truly lucky to have such a monster. The teachers offer words of comfort, telling Linsu not to feel discouraged by the results. After all, a score of 19,500 is still an impressive achievement. Linsu simply offers a polite smile, indicating that he is doing perfectly fine. Then, with a touch of curiosity, he glances over toward the students of middle school number 2. He reflects on how that creature's growth seems limitless, its combat power becoming more terrifying with every evolution. At this moment, our protagonist is already looking forward to seeing what his next summoned creature will be. After arriving home, he shared the incredible news with his mother and his sister. The reward for graduating first in the province, 100 million Chinese coins, had finally arrived. From now on, his mother and sister would never have to live such a frugal life again. A little later, he returned to his room to prepare for his very first promotion. We learned that this promotion requires clearing a specific instance, assigned entirely at random. Looking at his status panel, he clicked the promotion button without a moment's hesitation. In an instant, he vanished from the room, transported to coordinate number 08694. He finds himself in a world full of holes, teetering on the very edge of total collapse. The spark of humanity in this city is fading fast, and the light of life is about to be extinguished. The system asks if he can bring salvation, offering optional mission 1, eliminate 1,000 disaster beasts. The objective is clear: protect the survivors to the best of his ability. Alternatively, Mission 2 suggests helping the disaster mother beast devour everything and evolve. There are 10 participants in total, and they have a strict time limit of 24 hours. During this time, there is no way to actively return to the Blue Star. Without any warning, he suddenly appeared in the middle of a desolate set of ruins. He frowned slightly at the options, but, without much thought, chose mission number 1. If the mother beast devours everything, his reputation would be ruined. Suddenly, a figure flew through a glass door. A delicate girl fell to the ground as a skinless, blood-covered disaster beast lunged out from the shadows. The girl reached desperately for her sword, but she was too slow, and the fear of death flooded her heart. She raised her hands instinctively, but just then, a flash of a blade severed the monster's head midair. He lost his balance and fell to the ground. Looking at the dazed girl, he introduced himself as Chun Ling, and she replied her name was Lu Yu. Suddenly, an emergency broadcast echoed, ordering a total retreat. Lu Yu's face paled as she grabbed him, desperate to flee before it was too late. Before she could finish, a car came hurtling toward them. He quickly pushed Lu Yu back and braced his staff to meet the massive impact. The blow sent him skidding back over 10 meters. Lu Yu, ignoring her own pain, rushed to his side, her voice trembling as she asked if he was all right. He steadied his breathing and shook his head, his eyes fixed on a two-legged disaster beast covered in grotesque slime, a sword demon. Lu Yu realized they couldn't escape, her fingers tightening around her hilt as the demon began to pick up speed, closing the distance between them. In the next heartbeat, the ground shattered under the beast's power. Lu Yu barely had time to react before Chun Ling lunged forward to meet the threat. He drew the blade from his staff, clashing with the demon's razor-sharp arm in a ring of steel. The beast let out a roar, pivoting with lethal intent. The monster swung at his head, but he blocked it violently. Knowing he needed more power, he shouted for Lu Yu to throw him her sword. Without a moment's hesitation, Lu Yu drew her blade and tossed it to him. With a newfound fire in his eyes, he dared the demon to try again. The sword demon, sensing the provocation, charged instantly. He met the frenzy head-on, dual-wielding blades, and trading dozens of blows in mere seconds. The speed of their exchange was so blinding that afterimages seemed to dance in the air around them. After 1,000 clashes, he finally spotted a flaw, tilting his head just enough to let a fatal strike whistle past his ear. Seizing the opening, he swung the long sword in his left hand upward in a swift, decisive arc. The sharp edge bit deep, instantly severing the sword demon's arm and shifting the tide of the battle. He gave the creature no time to recover, driving his blade straight through its tough hide and into its dark heart. The blade passed completely through its body. Lu Yu, still clutching her injured arm, approached him with a look of deep suspicion. She realized he wasn't from this place. He didn't confirm or deny it, simply asking her for more information about this world. She explained that this was the Hydra Kneading, a place where hope had become a very rare commodity indeed. For an entire month, the people here had endured such relentless torture that many had simply lost their minds. Eventually, they transformed into monsters that knew nothing but slaughter. Now, the Hydra Kneading has changed once again, and it seems even the very hope of the people is being crushed. Even the mountains and rivers themselves will be kneaded and reshaped by this force. Under the influence of the Hydra Kneading, humanity has become something far worse than a mere monster. He wasn't sure how to survive, but after hearing all of this, he finally had a general understanding of this world. Just then, we see more than 10 people appear from around the corner of the road. A vibration, like a bursting torrent, began to approach them with overwhelming force. In the sky above, a massive quantity of the Star Tide's Hydra Kneading loomed, looking truly enormous. Suddenly, terrifying roars began to echo from every direction. Everywhere they looked, disaster beasts were perched upon the buildings, fully exposed. Their scarlet eyes were fixed on everyone below, which, to be honest, is never a good sign. In that moment, the Star Tide formed a literal wall around them. It surrounded the group, closing in steadily and leaving them no room to breathe. Everyone's pace slowed as their legs grew heavy, and a deep sense of despair began to bloom in their hearts. They all swallowed hard, and Lu Yu whispered to Xiaoyu to stay close to her no matter what. After she finished speaking, she looked at Chun Ling, assuming he belonged to some other survivor organization. He didn't particularly care what she thought, and simply began walking straight ahead. She called out for him to wait, asking what he was doing since they were completely surrounded. She told him quite bluntly that this was no time for a single person to try and show off. The corners of his mouth lifted into a slight smile. He clearly had a very different plan in mind. No, he thought to himself. It's actually they who are surrounded by me. He reasoned that if all these disaster beasts were killed, his rating would surely increase rapidly. Black Name. In a flash of white light, Black Name appeared instantly, standing 7 meters tall. A roar echoed through the sky as Black Name's vertical pupils glared coldly at the approaching wave of beasts before he entered his giant form. He suddenly shot up to 28 meters, his body now towering over some of the nearby buildings. We see Black Name's massive limbs exert a sudden, terrifying force. The ground instantly shattered into countless spreading cracks as he launched like a missile toward the crowd of beasts, wreathed in high-temperature heat. The disaster beasts couldn't hold out for even a few seconds. They died in agony, transforming into pure energy. Everyone watching this scene from behind was left utterly stunned, and who could blame them, really? Suddenly, more than 10 disaster beasts launched a coordinated attack against him. Watch out, Lu Yu shouted immediately, seeing the danger and warning him at the top of her lungs. Her feet moved quickly, as she instinctively wanted to rush forward and offer her support. However, in the very next second, her body came to a rigid, trembling halt. Instead of retreating, he actually moved forward to meet the threat head-on. With a sword in each hand, he began carving through them as easily as if he were slicing through melons and vegetables. In the blink of an eye, he had slaughtered every single one of the attacking disaster beasts. Lu Yu stood with her mouth agape. There were no traces of the calamity on him, so she had assumed he would be quite weak. Suddenly, a chilling possibility occurred to Lu Yu as she watched him. Half a year ago, while searching for supplies, she had seen people just as strong who had also not suffered from the calamity. Those were the same people who had utterly destroyed the hidden base of the survivors. They had left the survivors exposed to the disaster beasts, abandoned to be slaughtered without mercy. Even if they saw them trying to flee, they would simply break their legs to stop them. They were a group of inhuman monsters who still had the nerve to claim we were all of the same race. To this very day, Lu Yu has never forgotten those words. She told herself Chen Lin was different from those people. After all, he had already saved her twice. For a moment, it seemed as though he had realized exactly what Lu Yu was thinking. But he hadn't, not really. So Lu Yu took a deep breath, a trace of hatred flickering in her eyes as she hurriedly explained. Regardless, we see a golden-haired young man emerge from the building, clutching a book in his hand. As the young man began to chant, orbs of lightning suddenly flickered into existence right then and there. His expression changed instantly, and he swung his long sword to the side to block an incoming strike. A dagger slammed against the blade as a woman with a delicate face slowly appeared before him, but he didn't hesitate. Seeing her dagger blocked so effortlessly, the delicate woman vanished, reappearing dozens of meters away. Without saying a single word, he pushed off with his feet and launched himself directly at her. Seeing this, the delicate woman was immediately struck by a wave of genuine fear. She wondered why the others weren't attacking yet, and just as the thought crossed her mind, the situation shifted. A furious flame erupted from the building, and the two forces collided with a violent crash. Sparks flew everywhere as the attacker questioned in disbelief if he were truly just a summoner. The burly man standing amidst the flames simply clicked his tongue in annoyance. The scorching heat struck him, but his expression remained indifferent as we see him push the flames back. And then, four people emerged simultaneously from different directions, surrounding him completely. We should note that within reincarnation instances, mutual murder is strictly forbidden. Once discovered, the culprit is hunted down immediately. However, things are quite different in the off-route reincarnation instances, where factional divisions are the norm. The group hadn't expected that someone would actually be bold enough to choose Mission 1. They wondered if his academy had failed to teach him how to make decisions during a reincarnation instance to increase his chances of survival. After all, the advantage held by the disaster beasts is obviously the greatest in this scenario. Anyone with even a shred of common sense should have known which side to choose, or so they thought. Seeing these 6 people treating him like prey caught in a trap, he simply asked them calmly if they had ever heard a certain saying. Elite hunters often present themselves as prey, a dangerous game, to be sure. He had attracted them in such a flashy, conspicuous manner for a very specific reason. How could he not be entirely certain of his ability to deal with them? They had spoken quite boldly just a moment ago, and now, he decided it was time for a bit of payback. He invited them to die, a polite gesture, really, as a cold smile slowly began to spread across his face. The table was set, the dishes were served, and it was finally time for the Black Wolf to feast. A violent, earth-shaking roar suddenly echoed in every direction. Black flames within a range of hundreds of meters began to pour greedily into the body of the Black Wolf. In an instant, its size surged, growing another 8 meters in height. It looked more ferocious and imposing than ever, and everyone present suddenly felt a deep, primal fear chilling their souls. Watching the giant black wolf charging toward them, a shiver ran instantly from the soles of their feet to the tops of their heads. To be honest, their minds were nearly crushed by the sheer weight of that terror. Finally, as the giant wolf's claws were about to strike, only 3 of them managed to regain control over their panicked instincts. They scattered instantly, though the last unfortunate soul didn't even manage to let out a scream. He was torn apart in an instant by the giant black wolf. Watching this scene unfold, the others were immediately drenched in a cold sweat. They had originally thought that delaying the summoned creature would be enough, assuming the summoner's strength was merely equal to their own. But this creature, besides its physical power and terrifying damage, also possessed the ability to control the entire battlefield. Delaying it was no longer the issue. The real challenge was surviving for 3 minutes without being completely annihilated. We see the giant black wolf charging toward its next target without hesitation. What started as a hunt had suddenly transformed into a desperate game of survival. The situation had shifted into a deadly game, a true game of life and death, a game where the stakes were their very lives. How could this even be possible? They simply couldn't fathom it. The golden-haired youth stood there agape, noting that even after he applied his A-rank strengthening talent, the power of the black-named beast surged to yet another level. Seeing this, no one dared to hesitate any longer. They immediately deployed their own desperate means of resistance. The delicate woman transformed into several shadows, attacking him from multiple angles at once. Suddenly, countless weapons appeared above his head, raining down and forcing him to constantly retreat. Then, we see a young woman with long, ice-colored hair slowly approaching the fray. With her feet as the center, the ground began to gradually cover itself in a layer of frost. The disaster beasts that dared to approach were frozen into statues without the slightest surprise. "I'll stop him," the burly man shouted as he unleashed a torrent of furious flames. He lunged forward directly, while the other 3 attacked simultaneously, hoping to end things in seconds. However, just at that moment, a loud shout echoed through the air. "You little brats! Look right at me," he commanded, as his taunt ability was successfully activated. Instantly, the 3 attackers found their heads turning against their will. They glared fiercely at the tall, heavy-set man who stood there holding a massive shield. Then, we see the giant black wolf suddenly reappear on the street. It loomed behind the 3 people who had completely lost their senses to the taunt. In the very next second, those razor-sharp claws sliced through the air. And just like that, the 3 of them were torn apart into pieces. After that, the black-named beast turned and struck a nearby building with its powerful claws. Countless shards of broken stone were sent flying toward the delicate woman. One by one, the jagged stones tore through her clothes and pierced deep into her skin. The black-named beast reached her instantly, raising its claws for a final, crushing blow. Black flames erupted, enveloping her entire body in an instant. On the other side of the battlefield, a sudden current of freezing air exploded outward. Wherever it passed, buildings and living beings alike were rapidly transformed into ice sculptures. The burly man found himself turned directly into a human popsicle, which was likely not his plan. And so, out of the 7 original prey, only one remained standing. Then, everyone turned their gaze toward the golden-haired young man with clear murderous intent. The young man's face turned pale in an instant, and who could blame him, really? After unleashing a desperate rain of lightning, he turned on his heels and bolted. He only managed a few flashes of light, which were all easily dodged before the long sword began to spin. He wondered if he could kill the Calamity Mother Beast. He nodded, knowing that by facing her, Peace Village would reach its maximum level. It seemed this was the only way to give this world even a small glimmer of salvation. Su Lin Shui approached him then. "We meet again, Chung Lin," she said softly. Without even waiting for a response, the tall, heavy-set man opened his mouth in complete shock. "Big brother, are you actually Winterhand?" he asked, his disbelief plain to see. It certainly explained why he was so impressive. After chatting for a while, the bond between the three of them grew much closer. We also learn here that the heavy-set man's name was Luo Xian. He told them both about the preparations to kill the Calamity Mother Beast. They both accepted the idea of confronting her together. The three of them gathered their resolve without a second thought and set off immediately. They headed toward the city center, and before long, our group reached a massive bridge. Suddenly, one by one, the Calamity Beasts began to glow in the shadows. Their red eyes multiplied, frantically flooding the area around them. The black-named beast immediately launched a terrifying display of its raw power. Then it sprinted into the distance, leading a swarm of Calamity Beasts that filled the entire street. Dark black flames exploded nearby, and Chung Lin's face darkened as he realized the situation. "The Calamity Mother Beast has discovered us," he noted, and the real battle was finally about to begin. Su Lin Shui's eyes were suddenly veiled in a chilling, icy blue. Like a silent goddess, sharp cones of spiritual ice materialized around her head in an instant. Guided by her powerful will, the ice shards streaked backward, blocking the advancing swarm of Calamity Beasts. Countless beasts were pierced, falling in rows like harvested wheat, yet more of them quickly flooded in to take their place. It seemed every Calamity Beast in the entire city was converging on their position from every direction. He could feel the pressure mounting. With hundreds of thousands of beasts in the city, even the greatest strength has its limits. He immediately shouted out, knowing they had to strike the leader to break the army's spirit. The black-named beast understood, heading straight for the Calamity Mother Beast to end this once and for all. Upon hearing those words, the black-named beast spun around and sprinted toward the bridge. On the opposite side, a truly dangerous aura began to manifest. It was the Mother Beast herself. As the black-named beast reached the far side, a dark red tentacle miles long appeared. It descended suddenly from the depths of the night sky like a falling mountain. The impact was massive, and the black-named beast was sent crashing through several houses, one after another. He didn't stop tumbling until he was more than 20 li away from the point of impact. The black-named beast let out a thunderous roar, shaking off the thick clouds of dust. He rose steadily from the wreckage, standing amidst countless shards of concrete and gravel. His cold, vertical pupils fixed a steady, unwavering gaze on the Calamity Mother Beast standing before him. She was a terrifying sight, a giant eyeball standing over 60 meters tall. In return, her countless writhing tentacles stared back at the black-named beast with equal malice. The dark black flames of the beast erupted in a torrent as he launched his direct assault. In an instant, his massive body launched forward like a projectile. Accelerating with the force of a jet, the black-named beast tore through the air, leaving the shattered buildings swaying violently in his wake. The giant eyeball's countless tentacles recoiled in unison, letting out a screeching sound like grinding metal. Suddenly, one of the dark red tentacles struck the black-named beast, sending him tumbling backward through the air. The distance he had worked so hard to close was widened once again in a single blow. Previously, he had relied on his tyrannical strength and defense after transforming to suppress his enemies in close combat. But now, faced with the relentless lashing of these tentacles, he found there was simply no way to avoid the onslaught. With a thunderous roar, he let his dark black flames erupt without holding anything back. A scorching, high-intensity heat developed in an instant, radiating outward from his core. As the heat spread in all directions, the black-named beast launched himself forward once more. We can see the magical power within his body is being consumed at an alarmingly rapid pace. He had made his choice. He was entering a desperate fight to the death. Watching from a distance, our protagonist grew increasingly solemn as he observed the struggle. Through their soul connection, he could vaguely feel the life force of the black-named beast beginning to slowly ebb away. Just then, Su Lin Shui opened her eyes, which were now glowing with a piercing, icy blue light. It was as if the laws of nature themselves were being rewritten. Every drop of moisture in the air vanished in a heartbeat. In that same moment, countless Calamity Beasts were frozen solid, turning into jagged ice crystals. As the frozen fragments shattered, he saw his opening and made a decisive move. He began to head directly toward the location of the Calamity Mother Beast. The only hope left now was to find a way for the black-named beast to evolve. There is a glimmer of hope. A short time later, the three of them arrived at the center of the city. A roar echoed from up ahead, and without a moment's hesitation, the three of them pressed on. They ran immediately, and soon we see the black-named beast, gravely wounded and on the verge of death. And yet, his sharp claws still gripped the ground with a desperate, iron strength. No matter how the dark red tentacles lashed against him, he refused to retreat. Step by step, he continued to drag himself forward with absolute firmness. Seeing this, our protagonist ran directly toward the black-named beast to intervene. He urged the black-named beast to devour the surrounding calamity beasts to regain his strength. At the same time, he immediately cast both a recovery spell and an enhancement spell. A faint, shimmering white light began to glow across the black-named beast's body. Suddenly, with a sudden burst of energy, the black-named beast let out a thunderous roar. Breaking free from the dark red tentacles, he immediately charged into the swarm of calamity beasts. The dark black flames bloomed outward like a lethal lotus flower. As the fire spread, the giant eyeball finally realized there was a serious problem. It immediately issued instructions, ordering all the calamity beasts to pull back from their positions. But it was already too late, as countless dark black flames filled with devouring energy took hold. As the energy flooded the black-named beast, our protagonist didn't hesitate for a second to activate the panel. The evolution begins, and a terrifying black power suddenly erupts from deep within the beast's core. The energy surged outward, forming a massive pillar of dark black light. As it soared toward the sky, the body of the black-named beast instantly grew to over 100 meters tall. Congratulations are in order, as the black-named summon has officially obtained the lightning speed skill. And that's not all. The black-named summon has also acquired a brand new talent, the adamantine body. With this evolution, every single one of its attributes increases by 60 points. Our protagonist let out a sigh of relief, seeing yet another massive, total improvement in his companion. The black-named beast stood tall, fixing its gaze intently on the giant eyeball. Its entire body felt completely new, surging with a power it had never known before. Even its thick wolf fur began to emit a faint, shimmering golden glow. It looked truly divine and dominant, causing the pupils of the giant eye to tremble violently with fear. The moment that black power erupted, the eye was paralyzed by a terrifying aura that seemed ready to devour everything. But almost immediately, that fear was replaced by a wave of infinite indignation. After all, it believed it was the only one who should be able to devour and evolve into the strongest. A thick, dark red tentacle let out a sharp hiss as it was whipped through the air. The force was so great that even the airflow itself emitted a piercing whistling sound. The giant eye launched its assault, but the black-named beast stood as solid as a mountain. Without moving an inch, it took the strike of 15 dark red tentacles, which caused only a faint golden tremor. The black flames, now fused with critical strike energy and massive enlargement, erupted instantly to form a single entity. The shadow of a violent beast, 400 meters tall, instantly turned the entire area into a black fire hell. The black-named beast rushed forward, closing the distance until it was right in front of the giant eye. As it raised its claws, the enormous shadow of the fierce beast behind it rose in perfect unison. These were lethal claws, formed entirely from condensed, flickering black flames. The blow fell in an instant, blinding several of the giant eye's pupils and forcing it to emit agonizing howls of pain. Its tentacles lashed out frantically at the black-named beast, but to be honest, they failed to cause even the slightest bit of damage. The giant eye roared in defiance, absorbing the eye nirvana and rapidly integrating the energy into its own massive body. In that moment, its size increased dramatically, expanding until it completely enveloped the black-named summon. Both sides attacked each other with a frantic desperation, shaking the ground so violently that the tremors seemed to reach the very horizon. Several hours later, we see that only the black-named beast remained standing tall amidst the smoking ruins. The countless pupils of the giant eye began to dim, their terrifying light finally fading away. Its entire body was slowly and methodically devoured by the relentless black flames. At this point, Suli Su and our protagonist couldn't help but share a well-deserved smile of relief. They had successfully slain the Calamity Mother Beast, along with thousands of other Calamity creatures along the way. Deep down, he knew the final rating for this trial would be exceptionally high. A day later, following a sharp notification sound, the three of them vanished from the battlefield entirely. The time had come to calculate the score. Based on his performance, he had killed a total of 8,560 Calamity Beasts. Furthermore, he had successfully eliminated the Calamity Mother Beast herself. The results are in. Congratulations are due, as his final rating is officially perfect. His professional promotion is confirmed as Rank A, the Summon Constructor. It is a unique and rare class, described as a strange profession that was born specifically because of him. And here we see another reward, as he is congratulated for awakening a brand new professional skill. The Condensed Law Sword, a skill that manifests a blade existing somewhere between the virtual and the real. It completely ignores any physical defense the target might have, instead inflicting direct and devastating mental trauma. Our protagonist looked at the panel with a touch of surprise. The skill ignores physical defense to strike directly at the target's spirit. It is as if, provided the opponent lacks any form of mental defense, he could kill them almost instantaneously. To be perfectly honest, a skill like this is simply chilling. In an instant, a sword manifested right there in his hand. We see countless intricate inscriptions etched deeply into the blade. However, his mental strength was completely drained by the effort of condensing this law sword. He shook his head slightly and decided to put the law sword away for now. It seems this particular ability can only be used as a final ace up his sleeve. With a faint smile, he pulled out his phone and opened it. Lu Ruyan, Luo Xian, and Su Lishui had all sent him friend requests. Immediately after that, he noticed a message waiting for him from Lu Wan. The recruitment tutors from the top universities were scheduled to arrive today at 2 o'clock sharp. He was told to prepare for school, and since he had nothing else to do, he agreed. He got up and left immediately, heading toward the Fan Yun Second High School. There, we see Lu Wan waiting patiently at the school gates. Upon seeing him, Lu Wan approached at once, relieved that he had finally arrived. This time, the 5 most prestigious universities had sent recruiters specifically to this high school. In a place like Fan Yun City, such an event was completely unprecedented. He followed Lu Wan into the office, where the man pulled a dragon-shaped ring from a drawer. This was the reward from Shifu, containing all the equipment and skill books he would need. His eyes lit up immediately. These were exactly the items he needed at this very moment. The ordinary quality equipment he currently held had endured high-intensity battles for far too long. It was already badly damaged, so he took the ring and let his mind explore its contents. 2 distinct messages appeared on the interface before him. First, a talent longsword. This particular form grants an unbreakable elite tier enhancement. Furthermore, the talent form gains a specialized aura of wisdom. It continuously restores mental strength and increases the effect of any skill by 50%. Second, a skill book for instant translation, or rather, a short-range teleportation. The effect is simple. Within a distance of 100 meters, one arrives instantly in a single step. Looking over this new equipment and the skill books, he felt extremely satisfied with the haul. As it drew close to 2 o'clock, a special black car pulled up to the second high school. From the high-quality vehicle, 5 men and women stepped out onto the pavement. Leminzi looked quite solemn, moving forward without the slightest hint of negligence. To be a tutor at a top university, one must undoubtedly be a 5th transfer professional. Even the mayor must give way to them. Upon reaching the reception room, Hi-Fi asked weakly with a languid expression. "Where is Chunning?" she inquired, just as the door was pushed open. We see Lu Wan and our protagonist enter the room, while Hi-Fi looks carefully around the reception area. She scanned the space, waiting to see who had finally arrived. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly as they took their seat. Outside, the special car remained parked, a silent witness to the meeting unfolding within. The black car slowly pulled away, leaving the school behind. As the vehicle disappeared from sight, Leminzi and Lu Wan watched the scene unfold with heavy hearts. A sudden chill swept through the room, and for a moment, the atmosphere became noticeably tense. It was clear that if anyone dared to provoke the others, they would be instantly targeted by the remaining 4. Slowly but surely, the situation began to descend into a bit of chaos. Hi-Fi took a deep breath and looked at our protagonist, suddenly asking if he had already begun his summons during the first round. She promised that as long as he joined the Silent Cloud Sparrow Academy, she could personally request the finest materials for his summoning. A black wolf with growth talent is rare, she noted, offering any resources he desired, even her own daughter. Upon hearing such a bold claim, the other 4 fell into a stunned silence, even from their professional perspective. Deep down, they all felt that these conditions were perhaps a bit too generous. After all, this year there are no fewer than 10 people who have already surpassed the 20,000 point mark. If they consumed too many resources recruiting here in the winter, it would be difficult to compete for others later on. The 4 of them decided it simply wasn't worth the cost, and quietly gave up their pursuit. Our protagonist simply shook his head, thinking everything else was fine, but the part about the daughter was a bit much. Hi-Fi's expression softened as she told him to forget that part, her eyebrows relaxing at last. Inwardly, she was quite pleased with how things were progressing. She joked that if he preferred someone more mature, she herself might even be an option, which was quite the statement. He wanted to clarify that wasn't what he meant at all, but the words seemed to catch in his throat. In the end, he made his choice and officially selected the Cloud Sparrow Academy. It wasn't because Hi-Fi was so beautiful, mind you, but primarily because they were offering far too much to refuse. The day of the course's grand opening soon arrived. We find ourselves in Zanshan City, the capital of the Juzan province. This is the Cloud Sparrow Academy, where countless students with the highest marks have gathered. The very best from the National University entrance exams will all meet right here. Our protagonist chose a dormitory at random and stepped inside to settle in. The room was well equipped, featuring various facilities and all the daily necessities one might need. Just then, a specialized phone suddenly vibrated, and a message appeared on the screen. It informed him that his summoning materials had already been approved. Furthermore, he was told he could request any additional resources he might require. Hufei promised to help him get the maximum amount possible before leaning back into her soft seat. Guyu, standing by her side, looked a bit puzzled by the whole situation. She noted that their resources were clearly enough to recruit 4 top provincial students. To her, those 4 would far exceed the value of a single student like Chen Ning. If she were being honest, she felt Chen Ning didn't match the level of investment they were providing. Hufei simply looked at her with a knowing smile, offering no further explanation. The welcoming ceremony for the new students was set to take place the following morning. Hufei suggested they wait and see. Meanwhile, Chen Ning placed the summoning materials on the floor. He extended a hand into the empty air, beginning the incantation for the summoning spell. The room was instantly flooded with a brilliant white light that lasted for several minutes. When the light finally faded, what appeared before him was a silver butterfly with 2 pairs of wings, measuring 60 centimeters. He couldn't help but wonder if this would be yet another old, weak, and disabled summon. The corner of Chen Ning's mouth twitched slightly at the thought. In silence, we watch as he checks the panel, a silver butterfly summon. Its level was basic, with strength, constitution, agility, and magic power all sitting at a measly 1. All of its statistics combined added up to a grand total of only 4 points. It was even weaker than Yiming had been at the start, causing him to simply shake his head. This had effectively set a brand new record for the lowest possible limit. It was the weakest summon imaginable, but to him, that didn't matter. He would give it unlimited potential. Watching the silver butterfly as it drifted slowly toward him, he extended a finger to catch it. The trial began, and we see that its loyalty was already at a perfect 100%. It would never betray him, and so, he was asked if he wished to perform a destiny connection. Upon his confirmation, a sudden, soul-wrenching pain surged from deep within his being. Congratulations were in order, as his summon had awakened a unique SSS-level talent, the Myriad Divine Transformation. It now possessed the ability to transform into any shape to acquire various different skills. In that moment, the silver butterfly turned into a fluorescent light and took on his own appearance, speaking in a soft voice. It addressed him as Master, explaining that it finally understood the true power of the Myriad Divine Transformation. A little later, he opened a box, revealing several pieces of armor tucked inside. He pointed toward the silver butterfly while simultaneously beginning to communicate with it mentally. The silver butterfly nodded gently, understanding his intent perfectly. It transformed once more into a fluorescent light, wrapping itself securely around his arm. In an instant, a suit of silver armor appeared, slowly covering his entire body. He found that it didn't feel the least bit heavy or awkward. It was as if this armor had always been a natural part of his own being. He looked quite satisfied, knowing the Myriad Divine Transformation could increase its hardness by fusing with metals. Without a doubt, much like avaricious devourment, it was a terrifying talent that could keep growing stronger. With this in mind, he decided his first priority would be training the silver butterfly. He sent a message to Giffey, explaining that he needed metallic materials with special characteristics. In just half an hour, the items arrived exactly as requested. A notification popped up, showing a collection of rare metallic ores, each with different properties. Every single one of them belonged to the category of highly valuable resources. Back in his room, we see him begin the process of letting the silver butterfly fuse with them. Quickly, the armor covering his body became incomparably hard, even for a second-round professional. It would be difficult to destroy. At the same time, the armor's weight reached a staggering 5 tons. It had no effect on him, but if he fell upon an enemy, it would be like Mount Tai crushing them. Upon arriving at the hall, he heard 3 members of the society sounding rather surprised. A man stepped forward and greeted him as the second-place student from Inuan province. Ma Plelev had taken first place in the province despite having a normal profession. It was an impressive achievement, though some wondered if he'd simply been lucky enough to get a powerful summon. The man with the cold expression spoke with a disdainful tone. He was the runner-up from the 11th province. His entrance exam score was 23,000, but he happened to be in a province lacking any notable geniuses. In his arrogant opinion, taking first place in such a province was simply a case of the one-eyed man being king in the land of the blind. Ma Plelev sighed, noting that being able to summon such a powerful being was enough to prove Chen Ning had something special about him. Just as they were about to start an argument, a voice suddenly echoed throughout the entire academy. The announcement ordered all new students to gather their weapons and equipment and report immediately to Yunka Plaza. Xiao Yin remarked that this must be the grand freshman competition, which was starting half a month earlier than expected. As he sat on the sofa, he added that with mutant beasts increasing outside the city, the academy likely planned for them to handle the cleanup. After hearing those words, Chen Ning fell silent as a sudden memory surfaced in his mind. He thought back to the events in the reincarnation dungeon, surprised that Blue Star was facing the same crisis so quickly. While he was lost in thought, he was suddenly interrupted by the cold, arrogant voice of the man from before. The man declared that this was the perfect time to completely surpass Chen Ning. He was determined to prove that he was the one truly deserving of the top spot. Seeing such a bold and arrogant attitude, Chen Ning couldn't help but let out a small laugh. He accepted the challenge, confident that he would be the one to ultimately stand above everyone else. We move to Yunko Plaza, where the new students have gathered to hear a senior official speaking with the tone of a seasoned veteran. He told them they must force themselves to become hunters of mutant beasts and grow quickly under the looming pressure of death. The secretary nodded, tablet in hand, and announced that the Grand Freshman competition was officially beginning right now. They were informed that they would be entering a large-scale dungeon designed for levels 20 to 30. The location was Lyko Canyon, and this competition would be no mere exercise. It would determine exactly how their future resources would be allocated within the academy. And so, following the announcement, we see the massive dungeon gates slowly begin to grind open. The chilling breath filtering out from the gates swept over the entire audience. We see some students' legs grow weak, their lips trembling slightly at the sight. They wondered if this was a joke, questioning how they could fight before even completing their first-class transfer. Meanwhile, Luo Xian was anxiously searching through the crowd until he finally spotted the leader he had been looking for. Chen Ning watched as the tall, burly Luo Xian ran toward him, accompanied by a girl with short hair and gray eyes. He had previously mentioned they would be equals, and though Chen Ning thought it was a joke, it seemed he was quite serious. Luo Xian introduced the girl as his sister, Luo Ming, while Chen Ning's expression remained somewhat puzzled. Luo Ming hid shyly behind her brother, offering a greeting in a very low, quiet voice. Chen Ning gave a helpless sigh and sent them a team invitation, knowing they needed to stick together to increase their chances. The cold, arrogant man from before frowned slightly as he watched them form a group just before entering the dungeon. He told Chen Ning coldly not to lose too miserably, a bold statement, to be sure. After a few brief, repetitive exchanges about what was happening, the three of them vanished instantly into the portal. Not long after, the rest of the students followed suit and entered the dungeon. Back at the plaza, a teacher waved his hand to activate a water curtain projection technique so they could monitor the progress. We learned that Lyko Canyon is massive, spanning hundreds of kilometers in surface area. It was like a giant labyrinth, and the trio had barely entered when a roar echoed immediately from up ahead. Deep down, Chen Ning knew it was finally time to test his current strength. With a simple thought, a silver butterfly instantly appeared, accompanied by a brilliant white light. Almost instantly, his entire body was covered in silver armor as his right hand closed around thin air. The Tianquan staff sword appeared, and after drawing the silver battle saber from his back, he lunged directly forward. His figure appeared instantly in front of the monsters, closing a distance of dozens of meters in a heartbeat. He was using Immobilize, a skill that, in any normal situation, should be used to save one's life. Instead, he used it to close the gap, and the Tianquan sword sliced through them as easily as cutting tofu. He glided smoothly through the bodies of several monsters, and then, without breaking his momentum, he became a blur. One might wonder what they were seeing, but it was just an afterimage as he tore through them all in the blink of an eye. Almost every monster collapsed with a vacant stare, having had no time to even react to his presence. Watching this display, Luo Xian shouted excitedly that Chen Ning was truly incredible. He didn't even need to lift a finger, yet we see his experience points increasing at a staggering rate. This, as they say, is the pure joy of hitching your wagon to the right star. Outside, the tutors watching the projection were absolutely struck with shock at what they were witnessing. They noted that his speed and damage were nearly on par with a hidden melee combat profession. To be perfectly honest, these base attributes made no sense whatsoever for his level. Chen Ning is only meant to ascend to such a profession during his second-class transfer. It should have been impossible for him to possess such overwhelming melee combat strength right now. One tutor thought it over carefully and suggested that the secret might lie with that silver butterfly. It is Chen Ning's second summon, a creature with the rare ability to transform itself into a weapon. Such a thing was unheard of, and even the most knowledgeable advisors were stunned to see He Fei smiling with satisfaction. He shook his head, noting that currently, the scores of over 10 other people were about to overtake Chen Ning's. Earning points as a team results in a very small yield, which is a bit of a setback. If things continued this way, his hold on that first-place spot would hardly live up to his reputation. Is he your future son-in-law? What do you gain by losing face like this? He Fei was about to respond when he suddenly received a sharp slap to the back of his head. The advisor stood there, his forehead drenched in sweat from the sheer tension of the moment. Meanwhile, back inside the dungeon, we see that his silver armor was already completely covered in blood. He found he could kill these level 20 monsters with a single strike, barely breaking a sweat. It seemed to him that he had already reached the very pinnacle of the second rank. He felt that even against the third rank, he would remain safe, even if a total victory eluded him. At that moment, however, a flood of negative emotions continued to wash over his mind. Deep down, he felt a flicker of fear, and he briefly considered not staying on a floor that was about to exceed the second rank. But seeing him standing there motionless, Luo Xian hurriedly urged him, Xiaoning, quickly withdraw the domain. Well aware of how rare his talent was, Luo Ning looked quite nervous and rushed to put it away. He simply smiled to comfort his companion, telling him it didn't matter and that such things didn't affect him at all. He glanced down at his recorder and saw he had only managed to gather 120 points so far. To be perfectly honest, this pace was proving to be a bit too slow for his liking. He knew that to grow stronger quickly, he absolutely had to secure that first-place spot. He needed the Academy's resources, whether it was for Silver Disco or his Black Knight. Realizing that his summons required a massive amount of resources, he focused his thoughts, and instantly, a giant, violent demonic wolf appeared in a flash of white light. Its terrifying howl echoed through the canyon, instantly frightening Luo Ning, who was seeing the Black Knight for the first time and hid behind him. He gave the Black Knight a direct order to devour every monster in the canyon. Hearing this, the wolf's eyes turned fierce as it vanished toward the depths. Not long after, the recorder on his wrist began chiming constantly with increasing points as he headed down another path to farm both areas at once. In the distance, we see a young woman brandishing a dark red lightning dragon that crashed down upon the monsters, striking the ground with incredible force. The ground cracked for 100 miles as dark red lightning exploded in every direction, flooding the monsters. The young woman seemed quite dissatisfied, as these useless creatures couldn't resist her at all. Seeing his sister's aggressive streak flare up again, Lulan looked helpless when suddenly a heart-pounding aura arrived, accompanied by a wave of intense heat. Before she could react, Luo Yunin's eyes burned with fire as she ran and stopped. The dark red lightning of the leopard appeared instantly, surrounding her black spear as she spotted the approaching wolf. Just staring into those vertical pupils of the giant black rock wolf made her feel a surge of fear. However, a touch of madness soon appeared on Luo Yunin's beautiful face. She immediately charged toward the giant wolf, and seeing his sister rush in without fear, Lulan quickly applied several types of power and protection buffs with practiced ease. With these blessings, her combat power doubled instantly. Even against a third-rank boss, she could hold her own, and as the two sides collided, a powerful force triggered a massive gust of air. We see the blast rush out in all directions, but as the giant black wolf emerged unharmed with a golden light, Luo Yunin's face froze in disbelief. That strike had already reached the power of the third rank, so how could it be completely fine? Black Knight looked coldly at this human who had attacked for no reason and swung its claws. Under that terrifying power, 3 layers of protection barriers shattered one by one, and Luo Yunin was sent flying instantly. Seeing this, Lu Lan's expression changed drastically. He pressed his hands together, and a sacred shadow several dozen meters tall slowly appeared. The 6-winged guardian angel, for Lu Lan's talent, is the angel's blessing. A screen of golden light rose instantly to envelop the two of them, and Lu Lan immediately shouted for her to hurry and retreat, but he couldn't even finish his sentence. Black Knight, approaching step by step, had already raised its paw. A black light emerged and instantly tore through the golden screen as the wolf looked coldly at the two of them. It simply passed by their side without paying them any further attention. Meanwhile, outside, a heavy silence fell over the tutors and the advisor as the golden light faded. They wondered if this was truly the strength a summoner who only changed classes a few days ago should have. To be honest, it seemed completely beyond the reach of the second rank. Witnessing this unreasonable strategy, everyone couldn't help but think of the same words. Invincible at the same level, a true contemporary genius. Looking at Hefei's satisfied face, Jianbiru felt a massive shock. It seemed this nearly impossible gamble had actually paid off for him. Over the next 10 hours, Black Knight killed tens of thousands of monsters, even taking down 3 third-tier bosses, leaving only 1,300 points for its next evolution. This was only the harvest from midday, though we know that the further one progresses, the harder it becomes. Regardless, Lu Ning and Luo Yunin were beyond excited. It was the first time they had experienced such easy leveling without making any effort at all. Looking at the recorder with a smile, the points had already reached 34,000. In the distance, Black Knight finished clearing an entire circle and returned, casually receiving a recovery skill just as a white light enveloped them for the dungeon's time limit. We return to the plaza as I am teleported back, and instantly, countless astonished gazes are fixed upon me. Many students around us are covered in dust and dirt. The cold young man, looking humiliated, stares at the ground with his head bowed. Despite all his strength, he had been severely wounded by a giant black wolf with a single strike. The assistant secretary then calls out, announcing that he is about to reveal the points list for all the students. In first place, we have Chen Lin, with a staggering 34,500 points. Upon hearing this, the cold young man's eyes widen in shock as he looks at the holographic screen and sees my points sitting at the very top. The lead is massive, followed by a sharp drop to second place, where Ma Plelith holds only 13,000 points. This is absolutely impossible, he thinks to himself. He simply cannot believe it, convinced there must be an error with the list. He isn't the only one, as many others find it strange that everyone else's scores, including the top 2 students, are so remarkably low. Noticing the growing doubt among the crowd, the secretary steps in to offer an explanation. That giant black wolf they encountered was actually Chun Lin's summons, and it seems many people tried to stop it. They were promptly beaten and left severely injured. Hearing this, the look on everyone's faces turns to one of pure, unadulterated shock. Up on the platform, the assistant secretary notes that most students were unaware of the true nature of the ranking. With the rookie competition at an end, the credit rewards are sent to their student IDs, and they are dismissed to return to their private suites. As he sees me walk through the door, the cold young man's face shows a flicker of discomfort, and he clearly struggles with himself for a moment. He takes a deep breath and mentions that someone brought something for me just a short while ago. Apparently, it was the second batch of resource materials I had been waiting for. Seeing that I wasn't there, he took it upon himself to move the delivery into my room. I find myself momentarily stunned, but then I simply smile and offer him my thanks. The cold young man turns his face away, replying with a quiet, almost whispered, "You're welcome." Back in the room, I open the large black box to find the latest shipment of rare metals. This shipment is even larger than the first batch, and as long as the silver disc fuses enough metals, the results will be significant. Its hardness will reach such a level that not even a creature like Black Name would be able to break through it. With the potential to gain all sorts of new traits, he won't just have an invincible defense, his battle power will become truly terrifying. He has no intention of being a powerless summoner, as that particular weakness is far too obvious for his liking. Deep down, he knows that if he were ever targeted directly, there are many ways he could be easily killed. 10 minutes later, we see that all the metals have been successfully fused by the silver disc. At this stage, its durability is so high that even a rank 3 strike wouldn't be able to penetrate its surface. The weight has now reached a staggering 13 tons, which, through the mutual amplification of force, is quite a lot. A single punch could shatter the ground. Right at that moment, his 50,000 credit reward for first place finally arrives. After thinking it over for a moment, he spends every single point to purchase dozens of different fruit resources. Once the items are delivered, he gathers all the fruit and materials at once, then summons Black Name to begin the feeding. Soon, he feels waves of heat coursing through him, strengthening his entire body from the inside out. It is an extremely comfortable sensation, and we see that Black Name's size is also beginning to grow, bit by bit. In just a few minutes, the creature reaches a height of 40 meters, a perfectly ordinary growth spurt, clearly. Having ascended to Apprentice Summoner, each level now grants him 5 extra strength points, completely changing the nature of his class. He has transformed from a fragile caster who had to hide in the back into a true frontline fighter. Eventually, the official day of enrollment arrives, and we find that all 4 roommates have been assigned to Class 1. On the way, they run into Luo Xian and Luo Ning, who are also in Class 1, as they make their way into the classroom. Many students turn to stare, still visibly shaken by the fact that he crushed everyone using only a single summons. Such a thing had never happened before. Just then, 2 strikingly beautiful twin sisters walk through the door. Luo Hongying and Luo Lan looked around for a moment before deciding to sit directly in front of him. At that moment, a tall figure named Ji Fei entered the classroom, scanned the students, and introduced himself. He announced he would be their class tutor from now on, though he added they should try not to bother him. He simply didn't care to deal with minor issues. Then, quite suddenly, Ji Fei's expression became incredibly solemn. He noted that as geniuses from various provinces, they had surely fought to enter the academy for better resources. But unfortunately, after decades of planning by the enemy race, their advantage has only continued to grow. In a very short time, he warned, they will likely break through the defenses all at once. The room went silent. Everyone's gaze turned to disbelief, as modern society seems to be operating quite orderly lately. The media constantly proclaims that the situation is improving and everything is stable, which, naturally, is what people want to hear. But now they are being told a calamity is descending, and seeing their doubt, Ji Fei spoke more slowly. He told them not to be surprised, as experts of the 5th rank or higher are almost never seen in public. Even within the armed forces protecting the great city, the strongest among them are only at the 4th rank. As they listened, the students began to realize that this was true, and logically, it made very little sense. Mid-level combat power like the 5th rank shouldn't be common on the streets, but it shouldn't be this rare either. Suddenly, a terrifying realization began to take shape in all of our students' minds. Graduates from the top academies are at least 4th rank or higher, and most of them leave without hesitation. They head straight to the front lines, and that is the only reason there is peace back home. Since the truth is so grim, the university students are discouraged from spreading news that might cause a mass panic. The various nations naturally prohibit the spread of such information to keep the public calm. This leads to a situation where many people from humble backgrounds have absolutely no idea what is actually happening. Now, the most critical issue we face is that the scale of covert possession is also gradually increasing. If this isn't stopped, the enemy race will undoubtedly launch a general attack much sooner than expected. With that heavy thought hanging in the air, Ji Fei took a long look at all of his students. He told them quite plainly that the time has finally come for them to step forward. Every academy sends its most promising young talents to military bases to manage the rearguard operations, who have worked hard to prove themselves, have essentially become the true leaders of the entire university. According to the teachers, all of these dedicated students spent 15 hours a day training, knowing that their foundation is vital for the organization's survival. In our current reality, these people are surely waiting to move, and to be honest, they are priority targets. If they truly couldn't find the courage, he offered a second option: leave the Young Academy immediately. Dozens of armored trucks were parked at the gates, where soldiers waited with incredibly solemn expressions. As the students boarded, the once lively academy became empty, and Ji Fei began reviewing their mission documents. Their destination was the Ingjuan military base, located 900 kilometers away from Zanshan City. The outskirts alone hold tens of thousands of mutant beasts, ranging from level 10 to level 30. Deeper inside, there are countless level 50 beasts, but our students only need to clear the outskirts. The front lines are struggling as the enemy's assault has become more ferocious, attacking day and night. After a 9-hour journey, the armored truck finally stopped as the heavy rear doors began to swing open. Soldiers dressed in black combat uniforms lined up before them, their presence carrying a heavy, imposing weight. They stood as a silent warning, their gear and ammunition ready, knowing that their duty to hold the line was absolute. In this public and lively atmosphere, the weight of the mission ahead began to truly settle in for everyone. After that, black smart bracelets were handed out to every single student. In appearance, this bracelet is quite similar to the recorders used during the university entrance exams. However, it features more task and map functions, including a rescue icon that works with just a single click. The military base will be alerted to the situation immediately and will dispatch personnel to rescue them. At the same time, anyone nearby will also receive the information without a moment's delay. This allows them to arrive as quickly as possible. Welcome to Xiao AI. It is a pleasure to serve you. In this operation to clear the mutant beasts, every student must accept at least one task and complete it that day. Since today's goal hadn't been met yet, they were told to accept the task at the reception point as soon as possible. The smart bracelet emitted a clear, persistent notification to remind them. He strode toward the screen displaying countless tasks and took a quick look at the options. He told himself it was better to be cautious, deciding to take on some ordinary tasks requiring a third-level rank. Suddenly, he felt the distinct sensation that someone was watching him. He looked back to find Luo Xian and Luo Nin, who had followed him from the start, watching him with pleading eyes. Given their current strength, it would likely be very difficult for them to survive step by step in the wild alone. He smiled and suggested they go together. After all, he felt he should be responsible for them until the end. The two of them nodded repeatedly, the gratitude in their eyes almost overflowing. Seeing this scene, Fan Yi, who had originally intended to invite Luo Nin, stopped in his tracks. Suddenly, he felt a sharp, nagging annoyance, as if his very teeth were beginning to ache. His eyes widened in disbelief. The twins were already enough, but why wouldn't he even let Luo Nin go? We see that the center of the field is an extremely dangerous place when one is out in the wild. Accidents can happen at any moment, and in such a place, they usually do. How about we look out for each other? Fan Yi suggested, turning his head with a pained expression. He spoke to the center of the field, wearing a look that suggested he was only thinking of their well-being. Get lost and find someone else. He found the situation even more repulsive than the field itself. After selecting a task, he departed with Chao Yin, a support girl from the same class. They hadn't even finished speaking when Chao Yin interrupted directly, making her point clear. In the future, you will also be part of a hidden combat class, so she told him not to say such things. She advised him to look for reliable people to form a proper team. If necessary, he should ask for help, promising that if they were nearby, they would come to handle it. Fan Yi suddenly felt as though he were surrounded by a wave of pure malice. Not long after, he also selected 3 missions, clearing the wild black plain 200 kilometers away. His targets were the double-edged saw tiger and the blood-scaled giant crocodile. All the locations of these mutant beasts are carefully modified by the master of political law. The data was acquired through the scouting efforts of a team that had already joined the war. Looking toward the future, it seems that every precaution is being taken. To be honest, their vital safety has been thoroughly considered by the organizers. Everyone heading out on a mission receives 3 high-explosive grenades and a high-power pistol equipped with 7 fire bullets. This equipment is more than enough to damage mutant beasts up to level 20. In the very next second, a brilliant white light illuminated the surroundings for dozens of meters. We see that everyone at the headquarters wore a solemn expression. Through a nearby microdrone, they immediately discovered that our group's route was incorrect. Further ahead lies the territory of mutant beasts at level 30 or even higher. Why aren't they stopping? They needed to check quickly which mission had actually been accepted. A moment later, a middle-aged man in a major general's uniform took charge of the screen controls. The woman, hearing his words, operated the system with practiced speed. With sheer astonishment, she saw the targets: the level 33 black plane, the level 36 saw tiger, and the level 39 giant crocodile. These are all missions that require 3 turns and 10 jumps to complete. The final one even approaches the difficulty of a 4-turn mission, a daunting task, to say the least. Are they crazy? Yang Xiao rubbed his brow in frustration. This is the new university student. Yang Xiao is the most powerful student at the Young Academy this year. He is only level 16, yet he dares to accept a mission over 20 levels above his own. It seemed like he was simply seeking death, though geniuses who face danger head-on rarely betray humanity. Even if they are a bit stubborn, we simply cannot afford to ignore them. He immediately gave the order for 4 armed helicopters to move into the vicinity. The plan was simple. Once they were in danger, the rescue operation would begin directly. Yang Xiao sighed deeply, feeling that his Injuan base was likely falling behind compared to the others. Suddenly, the smart bracelet emitted a sharp, unexpected notification. A warning suddenly chimes. They have entered the habitat of their wild target, the Black Plain. In the very next second, just after that voice sounds, a giant serpent bursts through the bushes and lunges. The creature's body is staggering, 4 meters thick and dozens of meters long. It opens its sharp fangs and bites down fiercely toward him. That terrifying, bloody maw nearly swallows him whole, which, naturally, would have been a very bad end. He turns instantly, grabbing the giant serpent's fangs with both hands and exerting a sudden, massive force. With the power of a flying man and a weight of 13 tons, he holds his ground. The serpent's fangs shatter instantly as blood gushes out, causing the beast to recoil in agonizing pain. He gives it no time to breathe. The ground sinks beneath his feet as he rushes directly in front of the beast. A single punch lands, and we see several of its ribs snap under the impact. The giant serpent lets out a miserable, piercing howl. Its cold eyes now reveal pure fear, and it immediately tries to strike back to kill him. But he simply wraps his arms around it in a crushing embrace. He slowly drags it backward while the serpent struggles frantically in horror, making the very ground tremble. However, its resistance is completely useless against such overwhelming strength. His fist strikes its head directly, causing the giant serpent's flesh to explode. The skull collapses. He grabs the lower jaw with both hands and forcibly tears it in half. This brutal scene makes both him and Zesperil shudder at the sheer violence of it. Meanwhile, back at the headquarters, those watching the process clearly are left in a state of total shock. In the ensuing silence, every pair of eyes is wide with disbelief at what they just witnessed. This is simply too abnormal. He only has 16 levels, doesn't he? How can he possibly face off against a giant python at level 29? What kind of monster is this? Yang Xiao lowered his head in silence, repeatedly checking the data in his hand. The records here clearly show that his profession is a summoner, which makes this even harder to believe. Suddenly, a roar echoed through the screen and filled the entire room. The faces of everyone present turned solemn as they watched the display. We see a violent ape, 50 meters tall, with muscles bulging across its entire body. It leaped from the mountainside, seemingly disturbed by the sounds of the previous battle. It rushed toward the scene in a fury, and the military officer turned pale with shock. This is bad. It is the wild black ape. How did it reach level 34? Every 10 levels represents a complete transformation in power. A creature like that could also easily crush a giant python to death. Yang Xiao shook his head. Deep down, his heart wasn't feeling very optimistic either. In the entire human race, there aren't many who can bridge such a massive gap in combat power. His hand was already hovering over the controls as the situation turned grim. He was prepared to immediately order 4 armed helicopters to provide support. There was no time to collect the loot, as a fierce face loomed over him. A shockwave spread to the surroundings from a giant, incomparably hard fist. But he emerged unscathed, as all the damage was blocked by Shadowfall. The black ape roared again, its body suddenly growing several times larger until it reached 70 meters in height. Then, it felt as though Mount Tai itself were pressing down with all its weight. The creature's massive palm fell toward him without a moment's delay. But in an instant, he appeared atop the black ape's head and struck with his battle sword. It was actually his invulnerable skill being activated, an ability originally meant for saving lives. He had used it to teleport close, and a terrifying blow flickered like fluorescent light, cutting the back of the ape's head, though it only left a superficial wound. Feeling the sting, the black ape immediately spun its enormous body and struck wildly with both palms, but he dodged it all, eventually ending up right in front of the beast. He slashed several times at the same spot with his sword, while the black ape immediately raised a foot and stomped, causing an instant earthquake and sending dust in all directions. However, he had already reappeared more than 10 meters away. It seemed that even 13 tons of weight and wind force were still struggling to cause serious injury to the black ape. Realizing he had reached his limit with physical attacks, he didn't delay any longer, and suddenly a sword, halfway between the real and the unreal, appeared in his hand. The blade was covered in countless mysterious white marks, and as he felt his mental power drain instantly, his mind began to reel from the effort of its first appearance. He wanted to see its true power, so he slowly raised his hand. At that moment, the black ape's hair stood on end as it felt a tremor deep within its brain. The beast felt threatened by something invisible, wondering if this mere ant was the one causing such trouble, and its fur bristled in a sudden instinctive panic. But his hand had already fallen, and the magic sword sliced through the black ape's body in an instant. Without any warning, its enormous frame collapsed with a thunderous crash. A furious wind instantly scattered the rising dust. The creature's physical body was still technically alive, but its spirit had already been shattered and killed. He had eliminated it directly and withdrew his battle sword. Fortunately, the terrifying aura released by the black ape had kept other mutant beasts from approaching during the brief fight. Seeing that the battle ended so quickly, the armed air support in the distance turned its helicopters around and flew away, leaving the entire command center in stunned silence. While the others stared at the screen without understanding, Yang Xiao realized after a moment that this must have been a rare mental damage skill. What truly shocked him, however, was the young man's terrifying combat strength, having bridged an 18-level gap to face the stormy black ape without taking a single hit. The key was that this wasn't just a temporary burst of power, but rather his normal combat state, which, to be honest, is the most frightening thing of all. Most monsters who defeat higher-level enemies rely on ultimate moves or power explosions that don't last, but this was something entirely different and far more consistent. If he can maintain this level of power while overcoming such massive odds, he is destined to become the ultimate nightmare for the alien races. Thinking of this, Yang Xiao felt his heart race with an incomparable sense of joy. He quickly strode out of the command center and arrived at a small, discreet room where he locked the door and activated several secret formations. He then carefully pulled out a communicator. Brother Zahn, the military base has discovered a demonic genius. He is too powerful, and since I am seriously injured, I fear I cannot protect him. He waited about half an hour, then slipped toward the door of the combat school as a noise echoed from the other side. Explain clearly, exactly how strong is he? Yang Xiao thought for a moment, and then made up his mind. If you and I joined forces, he could still press our heads into the dirt and beat us. There was a long moment of silence on the other end. That is incredible. I estimate the entire human race won't be able to protect him from being targeted by the aliens. Yang Xiao felt a bit helpless. He can crush me with one hand, but I am not sure if he could handle you, Brother Zahn. Upon hearing this, the other side immediately replied, fine. I will discuss this with the other thrones. Meanwhile, we see Luo Su admiring the massive corpse of the black ape with excitement, shouting, I don't even need Black Name anymore. I can already fight a level 34 mutant beast on my own. Brother Ning, you are far too powerful. He simply smiled without saying a word, and with a slight movement of his mind, he summoned the 40-meter-tall Black Name and ordered it to devour the corpses of the two mutant beasts. Quickly, the evolution value increased by 0.2 points. He was still far from his goal for the beast, and its value was nowhere near the 1,200 mark. After a moment's thought, he took all the life essence stones he had collected from previous kills and placed them into the black flames. On average, each essence stone provided at least 1 point. His eyes lit up. He had finally found a method to rapidly increase the evolution value. After that, he led the two of them deeper into the forest. Half an hour later, a giant tiger over 30 meters tall, a healing specialist, came rushing out. However, before it could even attack, Black Name used its intimidation skill and paralyzed it instantly. Immediately after, the ground exploded as Black Name reappeared right in front of the giant tiger with its sharp claws extended. The tiger was knocked down directly by a palm strike of terrifying power. Under the force of the recoil, the giant tiger smashed through several towering trees, leaving 4 horrific wounds on its face and countless streams of blood. But before it could recover from the pain, Black Name was already standing over it. The thought of run instantly filled its brain, but in terms of speed, it was no match for Black Name at all. In just 10 seconds, the giant tiger was completely devoured by the black flames. This cruel scene even unsettled those in the command center. Those vertical pupils, even through the screen, made them feel a chill through their entire bodies, as if they might die at any moment. Deep down, Yang Xiao smiled bitterly, feeling that the new generation was truly surpassing the old. The 3 people and the beast wandered through the mountain range for an hour. Here, everything was the territory of level 30 mutant beasts or higher, but with the deterrence of Black Name, no mutant beast dared to approach. Just then, a giant goose with blood-red scales all over its body and a length of over 100 meters suddenly appeared. It opened its blood-colored eyes, and a terrifying, fierce gaze erupted, alerting those invading its territory. Black Name immediately bared its fangs as a tyrannical aura exploded from its body. In the very next second, the giant goose's size rapidly expanded, reaching a length of nearly 300 meters. Feeling oppressed, the giant goose grew enraged and rose heavily, each step making the ground tremble. Meanwhile, black flames surged around Black Name with claws extended. With black light floating around it, a circle of golden light slowly rose over its fur, revealing an immovable strength. The giant goose then opened its massive mouth, showing a row of incomparably sharp teeth, but it couldn't even close its jaw upon biting the golden light. Black Name simply watched it coldly before raising its claws and bringing them down with force. Instantly, countless blood-red scales were shattered, leaving the flesh a mangled mess, while the giant goose's chest let out a roar. It swung its heavy, long tail with a swirling red light, a terrifying force hitting Black Name like a gale. The beast's claws plowed for long, deep marks into the ground. Black Name barely managed to pull away from the giant goose, stopping itself with all its might as the goose followed closely, its limbs lunging to bite. Black Name, dragging them both down into the lake behind them. Torrential waves splashed instantly as, beneath the surface, the two giant beasts fought frantically, churning the lake water into a murky swirl. The black flames covering Black Name's body didn't diminish at all. On the contrary, the surrounding water temperature continued to rise. Even with the environmental advantage, the giant goose was still firmly suppressed. Its bloodlight spun frantically, but it still failed to cause any real damage. In just a few minutes, the water level of the lake dropped by half. Suddenly, the surface exploded, and a giant black wolf came rushing out of the lake. Its massive size of nearly 300 meters was terrifyingly oppressive, and combined with the fierce aura clinging to its body, it left everyone feeling utterly terrified. Although Black Name wouldn't attack them, Luo Su and the others couldn't help but stare at the lake where the giant goose remained. Inside, the giant goose was finally finished. At that moment, the small AI on his wrist emitted a sound. The mission was complete, and they could return to the military base's collection point to submit it. By the time the three of them returned to the base, it was already 1 in the morning. He walked straight to the collection point, found a soldier, and handed in the task. The soldier asked in disbelief if they had truly completed it. He nodded, realizing there was nothing else to do, and showed the AI's records as proof. After a moment, the soldier reacted. A total of 200 contribution points were awarded. Since they were working as a team, he distributed the points to the other two as previously agreed. Luo Su and the others realized that following him was more effective than they imagined. He was now a level 16 summoner at the Minkei Academy with 100 contribution points, ranking him at 1,245. And this wasn't just within the local base. At this moment, his name was starting to be noticed elsewhere. We see many students lingering at the collection point, their faces filled with surprise as they wonder who this person is, earning a direct 100 contribution points in a single wave. It seems he completed at least 2 third-level tasks. One freshman lamented that his own points were still in the single digits, admitting he only dared to take on first-level missions. These mutant beasts are simply too fierce, and many feel pressured even with a level advantage. Currently, most second and third-year students only have a few dozen points. It is even rarer for a freshman to have more than 10. The reason for their shock, of course, is that he is only 16 years old, a mere first-year student. Yet, he has crossed 2 major ranks and managed to slay 2 mutant beasts of level 30 or higher within the ocean base. To be honest, that is quite the feat. How is this possible? Upon hearing Fan Yi's exclamation, several tutors looked in the same direction, asking if he knew this student who had gained 100 points on his first day. Fan Yi nodded, explaining that this was the same recruitment regret he had mentioned before. At the time, the price he demanded was simply too high for them to meet. Otherwise, he might have been a student at Bainan. Hearing this, the others suddenly understood his winter status, though some remained skeptical of his solo success. Someone shook their head, suggesting an older student with strong combat skills must be leading him in a team. Otherwise, there was no logical way to earn 100 points so quickly. While impressive, they felt such behavior wasn't advisable. After all, this cleanup action is meant to prevent mutant beast uprisings while allowing students to improve themselves. If the situation is urgent, experience is vital for strength, but they felt there was no point in trying to chase rankings on purpose. A bit cynical, perhaps. The tutors shook their heads repeatedly. Even Fan Yi let out a long sigh. He had originally held high hopes for the boy, but now he felt a flicker of disappointment. As he spoke, he looked at a young man in black nearby and smiled. Lin Su had completed his task. Hearing the sound, Xiaohou Yunsu approached, greeting tutor Fan. He reported killing mutant beasts from level 22 to 27. He explained he could have returned sooner, but he encountered a level 33 armored lizard along the way. He claimed it took a lot of effort to kill it, though his voice remained calm, as if it were a minor detail. Fan Yi's mouth twitched before he offered sincere praise. To kill a level 33 beast at level 17 is truly impressive. The geniuses of this year seem endless. A faint, confident smile played across Xiaohou Yunsu's lips. He told the professor not to worry, declaring that while this was a great gathering of geniuses, he was invincible and would surpass every opponent to claim the throne. Xiaohou Yunsu took a secret glance around, noticing the tutors were covering their faces in silence. Suddenly, his eyes fell upon the name on the large screen. His face froze instantly, his heart refusing to believe it. It seemed impossible that anyone could be more powerful than him, especially with 100 contribution points. Even counting the armored lizard he killed, it wasn't enough. Seeing Xiaohou Yunsu's existential crisis, Fan Yi remarked helplessly that they had just been discussing this very matter. A faint smile played across Xiaohou Yunsu's lips, his face radiating confidence as he assured the professor that while this was a gathering of geniuses, he remained invincible and would surpass every opponent to ascend the throne. After that, he hurriedly bid farewell to Fan Yi and walked decisively toward the mountains already shrouded in darkness. Meanwhile, we return to the dormitory where our protagonist was finishing his day. He shared a meal with his friend and entrusted the care of his companions to them. By 9 o'clock, he arrived at the block and selected 2 difficult tasks. These were difficult-level missions requiring the strength of a fourth transfer. Just as he entered the mountains, the official immediately shouted to Yang Xiao that he had accepted such a high-level challenge. Upon hearing this, Yang Xiao took a deep breath, realizing that crossing 2 ranks wasn't enough for this boy. He was now aiming for a third, targeting the 4th transfer level. This level corresponds to mutant beasts of level 40 or higher, a true dividing line where even an attack helicopter's full payload couldn't scratch the skin of such a creature. The official immediately began operations to notify the Yunk Academy tutors, fearing that Chen Nin might meet with a terrible accident if he went in alone. Soon, this information was transmitted via smart bracelets to 3 Yunk tutors at the base. After a brief discussion, they decided to send Jean Badu to follow him. As long as Chen Nin pressed the distress button, he could receive support almost instantly. Meanwhile, amidst a sea of giant vines, a black giant wolf was traveling rapidly. He reached the mission objective in about an hour, where a massive level 44 three-headed snake was currently emitting a low, hissing warning. He silently extended his hand, and a mysterious, transparent force key over a meter long emerged. As he slowly raised and lowered his hand, the three-headed snake suddenly recoiled. It felt the breath of death in the darkness, and in the next second, its left head was struck by the echoing remnant force of the blow. That head fell helplessly onto the rock, and the other 2 heads quickly nudged it several times. Seeing it was lifeless, the creature was instantly terrified. He then ordered Min to strike. Receiving the command, Min rushed forward, his body suddenly exploding to nearly 300 meters in length as black flames erupted. Sensing the terrifying pressure, the three-headed snake opened its mouth and spat purple venom, but Min faced the attack directly. He bared his fangs and bit the middle head, dragging it to the ground. The remaining head, seeing its companion being torn apart, lunged forward with a mad hiss. It sank its fangs fiercely into Min's flesh, and instantly, venom began to flow through the blood toward his internal organs. Fortunately, his enhanced physical attributes allowed Min to resist the erosion. Black light emerged from his claws as he tore into the head that was biting him. At that moment, he drew the celestial sword and vanished, reappearing suddenly in front of the three-headed snake to plunge the blade into its flesh. The creature let out a miserable cry of severe pain. Simultaneously, claws wreathed in black flames struck it fiercely against the ground, though its snake tail remained a threat. A massive coil 30 meters thick whipped up a furious wind, and as he raised his sword to resist, he was sent crashing into the ground like a missile. Seeing this, Min flew into an instantaneous rage, his claws erupting with black light to tear through that tough skin, which suddenly seemed as fragile as paper under his assault. After opening a wound several meters deep, Min lunged forward, sinking his teeth into the snake's other neck and thrashing it frantically as if trying to rip it apart. Imagine the scene, 200-meter giants locked in combat, shattering the earth and toppling ancient trees, while our protagonist simply stood up from the dust, completely unharmed. The silver disc's defense remained as reliable as ever. Watching the 2 beasts fight with increasing frenzy, he sat on a nearby rock, knowing it was only a matter of time. Meanwhile, a tall woman in white armor was approaching silently, but he reacted instantly, drawing his war saber as a fluorescent light flashed through the darkness. The strike was a surprise even to Master Jean Badu, who nodded in shock. She could feel the sheer weight behind that blade as it collided with her own. Even a level 59 professional had to exert real effort to block that blow. When he asked why she was there, she slowly withdrew her hand. Her hand was trembling slightly, though she hid it well, calmly explaining she had simply heard a commotion and decided to investigate, which was a bit of an understatement. Just then, a 30-meter tongue slammed down from the sky with a thunderous crash, and as the dust settled, a roar echoed for thousands of meters. Black flames greedily devoured the Hydra's corpse, converting it into pure energy and evolution points. At over 300 meters, the creature looked like a force of nature. Jean Badu stood there, shaken, even from a distance. That violent aura and the sense of a bottomless hunger made her feel completely numb. On the other side, the excitement was boiling over. He had jumped 3 major realms and bridged a 28-level gap, an achievement that seemed almost impossible. Yang Xiao felt this combat power surpassed even the legendary geniuses with SS-level talents. After confirming their route, the excitement was palpable. He mounted the Black Wolf and continued his journey. After devouring the Hydra's essence, the wolf grew another meter, and his evolution points climbed by 10. At this rate, it would only take a few more days for the wolf to evolve again, potentially reaching the prestigious rank of an advanced invocation. His talent would also upgrade to the extreme level, making his combat power truly terrifying. But suddenly, a massive roar erupted in the distance. A wild bull, covered in thick, dark yellow spiritual iron armor, came charging through the brush with unstoppable momentum. With horns over 30 meters long cracking the very ground, they had found their second target, a level 45 horned wild bull. He didn't hesitate for a second. He immediately cast an enhancement spell. The black wolf roared as its size exploded and black flames erupted, shining with an intense, blinding light. In an instant, the combat power surged as the wild bull fully activated its strength. Right then, its razor-sharp horns struck with immense force, and the black wolf raised its limbs. He blocked with both palms, but under that terrifying impact, the black wolf was violently pushed back, plowing a long, deep trench into the earth as the two beasts collided. The giants hurtled thousands of meters in the blink of an eye, with the overhead drone accelerating to keep up. Meanwhile, at headquarters, Yang Xiao spoke up immediately. He ordered the students to clear the route quickly, knowing that when summoned creatures fight in groups, they don't care who gets trampled. The officer heard this and began operating the controls. The black wolf, whom we'll call Blackie, extended his feet, coating them in dark light, and suddenly exerted enough force to bring the horned wild bull down, its massive body hitting the ground. Dust filled the air, and a nearby team of 2 men and 3 women, having run hundreds of meters for their lives, looked back at the scene in utter shock. They realized this was why headquarters had ordered them to evacuate. Fortunately, they had moved fast, or their lives would have ended right there in the crossfire. One student couldn't believe it, noting one beast was level 45 while the other was only level 16, which, to be honest, didn't look like a level 16 at all. The nearby instructor noticed the commotion and prepared to intervene, but Jean Bidou appeared silently, standing in her way to block her path. She told her there was no need to worry, explaining that the creature belonged to a first-year student from Yunk. Hearing this, the instructor was completely stunned. Her eyes filled with shock as she asked if it was a joke. Seeing this reaction, the corner of Jean Bidou's mouth rose ever so slightly as she spoke calmly. She noted that the student was truly outstanding for this generation, leaving the instructor with a blank, dry expression. Outstanding was clearly an understatement. She added that the student and Jifei were childhood friends, suggesting that talent simply runs in the circle. Hearing this, the instructor felt a sudden pang of envy. Half an hour later, Blackie finally finished devouring the bull. The wolf's eyes scanned the surroundings, and not finding his master immediately, he turned to head back. Not long after, he discovered his master was being chased by a 50-meter toad. Instantly, the wolf flew into an unparalleled rage. His figure blurred as he lunged, delivering a terrifying claw strike that instantly killed the level 36 mutant beast. Seeing this, our protagonist finally breathed a sigh of relief. After using a recovery spell and resting for half an hour, he realized the process was taking too long, but losing a few contribution points was a small price to pay. The priority now was to evolve Blackie as soon as possible and reach level 20 to enter the class change dungeon. He knew the situation for humanity was grim. Ever since he understood the stakes, he had felt an inexplicable sense of urgency. Now, in the dead of night in the wild mountains, Blackie was shrouded in a terrifying aura. Beneath the wolf's feet lay 2 level 42 mutant beasts. Black flames greedily devoured their corpses, constantly transforming and merging with Blackie's growing body. The difficulty was immense. His mental strength was exhausted to the extreme, and he could no longer maintain even a simple recovery spell as his mind and body reached their absolute limits. His entire body felt numb and aching, especially after he had forced himself to help Blackie block another mutant beast for several minutes, a gamble that nearly cost them everything. But the harvest was worth the risk. In a single day, he hunted beasts from level 15 to 40, and Blackie's normal size has now grown to nearly 6 meters. All of his attributes have increased by 58 points, collectively exceeding 300. If he faced that horned bull now, he could likely resolve the matter in under 10 minutes. Even those 2 level 42 mutant beasts nearby were easily crushed, and his evolution values have climbed by 195 points, leaving only 1,020 more to reach perfection. As we see him return to the Injuan base, everyone there lets out a collective sigh of relief, though the military officer can't help but exclaim at how terrifying his progress is. She notes that killing level 40 beasts in a single day would translate to over 2,000 contribution points, a figure that leaves the entire room in a state of shock. Currently, the top student at the Injuan base has only 700 points. That would be Desai King from the Yundu Academy, who was the star student 3 years ago. Yang Xiao asks about the other bases, and the officer quickly checks the data, reporting on Bailong and the Ocean base where the rest of the Pseudo Academy is stationed. There, the highest student contribution is 1,000, followed by 890 from the Yuntian Academy in the south, which oversees dozens of different military outposts. They plan to start with the largest mountain range where the most mutant beasts reside, sweeping the surroundings for months until the threat to the city is finally neutralized. However, a massive gap has opened up. It isn't just that the top student is on a different level, but the overall progress of the cleanup varies wildly between locations. Yang Xiao frowns at the lead the Ocean base has taken, while the officer explains that the Bailong Academy is consistently rated as the primary threat every single year. Naturally, more people are eager to enroll there, which creates a significant disparity in talent, a problem that is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. One can only imagine how fierce the competition is, with everyone giving their absolute best, unwilling to be left behind in such a high-stakes environment. Still, this is a positive development. The faster they clear their zones, the sooner they can distribute their energy to help the other bases that are currently lagging behind. Aside from the 5 bases led by top-tier academies, the situation in the other 13 is not very optimistic, as level 20 beasts show no signs of decreasing. Yang Xiao nods, agreeing that they must maintain their momentum and strive to support the other bases as much as humanly possible. By the time he reaches the district at 2:30 in the morning, the streets are still lit, and his ranking has shot up like a rocket from 1,245th to 10th place. He pays it no mind and returns to the dorm, where Maple immediately pounces on him, looking at him as if he were some kind of monster, which, to be honest, isn't far off. Maple tells Chen-Lin that he's essentially a monster in human skin, as the gap in combat power is simply too exaggerated. Chen-Lin just smiles without saying a word and takes a seat. The Academy's public forum is already in an absolute uproar. Maple sits down beside him in shock, explaining that everyone mistakenly thinks a veteran student is carrying a rookie. They are severely condemning this behavior. If completing a level 3 mission and gaining 100% of his level was controversial before, now almost everyone is up in arms. People are questioning the results, feeling it's all too fake. Currently, the senior student King Kong is in a miserable spot, as he is the prime suspect everyone is targeting. Chen-Lin asks about it with curiosity, and at that exact moment, his smartwatch receives a friend request. It's from King Kong, the very veteran suspected of boosting his score. He clicks accept immediately, and the moment the connection is made, King Kong sends a single, intriguing sentence. Level 52, giant flame dragon crab tomorrow. Looking at the message, Chen-Lin asks if he's interested, replying that he only needs the life crystal and the carcass of the giant flame dragon crab. The rest is theirs. The contribution points will go to the veterans. After agreeing on a time and place to meet the next day, Chen-Lin leaves the base and sees King Kong gesturing toward him. He points to a slender girl with a bright gaze named Kashi and another boy named Wang Yao, and soon, the 4 of them climb into an armored vehicle and set off. As they head deep into the mountains, King Kong explains that the giant flame dragon crab carries a trace of a king-level bloodline, a dangerous detail, to be sure. Its specific talents remain unknown, so they will have to be extremely careful when the time comes to deal with it. In the heat of the moment, the plan is for King Kong and Wang Yao to lead the primary assault. Meanwhile, Kashi will stay back to provide essential buffs and healing from a safe distance. King Kong then turns to ask Chen-Lin about the actual combat power of his summoned creature. Chen-Lin replies calmly, stating that holding his own against the giant flame dragon crab won't be a problem at all. Upon hearing this, the eyes of the 3 veterans light up immediately with a newfound sense of hope. They tell themselves that they certainly haven't picked the wrong person for such a dangerous task. Originally, they worried that if his power barely reached the level of a level 40 mutant beast, they would be in trouble. In that case, the battle would have been futile, but seeing him so confident, they finally feel a sense of relief. After the armored vehicle travels 200 kilometers into the wilderness, the group finally steps out to face what lies ahead. King Kong comes to a halt and turns to the group, announcing that they have finally reached the territory of the giant flame dragon crab. He tells them he will go ahead to lure the beast out, and that everyone should prepare themselves to hold the line. Upon hearing this, Chen-Lin speaks up softly, his voice carrying a calm confidence that catches them off guard. He tells them there is no need for such risks. Then, with just a slight thought, he begins his summoning. Suddenly, a massive black dog standing 58 meters tall descends from the sky, landing heavily before them. A wave of tyrannical power spreads out instantly, pushing even their heavy combat vehicle back thousands of meters. Having escaped death countless times before, the veterans still find themselves hurrying to get clear of the overwhelming pressure. Despite the danger, the 3 of them feel a surge of excitement, and their tension breaks into loud, nervous laughter. In a slow-motion blur, a pair of vertical yellow pupils, large as lanterns, snap open, and an aura of pure terror erupts. Amidst a dominant howl that seems to pierce the very sky, the giant flame dragon crab finally emerges from its lair. Every single step the creature takes causes the ground to tremble beneath their feet without end. We see its enormous 500-meter frame, covered in spiritual iron like solid rock. Its sheer ferocity is enough to make anyone shudder. King Kong and the others look on with solemn expressions, realizing they had still underestimated the beast, yet Chen-Lin remains perfectly calm. With a single focused thought, he reaches out and communicates with his loyal companion, Black Name. Black Name instantly grows into a giant beast of nearly 500 meters, with dark, ominous flames bursting from his fur. A golden light flickers as his ferocity becomes even more terrifying, a sight that leaves the 3 veterans completely speechless. The vertical pupils of the giant flame dragon crab flare with anger, sensing that this newcomer isn't quite as high level as itself. And yet, those strange black flames make the dragon crab feel a faint, nagging sense of a real threat. At that moment, Black Name lets out a low growl, his posture revealing a clear and deliberate trace of provocation. The giant flame dragon crab is instantly enraged, slamming its front limbs down so hard that the very earth begins to shatter. sharp stone pillars, each dozens of meters thick, suddenly lunged through the air toward Black Name. Black Name dodged the attack with a quick, almost mocking movement. He swung a massive paw in return, but only managed to scrape a layer of scales before the giant flame dragon crab spun and struck back. This time, the beast channeled its innate talent. A bright yellow light flared, and its weight increased to a terrifying degree. The blow fell with the crushing force of a mountain, compressing the very air around it as it descended. Black Name's protective golden light didn't last long against such power before it shattered completely. His massive frame was thrown back dozens of meters, only barely managing to come to a halt. Seeing the battle erupt so violently, King Kong immediately shouted for his team to take action. Without wasting a second, he began casting support buffs on the entire group. Every single individual enhancement he had was directed toward Chun-Lin's summon. He was being decisive, realizing that the giant flame dragon crab was far more powerful than they had imagined. We are looking at a level 50 mutant beast, after all, and one carrying a royal bloodline. To be honest, this wasn't the kind of creature they could expect to defeat simply by outnumbering it. Even fighting it at an equal level would be difficult, yet King Kong found himself watching in total shock. This level 16 summon was actually holding its own against a level 52 mutant beast. With a gap of 36 levels between them, such combat power was nothing short of terrifying. Jekix nodded immediately as a brilliant golden light enveloped her, and 4 magic circles appeared beneath the veterans and Black Name. Power flowed steadily into the summon as a series of empowering auras were applied to him. Black Name's core attributes surged instantly, growing by a massive amount under the influence of the spells. As she watched the transformation, Jekix herself was filled with a sense of pure wonder. If these buffs had fallen on King Kong, they would have doubled his power at the very least, but the amplification on this summon was significantly weakened. Truly terrifying, Jekix didn't stop her movements for a second, activating the power of her talent with a single thought. Invoking the protection of the goddess of heavenly punishment, she began a brief, haunting chant with her hands pressed together. Slowly, the goddess of the doomsday sky began to manifest, looming over the massive black wolf. When her closed eyes finally snapped open, a terrifying pressure, one that felt like the end of all things, instantly erupted. At that moment, Chun-Lin also quietly used his enhancement technique, and under the weight of so many buffs, Black Name's attributes surged to 2,000. This massive magical increase caused the temperature of the black flames to burn even hotter than before. Even from a distance of 100 meters, King Kong and the others could feel the terrifying heat radiating from the beast. Such a sudden transformation made the giant flame dragon crab become incomparably solemn and cautious. Suddenly, it turned its wide, glaring eyes toward King Kong and the rest of the group. King Kong's expression tightened. He drew his battle sword and immediately activated his extreme speed talent. The ground beneath his feet exploded as his figure appeared atop the giant flame dragon crab's head, as if he had teletransported. In the blink of an eye, he landed over 10 sword strikes, but it was like hitting a slab of solid stone, unable to break the defense at all. To the giant flame dragon crab, these attacks were even less significant than a light tickle. Knowing he couldn't push his luck, King Kong didn't get greedy for damage and immediately retreated. However, just as he jumped from the beast's head, the giant flame dragon crab suddenly roared toward the sky, and in the next second, a current of yellow air exploded outward, spreading for 100 miles and forming a massive domain. An extremely heavy gravity suddenly pressed down on King Kong's body with crushing force. His figure was slammed directly out of the air, crashing hard onto the ground below. As King Kong struggled to stand, a giant palm descended from above, casting a massive, suffocating shadow over him. Jakexi's expression shifted instantly. She immediately deployed every defense she had, but the barrier she raised proved to be as fragile as paper. It didn't even last a single second before it shattered into pieces. Kong couldn't help but feel a wave of despair as his body felt ready to give out, just as the giant palm was about to crush him. Suddenly, a dark shadow rushed in with incredible speed. The sheer force of the impact was enough to knock the giant flame dragon crab right off its feet. The resulting gale was so powerful it felt like a massive mountain was collapsing right beside them. Looking up at the deep black wolf, Kong's eyes were filled with gratitude as he scrambled away from the massive crater. Once he reached a safer distance, Kong couldn't help but flash a bitter smile. He truly hadn't expected the giant flame dragon crab to possess a second talent. Its actual combat power might even be greater than that of a level 55 mutant beast. At this point, we see the group feels quite useless. Earlier, they were worried their ally might be unreliable. Now, the tables have turned completely. If it weren't for Black Name, he knew he would be dead without a doubt. Just then, the yellow domain expanded once more, and under that terrible gravity, Black Name was fiercely suppressed. A worried Kong asked if the wolf could actually win this. Jakexi grit her teeth tightly. Sweat rolled down her cheeks as she struggled to maintain the buffs and healing for Black Name. If it doesn't work, they would have to retreat together and abandon the mission, but Chun-Lin remained calm, telling them to move back 1,000 meters. Black Name was about to go all out, leaving the three of them stunned. Was that previous display not even his full power? But they were only surprised for a moment. Without hesitation, they turned and ran as fast as they could. Half a minute later, we see the three of them looking back from a distance of 1,000 meters. Suddenly, a roar that could only be described as world-shaking destruction echoed through the heavens and the earth. Terrifying black flames erupted in a torrential surge, consuming everything in their path. The catastrophe spread for 1,000 meters as a violent ferocity rose to its absolute peak. For several thousand meters around them, it felt as though they were welcoming the end of the world. A ferocious beast shadow, 700 meters tall, slowly condensed, exuding a terrifying aura that sought to devour everything. Naturally, the faces of the three companions turned pale. Deep down, a profound sense of dread began to take root within them. Ye Chao, unfortunately, was even weaker than the others and found he simply couldn't stand up. He could feel the protective goddess of Black Name's talent being affected by the chaos. She was being torn apart directly by this overwhelming force. To him, this impact was no different than if his own god of faith had been struck down with a single slap. At the same time, we see the dragon-like eyes of the great beast filled with fear as it was enveloped in black flames. The scales covering its massive body began to melt away, layer by layer. The yellow aura was stripped from its body and devoured by the darkness. Even its earth domain was being heavily suppressed by the sheer weight of the attack. Seeing Black Name flash that mocking expression once again, the beast was instantly enraged and let out a sneer. A giant palm tore through the black flames with desperate strength. As it descended with a yellow light, Black Name didn't bother to dodge or hide, which, to be honest, was quite bold. The shadow at his chest raised a terrifying palm of its own, condensed from the flaming force. It tore forward like a bolt of lightning, and the collision between the two exploded into waves of black and yellow shockwaves. A deafening roar echoed everywhere, shaking the very foundation of the earth. Suddenly, the great dragon-faced beast felt a sharp, agonizing pain shooting through its palm. Its defensive scales were instantly shattered by the sheer impact of that flaming palm of force. A terrifying heat began to slowly consume its very life force. Finally, at the moment things began to tear apart, Black Name felt a surge of panic. He activated his talent with all his might and turned abruptly. A tail, stretching a full 100 meters long, whistled through the air in a massive sweep. Black Name leaped lightly into the air to dodge the incoming attack. And just like that, he arrived directly in front of the great dragon-faced beast. The palm of force descended, and the great dragon-faced beast let out a miserable roar. It had always relied on its powerful defense to reign supreme over others. It had almost never been injured before, but now it stood on the brink of a grave wound as its defense and strength began to fail. Its movements were slow and clumsy. Meanwhile, Black Name, aided by his own powerful defense, tore through the air. He was bolstered by the attack range of the shadow manifesting from his chest. The beast could do nothing but kick at the ground in a fit of helpless fury. After half an hour of this grueling attrition, the limbs of the great dragon-faced beast could no longer hold its weight. Its life was nearly exhausted, and we see its eyes were now filled with nothing but pure terror. Black Name showed no emotion whatsoever. Only a cold, flickering greed remained in his gaze. The black flames boiled over as the palm of force prepared to deliver the final, decisive blow. The great dragon-faced beast roared with resentment and collapsed with a thunderous crash, instantly consumed by the black flames. High above, a drone flew quickly by, faithfully recording this apocalyptic scene on the ground for all the shocked viewers. Yang Xiao fixed his gaze on the towering black giant wolf, completely ignoring any trace of the fallen dragon-faced beast. In that moment, he understood exactly what was happening. He took a sharp breath of cold air and wondered just how many more surprises this man had in store for them. The first time, he had managed to surpass 2 entire major realms. That was already the limit for the human race. But then he crossed 3 realms and hunted down 3 axe snakes. And now, he has even managed to strike with the force of a level 16. We are talking about level 52 mutant beasts of royal lineage. A gap of 4 complete major realms, which, to be honest, is practically unheard of. Yang Xiao was now absolutely certain that the alien race's true target was Chun-Lin's spiritual effect island. He knew he had to prepare well, as the net to catch the big fish had only just been set. He planned to post the recording of Chun-Lin slaying the 3 axe snakes on the forum tomorrow, showing everyone that a dragon had been born. While others claimed he was guiding the young man, in reality, it was the other way around. This time, neither he nor Wang Yao had contributed anything to the fight. He suggested that the contribution points should be divided solely between him and Ye Chao. However, he simply shook his head and insisted they stick to their original agreement. Deep down, he still wanted to continue hunting level 50 mutant beasts. After devouring the great dragon-faced beast and its life essence, Black Name's evolution value had jumped by 150 points. That is 10 times the value of a level 40 mutant beast, a very efficient hunt, indeed. He realized that if he could kill just a few more, he might be able to evolve once again. Shinken's eyes lit up at the prospect, and he gladly accepted the proposal. He knew that Yi Chao's support effect would be vital for what was coming next, and so, the three of them began to clear out the surrounding mutant beasts, ranging from level 50 to 54. By the late hours of the night, he saw that Black Name's evolution value was finally full, so he called the three of them together to prepare for their return. Back at headquarters, everyone was full of praise. In a single day, they had managed to slay 11 mutant beasts above level 50. Their speed was even faster than before, a truly impressive feat, to be honest. A female officer noted that across the entire Balian mountain range, there were mutant beasts above level 50. There are just over 1,000 in total, and at this rate, we can expect the cleanup to be completed in little more than a month. Yang Xiao nodded with satisfaction, knowing these level 50 mutant beasts were hidden dangers caused by the rising humidity. Once they are eliminated, even the strongest giant beasts with high intellect won't dare to attack so easily. Later, back in the quiet of his dormitory, he picked up the controller. He decided to use his contribution points to request 10 second-level life essences. As it turns out, the purchasing power of contribution points is significantly higher than that of mere academic credits. It is a specialized system designed to reward those doing the heavy lifting in frontline commerce. These points can only be obtained by making a genuine contribution to the survival of the human race. And hunting down dangerous mutant beasts certainly counts toward that goal. Not long after, the life essence he had requested was delivered to his door. He opened the safe and placed the 10 thumb-sized essences into the palm of his hand. The essence exploded instantly, turning into a torrent of fragments that merged directly into his body. We see his power surging as his level rapidly rises, reaching level 20 in a matter of moments. Upon seeing the notification for the second-class transfer on his personal panel, he clicked it without a moment's hesitation. Instantly, a brilliant white light flashed, filling the entire room. When his vision finally recovered, he found that he had successfully transitioned into his new level 20 status. We find ourselves on a vast plain, where a transparent screen of light suddenly flickers into existence before him. The display shows the coordinates for location number 00996. This, we learn, is a world that has been completely overrun by malevolent races. They enslave everything in their path, and anyone who dares to resist is ruthlessly slaughtered. These wicked beings are among the primary races currently launching attacks against humanity. They even possess the terrifying power to invade other worlds at will. As he processes this, his expression becomes suddenly and deeply solemn. After traveling for quite some time, he eventually arrives at the outskirts of a village. In the heart of a massive jungle, we see a group of gray-skinned, upright monsters surrounding the area. They stand over 2 meters tall, with strange horns protruding from the lower parts of their frames. Their eyes glow a haunting shade of scarlet, which, to be honest, is a rather unsettling sight. They are forcing humans with numb, hollow faces to harvest fresh blood to feed a cluster of pitch-black objects. It appears to be a small tree laden with fruit that looks like blood-red pulp. Witnessing this scene, he is filled with a cold fury, and under a fluorescent glow, his battle armor covers his entire body. Instantly, the ground beneath him explodes as he leaps from a cliff over 100 meters high. Just as two of the monsters are speaking, a thunderous crash erupts from directly behind them. They all turn their heads in unison, only to see a silver shadow bursting rapidly out of the earth. He stands slowly amidst the swirling dust and smoke, and in the blink of an eye, he is right in front of them. His armored fist, carrying a powerful white shockwave, strikes out with immense force. It lands squarely on the face of a venomous demon, sending it flying like a bullet as its nose bones shatter. The creature slammed into the ground dozens of meters away and would have suffered a fatal concussion if not for its robust body. In fact, its head likely would have exploded. Seeing this, the expression of the other venomous demon changed drastically. Dark energy began to condense, forming long, wicked spikes in the palm of its hand. Our hero didn't hide for even a second, standing tall as he slowly emerged from the swirling dust and smoke. We see only a silver shadow as he bursts rapidly from the earth once more. The face of the venomous demon twisted in a look of pure, unadulterated shock. Once again, that dark power condensed into sharp, lethal spikes. They grew long in its hand, but he didn't bother hiding for even a moment. We watch as the demon's composure continues to crumble before our eyes. The dark energy solidified into those jagged spikes once more. They were incredibly long and sharp. They struck his hand, but they had absolutely no effect when trying to pierce his reinforced armor. While the demon stood there frozen in horror, his battle hammer whistled through the air, instantly wiping out a whole group of them. He moves like a humanoid beast, fueled by massive strength as he swings a battle hammer weighing 13 tons. With each great swing, the venomous demons fell, mutilated one after another, a grim sight, to be sure. Kintai gradually began to panic, using dark power to conjure heavy chains in an attempt to wrap him up. He shouted for them to control him together, but as soon as the words left his lips, Kintai's panic only deepened. Kintai felt a tremendous force pulling from the other end of the chain, and his body was dragged forward, completely out of control. The flaming battle hammer came crashing down from above with terrifying momentum. His face went pale, and he frantically pushed his talent to the limit, hoping for a miracle that likely wasn't coming. The surface layer of his body split open, sprouting hard black keratin, but even that couldn't stop him from being cleaved in two by the battle hammer. Seeing his mutilated and lifeless body, Kintai's eyes widened with pure rage as he turned to flee toward the king's city. Our hero immediately transformed his battle hammer into a long spear, taking careful aim at the retreating figure. He locked his gaze on Kintai, the muscles in his arm tensing before he launched the weapon with all his might. The battle spear tore through the air and pierced him, shattering his head instantly. A brutal end, to be sure. The remaining venomous demons let out a collective, deafening roar of desperation. They screamed that he was unarmed and to kill him quickly, but those words would be their last mistake. He threw a devastating punch, crushing the head of the first demon to charge, and began to fight them with his bare hands. Each of his strikes carried a visible white shockwave, vibrating with immense power. In no time at all, the 80 venomous demons were completely torn apart, just as he prepared to retrieve his spear. Suddenly, a massive eye formed by strange gray streaks appeared in the sky above. At that moment, he raised his head and stared directly back into that enormous, haunting gray eye. It seemed he had finally been discovered, and so, he took a long, steady breath. With a single thought, he summoned Black Name, a creature over 100 meters tall, radiating an utterly terrifying ferocity. Meanwhile, a vast horde of venomous demons was already closing in on their position. To be safe, he immediately initiated the evolution process for his companion. As he did, the primal power deep within Black Name's body began to manifest in a spectacular display. Strands of terrifying evolutionary energy swept through his body, erupting into a pillar of black light that pierced the clouds and shattered the gray eye. The very foundations of heaven and earth seemed to tremble under the weight of this transformation. Black Name let out a roar toward the heavens, releasing an explosive and truly terrifying ferocity. The sound of that roar echoed across the landscape, traveling for several thousand meters. And here we see the results. His summon, Black Name, had successfully obtained the All skill. But that wasn't all, as Black Name also gained a formidable new talent known as Death from the beginning. Every single one of the creature's attributes increased by a staggering 90 points. He took a steady breath, noting that this was, once again, a massive and comprehensive improvement. Among these new gifts, the most powerful remained the Celestial Flame. It had ascended to a true celestial flame, and by merging 3 types of power, it could now form its own domain. As for the new talent, he hadn't used it yet, but he knew a level 1 talent would certainly not go to waste. Right at that moment, strange streaks suddenly began to bleed across the sky once more. That enormous gray eye reappeared, and immediately afterward, the peace was shattered. A dense, swarming multitude of venomous demons charged fiercely from across the horizon. The 10 demons leading the charge were particularly dangerous, reaching level 55. To be honest, a level 20 reincarnation dungeon with this level of difficulty was unheard of. In fact, such a challenge had never appeared in the entire history of the human race. He remained calm, his thoughts shifting slightly as he assessed the incoming threat. In an instant, he transformed his battle spear back into a giant, heavy battle hammer. He gave a cold, simple command, Black Name, leave none of them alive. As soon as those words were spoken, Black Name's massive body shot forward with incredible speed. The creature grew rapidly, transforming into a terrifying black beast standing 550 meters tall. That was just to its shoulders. Its total length now exceeded 1,000 meters, a truly staggering sight. Jet black flames exploded from every inch of its massive body. The dark blue patterns on its skin had shifted, transforming into eerie, double gray pupils. It radiated an aura of death so potent that it made every nearby creature tremble in its tracks. The dragon's roar echoed once more, resonating across dozens of kilometers. Faced with such terrifying ferocity, the entire swarm of venomous demons came to a dead halt. Every single one of them felt a profound, primal fear rising from deep within. That terrifying flame burning across its body was unlike anything they had ever seen. It signaled extreme danger. Even from several kilometers away, the scorching heat did not diminish in the slightest. With a body now exceeding 1,000 meters, a single slow step from Black Name covered several hundred meters. This movement immediately put the 5 venomous demons on high alert. Suddenly, exerted a burst of abrupt, overwhelming strength. The earth within a radius of several hundred meters cracked instantly under the pressure. His speed increased rapidly as he began absorbing the very energy of heaven and earth. In an instant, his figure appeared right in the middle of the swarming evil beings. The gray worm stared back at them with cold, unfeeling eyes. Raised his enormous arm, his soul turning as cold as the strike he was about to deliver. A massive shadow fell, and many of the creatures beneath the giant beast were instantly crushed into nothingness. They were swallowed by 7 black flames. Seeing this, the leader, La Yaris, screamed out a desperate command. He told them not to worry about the monster and to go kill the human instead. And so, we see the entire swarm of evil beings attempting to divert and flank him from the side. Mean's double pupils turned cold in an instant, signaling that the time for mercy had long since passed. And immediately, his massive front palm descended, accompanied by a bone-chilling roar. The 7 black flames covering his entire body exploded outward, forming a circle several thousand meters wide. It swallowed everything within its reach, and naturally, the countless evil beings were instantly seized by terror. They didn't just feel a searing pain, they could sense their very life force being rapidly stripped away. In those critical seconds, the weaker beings crumbled into ash, leaving La Yari shocked and cursing her luck. She wondered what kind of power this could be, one capable of burning directly through her source of life. That life source represents longevity, and once lost, it cannot be recovered without the rarest of natural treasures. She hurriedly ordered an attack, knowing that if they delayed, even a victory would leave them with no time left to live. The other 9 evil beings nodded and immediately began condensing various weapons from the surrounding energy. Each of them prepared to unleash their strongest, most lethal killing move. However, as the attack struck a golden light drifted upward, radiating an unshakable sense of absolute power. Every single one of those attacks was completely blocked, which was, to be honest, quite a demoralizing sight for them. La Yari's ground her teeth in frustration, unable to comprehend how his defense could possibly be this strong. At that moment, a giant palm struck suddenly, feeling as if an entire mountain range were pressing down amidst the thunder. Instantly, black wings sprouted from La Yari's back, cutting through the air like sharp swords as she tried to flee. And yet, despite her speed, her mind was suddenly filled with an infinite, overwhelming sense of dread. A pair of ruthless double eyes, containing the very essence of death, emerged from the shadows to watch her. La Yari's figure came to an immediate, jarring halt, her body refusing to obey her will. Under the gaze of those eyes of death, the pressure intensified, and the giant palm finally came crashing down with full force. La Yari's was torn apart. She found herself completely unable to move as the earth collapsed instantly, as if a great land dragon were turning in its sleep. Watching this giant black wolf, who now resembled a walking natural disaster, the 9 remaining evil beings saw only pure terror in each other's eyes. To them, this creature was far too terrifying, a monster in every sense of the word. Their only thought was to escape, and so the remaining 8 beings nodded, unfurling their black wings to fly desperately toward the royal city. After completely devoured La Yari's, he immediately raised his double pupils and cast a freezing, predatory gaze toward the horizon. Casually intercepting one of the fleeing beings, he appeared behind his target in an instant. Sharp claws, shimmering with a dark, ominous light, tore through the creature without a moment's delay. Witnessing this brutal scene, the remaining 8 evil beings were, quite understandably, frightened out of their wits. They likely wished for an extra pair of wings. Just then, Mean's eyes released a surge of deathly intent that chilled them to the bone. The area surrounding one of the beings was transformed into a desolate gray zone, erasing its life force in a heartbeat. At the same time, we see him turn his attention toward the other evil beings emerging from the city. Those who came to kill were met with his expressionless face as his figure shot forward like a bolt of lightning. His halberd swept through the air in every direction, aimed directly at the heart of the evil horde. Under the weight of his relentless assault, the 8 evil beings struggled to mount a defense. Flesh and blood exploded across the battlefield as they lost their lives one by one. Very quickly, the entire 100-meter area was littered with gray blood and broken fragments. Once had finished the battle, he advanced rapidly toward the source of the reinforcements, prepared to eliminate them all. By the time he was done, he had devoured a total of several thousand evil beings. Size increased once more, though it was clear that the energy required for his growth had risen significantly. His evolution value only increased by 100 points, a small gain compared to his earlier progress, and it was precisely at that moment. A majestic, giant city several hundred meters high suddenly appeared in our view. Countless evil beings had already retreated, leaving only a single level 59 entity waiting there alone. Laertes' eyes were cold as a pair of terrifying black wings unfurled behind his 6-meter-tall body. His entire form was wrapped in an overwhelming sense of coercion. The power of corrupt darkness transformed into a heavy airflow, darkening everything in the surrounding area. Looking at this figure, the protagonist's voice was cold, noting just how disgusting the aura felt. He told to take care of him, while he went off to slaughter the other evil beings. Size skyrocketed instantly, reaching thousands of meters in height. Pitch-black flames exploded from him, making him look like a giant beast born of a natural disaster. The momentum from his chest swept in all directions, causing the 1,000-meter plane to collapse. Shot forward instantly, moving with incredible speed. Appearing before the giant city and facing this black wolf 100 times his size, Laertes' face showed no emotion at all. Sharp claws of exploding black light tore through the air, falling instantly like a bolt of lightning. Upon contact, the city walls, which were supposed to be as hard as steel, exploded, proving to be as fragile as paper. However, just as the attack was about to hit Laertes, it was blocked by a condensed barrier of black airflow. He viewed Ymene as a mere life form, a giant beast not even fit for the king level. He wondered if the wolf truly thought killing a few ants would allow him to soar so high. Laertes' tone remained flat, and with a simple snap of his fingers, the black barrier expanded and exploded, pushing Ymene back several hundred meters. Immediately after, black power surged violently, transforming in the blink of an eye into a massive magic sword hundreds of meters long. The sheer force cleared all the grass near the city as circles of dark airflow continually rose around Laertes. In an instant, the momentum of the battle surged to its absolute peak. Laertes declared that as the son of the Demon King, he was nothing like the trash they had faced before. Telling his opponent to prepare for death, Laertes suddenly swung his massive demonic sword. The shadow of the blade, stretching hundreds of meters high, slashed down toward Ymene in the blink of an eye. A golden light flickered across Ymene's body to protect him, but it didn't last long before it shattered. Unable to bear the crushing weight, Ymene let out a roar and braced himself for the impact. He caught the demonic sword with both palms, relying on his tyrannical physical attributes to confront the blade directly. The force was so immense that the surrounding ground instantly sank dozens of meters deep. Right in front of them, the demonic sword tore open a massive, bottomless rift in the earth. With that single, devastating strike, Ymene suffered considerable damage. An unprecedented rage began to boil within Ymene as he stared fixedly at Laertes. Ymene's roar was so powerful it seemed to shake both the heavens and the earth. Pitch-black flames exploded from his entire body, expanding across several kilometers in an instant. As the roaring flames enveloped everything, the terrifying 2,000-meter-tall shadow of a giant bear slowly began to condense. This time, the illusory shadow was on the verge of becoming solid, emitting an aura that made all living things tremble. Sensing a power that seemed capable of devouring everything, Laertes' expression gradually turned solemn. He could feel his very life essence being stripped away by the intensity of the flames. Ymene looked at Laertes with a cold, calm gaze, and without needing to move his body, he simply raised his hand and brought it down. The illusory shadow of the giant bear followed his movement perfectly, becoming more substantial with every passing second. Laertes' expression shifted slightly as he used all his strength to reinforce his barrier against the falling power. But even with all that effort, he couldn't stop the sheer terror radiating from the giant bear's illusory shadow. The pitch-black flames were crushed with overwhelming force against the cold, hard ground. Laertes' expression turned grim, and to be honest, it was quite a sight to behold. Feeling his very life essence being constantly stripped away, he finally erupted in a fit of rage. A terrifying power exploded from his body, but it barely expanded 10 meters before it couldn't advance another inch. Upon seeing his power suppressed so easily, he immediately began to panic. Before he could even react, the claws of the giant bear's shadow struck out once again. Laertes was sent flying back hundreds of meters, smashing right through the city's reinforced stone walls. And it was right at that moment that Laertes' body suddenly surged, growing dozens of meters in height. Black stripes began to cover his skin as massive dark wings unfurled across his back. Stretching out to a full 100 meters, a long black spear slowly condensed until he held it firmly in his hand. Currents of black air exploded frantically all around him, signaling a shift in the tide. He called upon his talent, the fallen demonic body, and told his foe to prepare for death. Laertes let out a roar, and in an instant, his entire figure vanished from sight. With a deafening boom, he tore through the layers of pitch-black flames. A sharp black spear lunged forward to pierce him, but Ymene's reactions and speed were even faster. Using the reach of the giant bear's shadow, he swatted his opponent away as if he were a mere fly. The demon slammed into the earth, opening a massive crater where he landed. Laertes, struggling to get back on his feet, gritted his teeth in pure frustration. After all, he had been a noble demon since the very day of his birth. He had never suffered such a humiliation, and he demanded to know what his subordinates were waiting for. He ordered them to activate the Great Fallen Celestial Blocking Array immediately. As his voice reached the distant rear guard, a black canopy instantly covered the entire area like an inverted bowl. One by one, massive bindings entwined with fallen power emerged from the void, restraining Ymene with layer after layer. Countless currents of black air invaded his entire body along those bindings, as if trying to assimilate him entirely. Seeing Ymene trapped, Laertes laughed wildly, while tens of thousands of demons fueled the array with all their might. He was certain that even a six-ring force would be unable to break free from this. He promised himself that, once the time came, he would make sure to torture his opponent thoroughly. But right at that moment, we hear the Ymene siblings let out a collective roar. It was a fusion of celestial flame and voracious gluttony, a truly terrifying combination. Everything began to transform into the triple power of the Eyes of Death. The pitch-black flames erupted instantly, consuming everything in their path. They expanded directly across thousands of meters, leaving no corner untouched. A terrifying intent of death began to flow through the entire area, chilling the very air. In this moment, as long as one is within that sea of black fire, all creatures are defined as death itself. Even the eternal and immortal gods could perish under such a gaze, or so it seemed. At the same time, the illusory shadow of the giant bear on Imene's body finally solidified completely. Two pairs of dull, gray eyes appeared within the giant sockets of the beast. They contained an intent of death so terrifying it was almost palpable. Within this domain, simply closing those eyes could bring an end to any target. He is now the absolute master of this heaven and earth, the sky-refining prison of death. Open up. This is Imene's domain of fire and death, a triple talent fusion that is, quite frankly, terrifying. In this moment, Laertes' smile froze, and his expression gradually shifted into one of pure terror. He found himself trapped within the sky-refining prison of death with no easy way out. Not only was his life being constantly devoured and transformed by those pitch-black flames, but he was also being slowly annihilated by the overwhelming intent of death itself. He cursed under his breath, deciding they would see who would exhaust the other first. Or rather, who would assimilate whom first, as Laertes' face twisted with a desperate madness. Every ounce of his fallen power was poured into and integrated with the bindings. The power of erosion immediately surged to an even higher, more lethal level. Countless currents of fallen energy covered Imene's entire body, clinging to him like a shroud. It sought to completely contaminate both his physical body and his very soul. Imene roared toward the sky, his firm will forcing the fallen power to advance slowly and with great difficulty. We learn that since birth, due to his small size, he had been abandoned by his wolf pack in the cruel forest. Hunger and the biting cold had nearly drained the life right out of him. It was his master's summoning that saved him, and from that moment on, everything changed. Imene decided he would follow his master forever, and his struggle has never truly ended. Through their soul connection, his power surged. The very meaning of his existence is to fight for this bond. At the same time, the illusory shadow of the giant bear let out a roar of its own. Without needing a single order from Imene, the intertwined gray-black power directly shattered the bindings. Giant claws fell in an instant, tearing through the bindings as if they were nothing more than paper. Immediately after, the illusory shadow of the giant bear turned its gaze slowly toward Laertes. Those gray eyes were utterly indifferent and, to be quite honest, completely implacable. The terrifying intent of death, hidden deep within, finally exploded outward. Laertes felt the danger instantly as the bear's shadow shifted, signaling a moment of extreme peril. Suddenly, his entire world turned a dull, lifeless shade of gray. In just a matter of seconds, the majority of his life force was annihilated, leaving him on the very brink of death. A black power erupted from his body, desperately attempting to crush the encroaching intent of death. Laertes looked grim. The protective power his father had left him was now completely gone. He didn't dare linger a moment longer, turning tail and fleeing the scene immediately. Meanwhile, Wayron reached the rear of the giant city, where he hurled his war spear across the vast palace square. It pierced through the air toward tens of thousands of black malices, instantly wiping out a massive group of them. The remaining malices released their power of corruption, creating a dense, swirling flow of black air. This energy transformed into long shackles that tightly bound him. Countless surges of corruptive power began to flow rapidly along the length of those shackles. Physically, he felt nothing but dark, overlapping thoughts began to cloud his mind, casting a shadow over his face. He grew serious, but just as he prepared to resist, his brother's presence suddenly signaled from far away. An enormous body, dozens of meters long, tore through a hail of arrows and crashed into the cluster of malices. The terrible force of the impact was enough to crush them directly into a mess of flesh and bone. The gigantic black wolf proved unstoppable, its 1,000-meter size crushing every arrow in the blink of an eye. That brutal, majestic presence forced all the surrounding malices to gather together in a desperate huddle. Staring up at that massive body, dozens of meters long, the malices simply couldn't believe their eyes. Lord Laertes was dead, and a wave of pure terror spread through their ranks in an instant. Meanwhile, Black Name casually shattered his shackles as if they were nothing more than brittle glass. Wayron breathed a sigh of relief, but as he looked at Black Name wrapped in those wings of death, he couldn't help but frown. He wondered if he should have forbidden him from using the heavy burden of death once again. After all, the backlash from such power was not something his brother could easily withstand right now. Sensing his brother's deep concern, Black Name reached out telepathically to explain the situation. It seemed the wings of death would dissipate on their own after a short while. A small mercy, really. Hearing this, he nodded and began the grim task of clearing out every remaining malice within the palace. But just as he finished and stepped toward the open land, the sky suddenly darkened as countless corruptive powers surged forth. A shadow hundreds of meters tall began to take shape, finally solidifying into a terrifying mass of pure corruption. With blurred features and clad in spirit-conquering armor, it released a sickening aura that sent black shockwaves in every direction. This time, even with the protection of his own shadowy barriers, Waren could feel the genuine threat it posed. A cruel laughter echoed out. This was a fallen celestial shadow, born from 10,000 malices and possessing the strength of 6 rings. To make matters worse, it also carried a lingering trace of its original master's true power. The entity, Vacuum, opened its mouth in a fit of rage, shouting that the boy had killed their master. It declared that they would use his very life to bury him alongside their fallen lord. He didn't bother to respond, simply pulling the celestial construction of Tianquan from his ring realm. He quickly prepared, shielding Black Name with both a strengthening tree and a recovery tree for the battle ahead. Accompanied by a thunderous roar, we see Black Name instantly transform into a truly gargantuan form. A massive body, spanning 1,000 miles, was suddenly enveloped in a fierce, terrifying aura. To be honest, his presence was now every bit as formidable as that of the fallen celestial shadow. The suppression domain of the celestial refining hell, which fuses 3 distinct talents, unfolds in an instant. The pitch-black flames that exploded outward carried a faint, unmistakable trace of golden brilliance. Containing the raw power of suppression, they immediately began to push back the encroaching gray domain. Dozens of malices turned serious and immediately flew backward, not daring to remain within that black-gold domain. They wondered how this was even possible, as this domain felt entirely different from the previous one. Simply staying inside was a problem, as the suppression domain acted as a direct drain on their very life force. Their power was being stifled. Meanwhile, a fierce beast shadow did not condense above Black Name's head this time. Instead, it covered his entire surface, with countless gold and black patterns emitting a majestic, divine light. Under that terrible weight of suppression, the surrounding air became incomparably heavy and difficult to breathe. The black gold power erupted, carrying a majesty like a demon god rising to suppress purgatory itself. His roar echoed out across tens of thousands of miles, shaking the very foundations of the world. Under the blessing of the celestial refining hell, Black Name's physical body became even more powerful than before. Every single attack he launched would now carry that heavy, terrifying power of suppression. It was a healthy display of strength, and the gazes of the malices grew increasingly grim as they watched. Realizing the danger, they immediately began to inject their own corruptive power into their champion. The fallen celestial shadow expanded another 100 meters, growing into an even more enormous nightmare. 2 pairs of black bat wings unfurled, stretching across 1,000 meters of the darkened sky. The gray domain expanded instantly, clashing relentlessly against the suppression of the celestial refining hell. The two were utterly incompatible, and as they fought for dominance, circles of gray and black gold shockwaves exploded in violent bursts. These waves spread out in every direction, making it clear that the level of this battle had become far too high for comfort. We see that no one can intervene. Meanwhile, in a gray palace separated by countless worlds, a humanoid creature sits upon a throne of bone. Clad in the battle armor of conquering spirits, he suddenly opened his pitch-black eyes. In that single moment, a terrifying aura awakened within the hall. He wondered if someone was using his power, so he calmed his mind to search through the echoes of the past. Soon enough, he followed the connection through the deep darkness. With a single thought, his consciousness descended upon the fallen celestial shadow. The eyes of the fallen celestial shadow on the stone shield began to project a haunting gray light. It was no longer a dead object without a soul. At this very moment, the consciousness of the fallen one inhabited the body of the shadow. He looked at Black Name and couldn't help but exclaim, noting that this black wolf wasn't even 6 months old. To possess a 6-ring combat power at such an age, well, that is truly terrifying potential. Just then, accompanied by a roar, Black Name instantly tore through the gray domain, completely ignoring the encroaching erosion. Empowered by suppression, a dominant claw flashed with black light and struck out with incredible force. The fallen one frowned slightly and retreated 1,000 meters to take to the sky, but Black Name held firm, moving even faster. That terrible weight of suppression caused the figure of the fallen celestial shadow to momentarily stagnate. Seizing this brief opening, Black Name leaped high into the air. Both of his claws tore forward at the exact same time. Under the crushing weight of that suppression, the figure of the fallen one was slammed violently against the surface below. He left a crater 1,000 meters wide, but Black Name, fueled by the memory of today's events, rushed forward again instantly. Relying on the strength of his celestial refining hell domain, he refused to give the fallen one even a moment to create any distance. It was a relentless assault, and in this moment, the gaze of the fallen one became remarkably solemn. He realized he was facing 4 complete types of talent powers, a rare sight, to be sure. Even if one trace of that power seemed to be dissipating, it hardly mattered in the grand scheme of things. To the fallen one, the potential of this black wolf was simply too great to be ignored. He decided the creature must be dealt with now, otherwise, it wouldn't take very long at all. Soon, another powerful contender would be standing in the way of the human race's enemies. The Fallen One felt the suppression tearing at him as he realized this wolf could one day reach the throne and block the corrupt legions. And so, with that thought in mind, the fallen angel cast aside any remaining hesitation. His corrupt power exploded outward all at once, violently forcing Black Name back. Immediately after, he soared directly into the sky, putting some much-needed space between them. We see an infinite surge of corrupt power beginning to rise from every direction at once. The surrounding corrupt beings watched in horror as their own essence was drained away, leaving their bodies to wither into nothingness. A massive strand of black hair, over 1,000 meters long, began to solidify with a power so terrifying it made the air crackle. Waves of black currents rushed outward in every direction, creating a truly shocking scene for anyone left watching. But he wasn't finished yet, as the gray domain shrank down until it finally coated that long, dark strand. This was a throne-level transformation, where a domain is compressed onto a weapon to double its lethality, a terrifying trick, honestly. With his power now doubled, the fallen angel's gaze shifted, locking instantly onto our protagonist's position. In the very next instant, Black Name lunged forward, his massive 1,000-meter body moving to shield our protagonist directly. The fallen angel let out a mocking sneer, as he had fully expected the beast to protect its master. He commanded the wolf to die, but a second later, his own movements came to a sudden, grinding halt. He watched as the celestial and domain suppressions stopped expanding and instead began to retract inward. The energy compressed to its absolute limit before exploding, finally fusing itself entirely into the wolf's body. Immediately, those black and gold lines across his form began to glow with an intense, blinding light. An extreme wave of suppression erupted, causing the ground for miles around to collapse into a crater 10 meters deep. Countless shattered stones were sent flying, turning the landscape into a graveyard of debris. The fallen angel was furious, and that 1,000-meter strand of black hair shot forward, tearing through the air like black lightning. It crossed the distance instantly, aiming its lethal point directly at Black Name. This attack nearly reached the destructive power of 7 rings, yet its speed was cut in half by the suppression surrounding the wolf. Black Name let out a deafening roar and raised his palm, intending to catch the very tip of that hair with his bare hand. 2 terrifying forces collided and exploded, and the fallen angel shifted through the air with the jagged grace of a teleporter. The resulting shockwaves rippled outward, stretching for tens of thousands of meters across the battlefield. At that exact moment, we see the black and gold lines on the wolf's skin begin to flicker frantically. Both the defense and the raw physical strength of Black Name reached even more incredible heights. His massive figure didn't retreat a single inch, even as the ground beneath his feet continued to crumble and sink. The fallen angel immediately poured every ounce of his corrupt power into the strand, trying to make it even sharper. But after several minutes of these forces clashing, cracks began to appear on the tip of the black hair as Black Name roared. Pushing himself to the absolute limit, he unleashed the full weight of his physical strength and his domain at once. The 1,000-meter strand of hair shattered instantly, exploding into countless black fragments. At that same moment, the fallen angel's avatar finally exhausted its power, dissolving into a dark mist and vanishing. In his final seconds, the fallen angel burned our protagonist's image deep into his memory. A single thread of that consciousness returned to the gray palace, far from the battlefield. The fallen angel rose from his throne, his abyss-like power pressing down on the succubus attendants until they trembled in fear. He couldn't understand how a mere level 20 could possibly possess the compression of a domain. His expression grew solemn. To be honest, that level of domain power and force control was truly terrifying. He thought of the near-impossible conditions required to break the 10-ring throne. And yet, this black wolf had already achieved it at level 20, a feat that defied all logic. What surprised him most was that the wolf's domain wasn't just a surface layer, but had fused entirely with his physical body. This was a mastery usually reserved only for the celestial kings who sit above the throne. The fallen angel took a moment to steady his nerves, quickly regaining the composure of a monster. He immediately registered our protagonist's information onto the corrupt race's priority target list. Every human genius with throne potential would be marked, ensuring that 6-ring corruptors or higher could assassinate them on sight. After completing this grim task, he leaned back into his throne and silently closed his eyes. Meanwhile, on the devastated earth below, Black Name's massive form stood tall, his black and gold divine lines radiating power. Our protagonist finally deactivated his enhancement and recovery arts, letting out a long breath. His mind felt dizzy and dazed. Even with his talent's mental recovery, the cost of maintaining those buffs had pushed him to his limit. After a long wait, the notification finally chimed, signaling the end of the reincarnation instance. In the very next second, we see both his figure and Black Name vanish from the battlefield entirely. The time had finally come to calculate the score for our protagonist's performance. Between the accumulated kills of the corrupt and shattering the 6-ring fallen angel's avatar, he had saved 974 people. And so, the results were in a perfect score, which was exactly what we expected. This brought with it a boost to his professional growth attributes and his physical stats. His life skills evolved through the experience, specifically enhancing his enhancement and recovery arts. Most importantly, his summoning art skill ascended, becoming the far more powerful sacred summoning art. He suddenly reappeared in his dormitory and immediately unsummoned Black Name to keep the room from collapsing. Checking his status panel, he noticed that his profession had not yet ascended. It seemed he would need to obtain another perfect evaluation in a future reincarnation instance. Even so, the improvements to his current skills were quite significant. The effectiveness of his enhancement art jumped from 20% to 35%. His recovery art also transformed, shifting from a slow healing process to a rapid one. The catch, of course, was that the mana consumption had doubled in exchange for that power. But truly, the greatest gain was the evolution of his summoning art. From now on, any beast he summoned would undoubtedly possess a powerful sacred aura. This filled him with anticipation, though he didn't rush to test the new summon just yet. Instead, he opened his phone to check the latest news coming out of Fanyan City. He saw reports of hundreds of rescued people appearing out of nowhere and felt a wave of relief. The news described them as survivors from other worlds, freed from slavery by a mysterious professional in silver armor. And there it was, his next objective, the teleportation guide to the Southern Star. We see that the Fanyan City government was already moving to resettle the survivors properly, while photos showed people weeping as their bodies finally began to recover. Deep down, he suspected that Zhou Yuan had sacrificed himself for them, using the blood fruits to ensure their survival. Once his frayed nerves finally relaxed, a heavy, overwhelming sleepiness began to wash over him. He collapsed and fell fast asleep, and it wasn't until dawn that Maple Leaf and the others returned, looking utterly exhausted. Finding him asleep, they reluctantly woke him up to share the news of what was happening outside. It turned out that after the military released the video of him slaying the three-headed Hydra, the online forums had absolutely exploded. The public finally realized that he had accomplished everything through his own sheer strength, without any outside help. Seeing his feats, the others felt pressured to complete tasks frantically, and Caoyang noted that the Balin Academy students were relying heavily on their gear. Their efficiency in strategic tasks far surpassed the others, and the three of them, suddenly revitalized, decided to skip eating and immediately gather their team. Watching this, he smiled and headed to the mission reception point himself, noting it had been nearly half a day since his last task. His ranking had slipped from the top spots down to over 2,000, so he decided to accept a mission to hunt a level 59 dark gold violent bear. After accepting a 6-turn mission, he turned and left, leaving the female soldier behind him standing there with her mouth wide open. That specific mission required killing a terror giant hand, a feat that not even the instructors had managed to complete yet. An hour later, riding Black Name, he reached the deep mountains where the massive dark gold violent bears opened their golden eyes and stood tall. The earth trembled as a violent aura swept toward them, and as they roared, he quietly dismounted and stepped back to let Black Name handle the fight. The level gap was simply too high for him to intervene directly, and he needed contribution points quickly to get metal materials for Dendai. Once he reached a safe distance, Black Name turned his head and lunged at the bear, his body rapidly expanding until he was over 1,000 meters long. With muscles bulging, Black Name's sheer presence made the dark gold violent bear tremble, while the command officer watching from afar was left shaken. She was stunned to see that in just half a day, the creature had grown from a few hundred meters to a full 1,000 meters in length. Yang Xiao was equally surprised, as an SS-level growth talent had never appeared in the human race before, just as Black Name charged forward. We see the black flames erupt as a ghostly image of a pectoral fin over 2,000 meters long appears, engulfing a 6,000-meter range in fire before contracting back. He kept it at 2,000 meters to conserve mana, showing how much his control over his domain and power had improved after so many days of constant battle. The dark gold violent bear roared, its body wrapped in sharp air currents as the earth trembled, but against that massive spectral fin, its 600-meter frame looked like a dwarf. As the black fire claw struck down, the station chief of the area watched the dark gold violent bear resist, while circles of black and gold shockwaves exploded across the trembling earth. The sharp air currents were swallowed whole, and the bear endured a pressure like that of Mount Tai until the ground collapsed and its knees began to buckle. She roared in fury, her muscles bulging as she unleashed even stronger winds. But suddenly, the movement of the spectral pectoral fin shifted. Black Name seized the opening to lunge forward, his sharp black claws tearing 4 deep, bone-chilling gashes into the bear's flesh. The dark gold violent bear shrieked in pain, realizing those black flames were devouring its life through the wounds, and it began a frantic, desperate struggle against Black Name. Blood stained the ground red, all of it belonging to the bear, as Black Name remained completely unharmed thanks to the spectral fin, making it a 2-on-1 fight. Finally, the dark gold violent bear let out a sky-shaking roar, its momentum surging one last time before it suddenly turned and fled frantically toward the deep mountains. It mowed down giant trees as it ran, leaving a trail of smoke and dust, while a momentarily surprised black name immediately gave chase. With over 2,500 points in agility, he was incredibly fast, closing the distance in a heartbeat as the bear looked back in pure horror. The bear let out a cry, calling for its king to rescue it, and on a distant mountain peak, a sleeping giant beast slowly opened its eyes. Surrounded by countless blue lightning bolts, the beast let out a terrifying roar that echoed through more than 10,000 mountains as the earth rumbled. Imagine the scene, a creature so ancient and powerful that its mere awakening feels like a judgment upon the world itself. It was a moment of absolute tension, a pause in time as the ancient power began to stir from its long meditation. On that distant peak, the giant rescuer rose, a massive presence that seemed to dwarf the very mountains it stood upon. The mountainous area sank as the Thunder Domain was suppressed by the Heavenly Earthquake Domain, where Black Name stood like a 1,000-meter demon god. With an aura that shook the heavens and earth, he looked truly terrifying. Even the immortal Mad King was horrified as those black claws approached like lightning. The king roared and swung his palm to meet the attack, and the moment the black, gold, and blue powers collided, a shockwave exploded like a massive tsunami. He urgently activated his domain, yet he couldn't break free from the suppression of the Heavenly Earthquake Domain, one of Black Name's 3 most formidable talents. Even the dark gray domain powered by the throne couldn't resist. The king roared, swinging another claw wrapped in violent thunder, but Black Name didn't flinch. The black claw met the attack head-on as the 2,000-meter giants collided repeatedly, sending shockwaves exploding in bursts while the very earth beneath them crumbled. Grass and trees were utterly destroyed, and though lightning from the sky struck Black Name frequently, he relied on his massive defense to endure without giving his foe an opening. We see the protagonist watching from a distance, quietly casting a recovery spell on the battlefield just as the fight between the two giants seemed to reach a stalemate. High in the sky, the immortal Mad King roared in a fury, ordering Sonair to kill the human, causing the dark gold tyrant bear's savage gaze to shift toward our hero. Min launched an attack instantly, his claws swinging with murderous intent and turning the area around the tyrant bear into a gray zone of total annihilation as it hit the ground. Severely wounded on the spot, the indestructible tyrant seized this momentary pause, immediately transforming into a dazzling pool of lightning that struck Min's head with incredible force. A strange sound echoed from the front of Min's body as the earth beneath him shattered, and the indestructible tyrant took the chance to forcefully suppress him. Lightning struck frantically, and in that moment, the dark gold tyrant bear struggled to its feet, roaring as it charged, causing our protagonist's expression to darken. Just as he was about to make a strategic retreat, the sound of rushing wind arrived from the distance, and through the rising dust, a woman in golden armor appeared. It was Ji-Fei, wielding a 4-meter-long greatsword. She moved with such speed that every step cracked the ground, leaving deep marks behind her as she closed the distance. As she reached the dark gold tyrant bear, she swung her giant sword, which expanded to over 20 meters, slashing down with an aura that seemed to shatter everything in its path. The blow left grave wounds on the bear's already battered body. It glared at her in fury, but Ji-Fei's fighting spirit only soared higher as her blade shifted once more. The sword expanded again as she darted forward to dodge an attack, immediately delivering a horizontal cut that tore deep into the dark gold tyrant bear's flesh. In just a few minutes, the bear's massive body came crashing down, though it desperately unleashed a final barrage of wind blades, which Ji-Fei, naturally, had already foreseen. Her energy exploded into a tangible red aura that swept outward, completely dispersing the gusts of wind, until finally, Ji-Fei raised her sword, now over 30 meters long. She slammed it down with crushing force, shattering the bear's skull and ending its life. She exhaled a quiet sigh as her aura began to dissipate and her sword returned to normal. She walked over to the protagonist with a smile, asking if her entrance was impressive enough, which, to be honest, was a bit of an understatement. The words female Tyrannosaurus flashed through his mind after seeing her ferocity, but when Ji-Fei narrowed her eyes at him, he quickly shook his head in denial. He quickly changed the subject, asking Ji-Fei how she had arrived, to which she replied that the commotion was simply too large to ignore. Meanwhile, we see a faint smile playing on her lips. She asked if he trusted her, and as he looked at the massive greatsword in her hand, he honestly admitted that he did, which seemed to bring her a sense of relief as she glanced toward Min. Min then contracted his infernal pressure heavenly chain to 1,000 meters around his body, making his aura even more vigorous and instantly shattering the suppression of the indestructible tyrant. The two of them fought desperately once more, causing the earth to shatter and mountains to crumble in a display of momentum that was, to be perfectly honest, utterly terrifying. Right at that moment, the lightning and storm clouds within a 10,000-meter radius suddenly turned violent, striking the earth with madness as the endless dark clouds began to swirl. They churned above Min, forming an eye of the storm that covered the entire area, where a terrifying force of world-ending destruction gradually began to accumulate. Min's dark eyes showed no fear as he controlled his infernal pressure heavenly chain, forcing it to contract frantically under the weight of the gathering power above him. In just 10 seconds, the domain merged completely with his body, and instantly, the mysterious black gold divine marks began to glow with an incomparable and terrifying intensity. In the gloomy, overcast sky, we see two opposing forces. On one side, countless violent bolts of lightning like a celestial punishment, and on the other, a giant wolf. Standing 1,000 meters tall, the wolf's body was covered in glowing black gold marks, looking like a demon god as he stared directly up at the heavens. The sheer power radiating from both of them seemed to split the sky and earth in two, creating a spectacular scene just as the lightning elements fully gathered within the eye of the storm. Accompanied by a roar from the indestructible tyrant, the sky and earth within 10,000 meters went dark as a pillar of blue lightning instantly descended. This world-destroying pillar, 1,000 meters thick, fell from the sky and obliterated everything in its path, including the very air, as it completely engulfed Min's body. The ground for several thousand meters simply vanished, yet in a pit over 300 meters deep, the 600-meter-tall black wolf remained standing firm. With the black gold marks on his body shining brightly, he became the only light in that somber sky, leaving the indestructible tyrant staring down in utter disbelief. The tyrant roared that this was impossible, unable to comprehend how Min could withstand such a heavenly strike and remain standing in that manner. It seemed impossible to him, yet the reality was clear. The power Min displayed in this moment was far more overwhelming than anything they had witnessed before. As the dust settled and the darkness began to lift, the sheer scale of the destruction became apparent to everyone watching the battlefield. The image of that figure standing firm against a world-destroying pillar of lightning is something they would likely never forget for the rest of their lives, as Yang Xiao smiled knowingly. As an expert who has long stood at the peak, he could see that Min was now condensing his own domain, a feat usually reserved for the throne, though he still had a way to go. He was half a step toward controlling it, and more importantly, the Black Wolf could already fuse with the domain, a characteristic skill of a heavenly king. By the time we returned to the dormitory, it was early morning. A soldier approached with a safe, explaining that Commander Yang Xiao had sent it over. He nodded and went inside to open it, finding 6 types of premium summoning materials, a reward, it seems, for his work taking down those beasts in civilian clothes. With everything ready, he decided to begin the summoning early. He was quite anxious to see a creature with such a sacred aura, so he extended his hand. He reached into the void and activated the summoning technique, his palm instantly revealing the ancient text as a brilliant golden light erupted from the connection. A humanoid figure with golden hair and wings appeared, radiating a pure, sacred breath. He checked the race and found something truly rare beneath the surface. It was actually an angel, not just a faint image like the one Luolan once conjured, but a genuine being known as an SSG angel. The angelic race is incredibly powerful, and to be honest, it seems no other summoner has ever managed to call forth a race as prestigious as this one. Usually, such beings wouldn't even consider a contract, yet as he looked at this small golden angel with broken wings, he fell into a long, silent contemplation. He compared the sight to a weak, white silkworm, smiling and shaking his head at the absurdity of it all, yet the little angel had answered his call. Since she had responded, he felt it was impossible to abandon her. He reached out, touching the little angel's delicate white forehead as a voice echoed in his mind. The detection began, revealing a loyalty that would never betray him. He immediately chose to confirm the ephemeral connection, despite the sudden, sharp pain in his mind. The origin connection was completed, and we see that his summoning had awakened a unique talent. As the sun and moon seemed to rotate, the unconscious angel was transformed. A vast, profound force stripped away her weakness, entering her body as countless sequences that rapidly repaired her severely damaged life force and origin. After a long while, the little angel's golden eyelashes fluttered and she opened her eyes, which now radiated a truly divine and sacred breath. In her left eye, there was the heat of a great sun, while her right eye held the cold, lonely clarity of the moon, a striking and powerful contrast. Her soft golden clothes shifted slightly as she moved. Her overall beauty and temperament had reached a level that surpassed anything a human could possibly imagine. The little angel fluttered her wings and flew closer, her tiny hands grabbing his clothes as she softly called him master, making him smile warmly. He told her they were partners now and asked for her name, knowing that angels receive their true names from the darkness of the void at the moment of birth. She was Diana. He nodded, a bit curious as to why she had accepted the contract in the first place, given her weakened state at the time. He wondered why she had accepted the contract, as an angel like her shouldn't have been summonable. Hearing this, Diana's eyes grew dim with a sudden sadness. She explained how countless fragments were eroded by a black airflow until they vanished. He immediately understood that her kind had been invaded by a terrible enemy. And as he listened, he could feel the weight of the tragedy that had befallen her race. Despite the confusion of the moment, he realized she hadn't wanted to give up on her station, even when the situation seemed entirely hopeless. It wasn't just a simple task. She had been fighting a losing battle, her body constantly enduring injuries while trying to protect what remained. But now, she possessed a sacred shield to resist any attack, fueled by the talent of the sun and moon rotation. We see that when the radiant yellow sun crosses the sky, all things are invigorated and nothing can stop their momentum. With a burning soul, when the cold and lonely moon hangs high, she gains the true power of final annihilation. At the moment of judgment, it seemed as though heaven and earth themselves came to a complete standstill. After witnessing this power, he was genuinely shocked. The key to everything was clearly the rotation of the sun and the moon. Whether it was the great sun crossing the sky or the full moon hanging above, both states appeared to be incomparably powerful. Especially when the two forces crossed paths, they could even freeze time itself, which, to be honest, is a terrifying level of power. It becomes clear to us now that the angelic race is truly as formidable as the legends suggest. Afterward, he sent Diana back to her space and prepared to continue farming monsters out in the wild. Meanwhile, back at the command center, everyone was staring fixedly at the screen, waiting for any sign of progress. They were waiting impatiently for him to emerge, but seeing nothing around him, a sense of desperation began to settle over the room. One of them remarked how badly they wanted to know what his third summons actually was. The curiosity was becoming almost unbearable for them as they watched the empty screen. They argued heatedly, certain that whatever he had called forth couldn't possibly be weak. At that very moment, deep within the mountain range, a middle-aged man muttered several profound and mysterious phrases to himself. The void began to tremble frantically, as if the very fabric of existence was under immense pressure. Innumerous cracks appeared across the plane of reality, spreading out like a shattered mirror. Immediately after, the space became unbearable until a pair of black, demonic claws tore it open for dozens of meters. With a sudden cry of "quick," 100 corrupted beings surged out from the other side. Their strength all fell between the fourth and fifth rings. Had they been any stronger, they wouldn't have been able to pass through. We see that the load-bearing capacity of this particular spatial channel is incredibly weak. It could collapse at any moment, and while the stronger ones can open sturdier channels, doing so carries a heavy risk. They would directly shatter the shielding matrix and be instantly discovered by the human race. Feeling the thick, malicious aura approaching, one of them laughed, boasting that he was going to enjoy the slaughter this time. The middle-aged man's face was a bit pale as he watched the monsters emerge. But even so, he did his best to feign a calm expression, which, to be honest, wasn't very convincing. Leia Kulu, the leader, asked if he had the promised resources while looking at the man with disdain before tossing him a storage bag. The man quickly caught the bag with both hands, and as his consciousness scanned the contents, his face instantly lit up with excitement. These items were enough to push him to the 7th rank, a handsome reward for simply leaking information about his own kind. Leia Kulu frowned impatiently and demanded that he hand over the list of the top geniuses in the area. The middle-aged man immediately handed over the list he had been carefully organizing over the past few days. He warned them that they must pay special attention to a specific man named Chen Lin. Leia Kulu was skeptical, noting that the boy was only level 16 and seemingly lacked any real talent. When asked why they should bother with him, the man explained what had happened just 3 days prior. Despite being only level 16, he had managed to overcome a 28-level gap to kill a powerful mutant beast. As he spoke, he also pulled out a video to corroborate his claims. After watching the footage, Leia Kulu's face was filled with an incomparable sense of shock. He muttered that such terrifying combat power, even within their own corrupted race, was something only the strongest could achieve, concluding that this human simply could not be allowed to live. Leia Kelly, who was standing nearby, watched with eyes that were practically glowing. She licked her lips and declared that she would be the one to deal with him. Leia Kulu frowned, knowing his sister had likely taken an interest in the human and wanted to assimilate him as a slave. Still, he figured that was essentially the same as killing him anyway. And so, he gave the order for everyone to find their targets and begin the hunt. Upon hearing those words, every one of the corrupted broke into a cruel, twisted smile. They all took flight, scattering in different directions across the landscape. Meanwhile, a patrolling microdrone immediately discovered the scene unfolding below. Realizing they were extraterrestrials, the command center rushed to notify the students to evacuate the mountain range. They ordered all warriors to prepare their heavy firepower for the coming engagement. Looking at those corrupted beings, all of whom were at least 4th ring, the female officer's face turned grim. She immediately began barking out a series of urgent orders to her subordinates. Yang Zhao's expression, however, remained unsurprised by the turn of events. He simply said it was time to go, then turned around and left without another word. The officer nodded, understanding that Yang Zhao was going to provide support personally, even if it worsened his serious injuries. As she thought about the sacrifice he was making, her eyes burned with a deep, simmering hatred. She could only blame herself for not having a combat profession. She lacked the strength to fight, while the others clenched their fists, their hearts heavy with a profound sadness. Before long, a heavy silence fell over the entire command center. The only sound remaining was the constant, rhythmic broadcasting of orders and instructions. Meanwhile, on a distant cliffside, a corrupted woman with an enchanting figure drifted downward, her eyes fixed on the silver-armored warrior protected by a giant black wolf. Leia Kelly smiled to herself, thinking of just how lucky she was. She had found him so quickly, and he appeared to be in a weakened state, which was quite convenient. Licking her lips, she decided right then that she wanted this new toy for herself. Suddenly, her figure lunged forward as countless black threads began to scatter from her body. Sensing a repulsive aura approaching, the warrior's eyes snapped open instantly. His gaze was ice-cold, and Black Name, who had already sensed the threat, raised his head to stare in that direction. When Leia Kelly met those two gray eyes, her heart suddenly froze in her chest. She wondered what was happening as her body began to tremble, though she quickly suppressed the feeling. Taking the initiative, Leia Kelly sent her silk strands flying like a swarm of locusts filling the sky, all aimed at Black Name. In response, a brilliant golden glow erupted across Black Name's entire body. As the golden light blocked the silk strands, Willie looked on with complete indifference. In the very next instant, Leia Kelly's consciousness was pulled elsewhere. Suddenly, within a dark and empty void, those indifferent and ruthless gray eyes opened once more. Under the weight of that double gray gaze, an infinite fear surged forth, completely flooding her mind. Leia Kelly began to tremble uncontrollably, finding that her body simply would not move. She could only watch on helplessly as Black Name approached her, step by step. Given his gigantic size, he reached her in mere seconds and immediately crushed her into the ground with a single paw. Jet black flames erupted instantly, beginning to consume her body entirely. Throughout the entire process, Leia Kelly, a level 56 demon, didn't even have the strength to resist. This scene caused the atmosphere at headquarters, which had been so heavy and aggressive, to brighten up instantly. Well done, we might say. That Black Wolf truly is incredible. Black Name lifted his paw and noted that the enemy was a Shinsen. She was masterless, and more importantly, she wasn't dead. She had managed to escape. Upon hearing Black Name's voice, Willie gave a cold response. Pursue her. He knew they had to kill her, and since Diana was there, they could afford to let Black Name go for a while. There would be no danger, and so, understanding the order, the wolf's body kicked off the earth. In an instant, he went racing off in her direction. Elsewhere, we see Leia Kelly flying rapidly toward the spatial tunnel with a look of pure terror on her face. It was too terrifying. To her, that black wolf was simply a monster beyond comprehension. Even now that those double gray eyes had vanished from her sight, she was still filled with a lingering dread and wanted nothing more than to leave that place. Her only goal now was to get away from the human race as quickly as possible. She needed to bring back news of this power, which was comparable to a quasi-supreme being. As for their mission to hunt human geniuses, their side of the world had turned into a complete disaster. It was a catastrophe unlike any other. Any demon who touched him was destined to die. At that very moment, a thunderous noise echoed from behind her. Leia Kelly was instantly terrified, though Black Name had no intention of straying too far from his master. His size increased suddenly, transforming him into a giant beast thousands of meters tall. He crossed dozens of kilometers in a single, instantaneous bound. He appeared behind Leia Kelly, and as his giant paw fell like a shadow, the earth beneath them shattered. The resulting vibration spread across a full 10,000 meters. Under Black Name's massive paw, Leia Kelly was sent crashing down as jet black flames completely devoured her. Through Shao, Willie already knew that the demons had reached the 100 Leagues mountain range. After thinking it over for a moment, he planned to split the group up to hunt these demons down. Now that he had two powerful summons, he felt that staying together would be a bit of a waste. With this in mind, he called upon a micro-drone to guide Black Name on his way. Black Name took off instantly, while a trace of unprecedented impatience flickered in Willie's eyes. Watching this, the military officer couldn't help but sigh with a touch of emotion. He had grown this much in just a minute. She wondered if, given a year, he might be able to challenge the throne. It was an incredible thought, considering that China has only produced 85 thrones so far, and that was after more than 100 full years of history. Through all that time, only the strongest of the human race, those who fought for decades, emerged from countless generations of geniuses. The reason they are so rare is, in large part, due to the interference of the foreign races. In this massive slaughterhouse at the front lines, no matter how brilliant a genius is, they can rarely escape the quagmire. Whenever the foreign races launch an attack, it seems that countless people are destined to die. Many thrones will fall because of this, and currently, the number of thrones remaining in China has dwindled to only 30. At the same time, deep within the mountain range, we see a woman in golden armor wielding a powerful halberd wrapped in bloody energy. She was suppressing 4 level 55 demons single-handedly. Under her terrifying, intense red eyes, the very air seemed to explode. The 4 demons were completely unable to resist her strength and found themselves forced back repeatedly. Taking in this scene, the one known as Jack began to move toward the woman's position. Ayaklu frowned, and a black weapon began to slowly condense within his hand. He felt he had no time to waste here, as there were still many geniuses waiting to be hunted down. Ayaklu's figure dashed forward instantly, his black weapon imbued with the heavy power of the fall. He stabbed out fiercely, but facing this sudden attack, Hufei reacted with extreme speed. The blood energy across her entire body erupted, expanding several times over in a mere instant. The aura of the yellow leopard swept across the surroundings immediately, which was quite a sight to behold. Hufei's eyes were filled with an unyielding battle intent as she faced her pursuers. Her halberd, glowing with a deep red light, swept horizontally through everything in its path. Everything exploded, and Ayaklu looked down at his shattered black weapon with a solemn expression. He realized she was only level 55, yet she already possessed such overwhelming combat power. He decided she had to be eliminated, and Ayaklu immediately erupted with the full power of the fall. A torrential black energy flowed out from him, extending across a range of 100 meters. The light dimmed instantly, and seeing this, the other demons also began to release their own dark power. Hufei's red hair was soon covered by the encroaching darkness as the pressure mounted. However, a sanguine energy surrounded her, stubbornly resisting the erosion of the demon's power. Her gaze turned cold as ice, silently asking if he truly intended to face her. Deep down, she felt he was simply seeking his own death as she lunged toward Ayaklu instantly. Amidst violent air explosions, her halberd swung through the air, aiming directly at him. The poisonous alliance of the four demons followed, attacking Hufei, but she didn't seem to care at all. The aura surrounding her body had become extremely violent, a force of nature in its own right. She wouldn't stop until Ayaklu was dead, though she knew her explosive state of hegemony wouldn't last long. If she didn't finish this soon, she might truly find herself outmatched. We look to the other side of the battlefield, where his gaze shifted here, his expression turning anxious as he accelerated. He frantically swung at the level 56 poisonous demon before him, desperate to support the priest. The priest had risked his life to save them, after all, and now he was trapped in a difficult situation, besieged by the poisonous forces. But the demon clearly noticed his intention and flashed a cold, mocking smile. At that same moment, Ayaklu drank a bottle of gray blood, and his aura surged madly toward the sixth ring. His strength reached the level of a throne, a terrifying development, to be honest. True blood is a frightening thing, and Ayaklu let out a dark, satisfied smile. He condensed a black spear with one hand and hurled it with lethal intent. The terrifying tip of the spear struck instantly, followed by the sickening sound of battle armor shattering. The black spear penetrated flesh and bone, emerging through the other side of Hufei's back. Fresh blood began to drip onto the cold ground from the tip of the spear. Taking in this grim scene, Ayaklu burst into laughter and began to walk toward her, step by step. "Become my slave," he commanded, but just then, a silver battle spear cut through the air and pierced the black current. It struck the ground right at Ayaklu's feet as a figure in silver armor approached from the distance. Ayaklu frowned slightly, realizing that his elder sister hadn't managed to kill this newcomer after all. It seemed she was already dead, yet Ayaklu showed not a single trace of clarity or grief. To be honest, he didn't feel the slightest bit of sadness over the death of his own sister. Chun Sen took one look at the situation and understood immediately that this was far beyond his own power to handle. With a quick thought, he summoned a humanoid creature with golden wings, standing less than half a meter tall. A sacred aura instantly filled the surrounding area, causing the expressions of the 6 poisonous demons to shift drastically. We see them all turn their gaze toward the creature, realizing it is an angel, and their eyes fill with an incomparable heat. They saw only a young angel, one who appeared to have no means of attacking them. Corrupting an angel is considered the highest symbol of glory among the true poisonous race. Thinking of the prestige this would bring, Ayaklu became absolutely frantic with joy. He laughed, telling Chen-Lin that he truly should thank him for bringing such a magnificent gift. Sensing those disgusting gazes upon her, Diana's brow furrowed in deep distaste. These black currents of air felt very familiar to her, and not in a pleasant way. She realized these were the ones who had invaded her home, and a spark of anger flared in Diana's eyes. Her wings spread wide as she took flight, ascending gracefully into the sky. A faint, glorious sun began to manifest within the golden depths of her eyes. A terrifying and burning golden light erupted from her small body, illuminating the battlefield. Suddenly, a massive and magnificent golden sun appeared behind her, stretching its light for over 1,000 meters. In that very moment, Diana's small body transformed into an adult form, tall and slender. Her golden eyes revealed a truly majestic aura. A vast and sacred golden light descended, and within seconds, the black current of air was completely purified. Every member of the poisonous race felt as if their entire body had fallen into hell, filled with discomfort and pain. Their fallen power was directly suppressed, which, naturally, filled their hearts with pure horror. Since the beginning, the true poisonous race and the angels have always been mortal enemies, constantly restraining one another. But under this sun, the balance was quite obviously broken. The boundless light that purifies the soul dyed an area of 10,000 meters in brilliant gold. It was as if a second sun had suddenly appeared between the sky and the earth. The terrifying power of this sun shook everything in the surrounding area. The entire bodies of the 6 poisonous demons were suddenly ignited with burning golden flames. The torment of their souls being burned instantly brought them to their knees. Ayaklu's face became completely distorted with agony. His previous joy had long since vanished, leaving only a massive, boiling pain in its wake. He desperately detonated his fallen power, using his 6th ring strength and his talent to double his power. A black barrier formed around his body as he hoped to isolate himself from those golden flames. However, unlike Imene's black flames, this attack acts upon the soul and can penetrate anything. It cannot be physically blocked. Only a defense specifically for the soul could hope to resist such an invasion. As the black current of air finally disappeared, Huffei weakly raised his head to see what had happened. We see him gazing up at that magnificent, majestic, and inscrutable figure rising into the sky. He smiled, realizing that even angels could be summoned to their side. She truly was something special, as an ancient sacred power, accompanied by a brilliant golden light, poured over the earth. Under that glow, everyone's wounds began to recover with incredible speed. Inkan, whose body was covered in bloody scars, felt a sudden trace of warmth spreading through him. The sharp pain from his injuries vanished instantly, replaced by a newfound strength. He began to attack without any regard for his own defense, ready to trade life for life without a second thought. The entire situation on the battlefield was instantly reversed by the appearance of that sun in the sky. Ayaklu, who was now on the verge of a complete and total defeat, felt as though he had been utterly betrayed by his own knowledge. He cursed his luck. Wasn't it common knowledge that young angels only possessed auxiliary powers? With just a single look, Diana's majestic eyes made him tremble, and his own eyes were pierced until blood began to flow. As if facing his own supreme being, he realized he couldn't delay any longer or his soul would be burned to ash. He immediately screamed out a desperate order, kill the human at all costs. Then, the current of black air exploded and rushed violently toward the sky. Diana slowly raised her hand, her expression remaining entirely indifferent to the chaos below. Innumerable streaks of fiery red energy appeared around her and shot toward every member of the poisonous race. Carrying the power of evolution and scorching heat, the light instantly penetrated Ayaklu, knocking him down from a height of 100 meters. In this moment, Diana, standing firm in the heavens, was like a goddess ruling over the great sun, making every demon gnash their teeth in frustration. As they were pierced by the golden light, they weren't just wounded, they were being physically torn away from the very earth. It wasn't just the demons gnashing their teeth, even the corrupt power within their bodies was being forcibly evolved by the light. The burning of their very souls was beginning to accelerate as well. They cursed their luck, realizing that under this great sun, they simply didn't stand a chance in a fight. Ayaklu's expression remained somber, but he told them not to worry just yet. He reminded them that Empress Flynn had promised someone would join their hunt, and right as he finished speaking, they arrived. Several figures dressed in gray robes were seen rushing toward them from the distance with great speed. Each of them possessed the formidable strength of 6 reincarnations. Upon spotting the shadow symbol emblazoned on their gray robes, Norfi exploded with rage, his expression turning absolutely furious at the sight of them. It was the Church of Shadows. Those cursed heretics and infidels ignored him, bypassing him instantly. Their target was obviously the young man, and seeing this, Diana raised her hand once more. Golden flames ignited instantly, ready to meet the new threat. Burning through their souls, Jin appeared and shot forward like a bolt. However, these heretics chose to simply endure the damage, refusing to slow their advance. In her current form of the Great Sun, Diana lacked the more lethal, definitive means to end them quickly. Immediately after, we see the Great Sun behind Diana begin to slowly dissipate. Then, a silver disk began to appear faintly on the right side of the sky. A full moon emerged alongside her, a solitary moon hanging high in the heavens. And just like that, a range of tens of thousands of meters was plunged into instant darkness. The faint moonlight now illuminated the world, bringing with it a terrifying and chilling sense of dread. The expression on the faces of all the heretics changed drastically in an instant. Looking up, we see that unlike her radiant sun form, Diana's eyes were now cold and piercing. Without a single trace of emotion, her sacred aura vanished as well. In its place, the true power of dark red annihilation began to swirl slowly around her. Accompanied by Diana's indifferent voice, 6 rings of annihilation blades suddenly fanned out in the air. Their speed was truly breathtaking, far too fast for the naked eye to follow. In a heartbeat, the 6 heretics were struck down where they stood. Their reactions were predictable, each of them desperately calling upon their skills to resist the onslaught. However, against a force that could shatter any defense, their protections were as fragile as wet paper. The bodies of every single one of them were sliced clean in half. Right at that moment, Ayaklu, no longer suppressed by the Great Sun, finally broke free. He immediately lunged toward Diana, who was still hovering high in the sky. A terrible flow of black air surged, forming a spear over 10 miles long which he hurled violently. The black spear tore through the air at supersonic speeds, racing directly toward Diana. One of her annihilation rings moved to intercept the projectile immediately. It shattered the black spear into pieces, inch by agonizing inch, until nothing remained. The 2 remaining blade rings then closed in, ending Ayaklu's life in an instant. Down on the ground, several species of demonic swords remained. They immediately rushed toward the young man, their eyes burning with a singular, murderous intent. To them, this human had to die, even if the Black Wolf possessed a massive 28-level power advantage. Even if this angel, who commands both the sun and the moon, is even more ridiculous. She was pressing down on them with a staggering difference of 50 or even 60 levels. If he were allowed to reach his full potential, the consequences would be simply unimaginable. However, Diana immediately raised her hand to call them back. 3 rings of annihilation blades instantly cut through these demons. Suddenly, the 3 rings of annihilation blades collided with one another. They merged together, instantly transforming into an intertwined triple ring formation. This intertwined force of annihilation was even more powerful than before. A dark red glow flashed, and in an instant, every single demon was torn to shreds. Then, we see her look toward Ayaklu, who was still struggling to resist. Diana slowly raised her hand, and the 6 rings of annihilation blades began to unite. As Ayaklu realized what was happening, his expression changed drastically. He activated the throne's blood essence and corrupt power within his body, shaking the 3 blade rings. Deep down, Ayaklu's gaze was filled with an incomparable jealousy. He wondered why such a perfect angel would ever choose to obey a mere human. But soon, Ayaklu let out a cold, mocking smile. He pulled out a pitch-black roulette wheel, a dark omen if there ever was one. As it began to rotate, a light spanning 100 meters instantly flashed beneath his feet. This chance to summon the throne was originally meant for that SSS-level genius, to bypass any expert protection. But these 2 summoned beings possessed a potential that was far too terrifying to ignore. He simply couldn't allow them to keep growing. And in that moment, countless mysterious runes intertwined to form a pitch-black summoning array. Slowly, a gray demon standing over 10 meters tall began to emerge from the darkness. A terrifying aura spread across the battlefield in an instant, chilling everyone to the bone. It was almost suffocating, and we see King Kong and the others turn pale as a sense of deep despair washed over them. Strands of black airflow began to extend outward, seemingly moving of their own accord. Wherever they passed, the trees of the nation withered and died instantly, a grim sight, to be sure. Anna's expression grew solemn as she realized the gravity of the situation. With a simple wave of her hand, she caused the full moon to rotate in the sky. It transformed into a great sun, hanging high above and casting its light over the land. However, even that dazzling golden light was unable to pierce through the encroaching darkness. The protagonist realized immediately that something was very wrong. He was on the verge of turning to run, but in the end, he held his ground. Because just as that black array appeared, Yang Xiao walked up to stand right beside him. He gave him a reassuring pat on the shoulder and mentioned he had been waiting a long time for this alien throne. He told him not to be afraid, and hearing those words, the young man finally understood. This was a premeditated trap, and sure enough, the alien throne completely ignored him. Instead, with an expressionless gaze, it looked toward the Insang base. There, as the summoning array continued to take shape, something massive began to stir. An incredibly powerful aura exploded outward, literally shattering the clouds in the sky above. Arriving with terrifying momentum, it descended in just a few breaths, staring down at the young man who was tearing through the void. The alien throne spoke slowly, addressing Zhang Hui, the man who stands as a defender on the front lines. By rushing here, do you not fear that your defense line will be torn down by those you consider insignificant? Zhang Hui simply waved his hand dismissively and replied that it didn't matter in the slightest. After all, he claimed, our human race has already surrendered, a bold statement, to be sure. The alien throne understood immediately that it had fallen straight into a trap. But Zhang Hui didn't seem to care. He looked down and shouted with a booming voice. Are you still not leaving? Are you waiting to be killed by the shockwaves of this battle? Upon hearing this, Yang Xiao immediately began leading everyone away from the area. We see that even a mere shockwave from a clash between thrones is a terrifying thing. It has the power to wipe out a race or destroy everything within hundreds of thousands of meters. Even if Zhang Hui's domain can isolate the power, staying here would only make them a burden. Seeing them retreat, the alien throne made no move to stop them, which was probably for the best. With Zhang Hui there, it couldn't touch anyone, as he is the most active throne on the front lines lately. Every expert of the alien race knows his strength well, and just as the group began to depart, a gray domain suddenly expanded, attempting to contain the violent energy clashing between the two thrones. Despite his efforts, the shockwave still caused the earth to tremble for hundreds of miles around. Meanwhile, the rest of the group prepared to continue purging whatever evil remained in the area. Yang Xiao left the task to the protagonist, suggesting that Chun Lin should send her summoned creature ahead. He took a moment to reflect on the plan and decided that it was, in fact, quite feasible. Deep down, he worried that without improvement, he would struggle to face even a four-ringed evil entity. And so, he decided to let Diana go off on her own to eliminate the remaining evil. Yang Xiao looked at him with clear excitement, admitting he never expected his third summon to be an angel. The sheer terror of an angel's combat power, he noted, is no less than that of the Black Wolf. If she ascends to a throne in the future, it would mean adding 2 throne-level powers to the human race. Thinking on this, Yang Xiao added that the alien race believes they've uncovered all of humanity's trump cards through traitors. But in reality, those were merely the cards the humans chose to reveal intentionally. It was a way to make them feel confident and in control, only to later teach them a very harsh lesson. He clearly values our protagonist, as he revealed nearly every internal detail of the plan to him. He had no more questions. The full picture of this complex game had finally become clear to him. Since the news couldn't be hidden, the human race simply went with the flow and set a massive trap. The first step was to purge all the elite evil forces invading their rear lines. And finally, they would lure an alien throne to its death in the backlands. The cost, however, is that some geniuses will inevitably die as part of this grand scheme. They are little more than children, really, but that is the brutal nature of war between civilizations. At that moment, Black Name and Diana return from their mission to eliminate the evil entities. Diana returns to her normal state and flies to his side, tightly gripping his hand with her small one. She looks just like his daughter. Meanwhile, after 10 hours of intense fighting, the gray domain finally dissipates. We see the young man treading through the void, crossing vast distances instantly, though his aura is now extremely weak. Yang Xiao immediately approached him to ask, "Brother Zhang, what is the situation?" He simply laughed, claiming a mere alien throne could be suppressed with just a flick of his wrist. How could there possibly be a problem? Zhang's tone was utterly dismissive, as if the very idea was beneath him. Beside him, Diana silently began to channel her sacred radiance, her focus entirely on the task at hand. She could clearly feel that this young man was suffering from a severe erosion caused by a corrupt power. Zhang Hui frowned in surprise, asking, "Little girl, can even the injuries of a throne be healed by you?" "Wait, you're an angel, don't stop now. Please, keep it going for just a few more seconds." Diana simply shook her head. Her sacred power, though potent, had finally reached its limit and run dry. The corrupt erosion of a throne is truly a terrifying thing, far beyond the reach of ordinary magic. Even if the sacred power could contain it, it could only manage to dissipate a tiny fraction of the damage. Hearing this, Zhang Hui forcefully suppressed his discomfort and let out a long, helpless sigh. After all, he was still carrying far too much weight on his shoulders, a burden few could truly understand. Our protagonist's eyes were filled with confusion, wondering if all those at the throne level were like this. Yang Xiao quickly changed the subject, saying, "Brother Zhang, allow me to introduce you to someone. This is Chun Ling. She is the primary assassination target of the alien race." Zhang Hui instantly shifted his gaze toward her, his eyes narrowing with sudden interest. "So, are you the one who can, at the same level, press my head into the ground and beat me?" He was completely lost, while she instead looked at Black Name, who was crouching quietly to the side. Her eyes lit up with genuine excitement as she exclaimed, "What a powerful wolf. Let me sit on him," she said, about to fly forward, but Black Name instantly dodged, clearly unwilling to comply. Zhang Hui's face froze in disbelief. What on earth is the meaning of this? He couldn't believe it. Was a mere wolf actually showing disgust toward a throne-level being? "If I can't manage to do it today, I'll start writing my name backward," he declared with stubborn pride. He was just about to move forward by force, but Yang Xiao quickly stepped in to stop him. "Brother Zhang, you really mustn't do that. She is the future pillar of all China. We simply cannot allow her to start harboring any kind of grudge against us." Zhang Hui looked at Yang Xiao gloomily for a moment, then turned away and crossed his arms in silence. He felt slighted. Despite his many contributions to the human race, he wasn't even allowed to sit on a wolf. "Let's go," he muttered, and with that, he began to fly slowly toward the Yanshan base. Our protagonist and Yang Zhao's alliance followed him closely until they reached Yang Zhao's private office. Once inside, Zhang Hui sat motionless in the main seat, his presence filling the room. Acting as if he were in his own home, Yang Xiao asked, "Brother Zhang, how is the situation at the front? Has it worsened again?" He wondered, noting how Zhang Hui had occupied the seat of honor all these years. "Brother Zhang, have you been staying in the rear to suppress your family's curse and prepare for the reincarnation? We see that any changes on the front lines must be understood through careful coordination. I fear the Bai tribe will launch another fierce offensive to wear down our vital strength," Zhang Hui admitted. "They do this periodically, sacrificing tens of thousands of warriors each time, and even thrones fall in the process. Relying on their vast technology, they trade one life for another, but for the human race, it is completely different. Every warrior who dies is a profound loss. It is a cycle of pure, unrelenting desperation. This is especially true for those geniuses with hidden professions who are destined to become 9 reincarnation experts. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhang Hui tossed over a storage bag filled with life crystals and various resources. The potential of your summoned creature is terrifying, so naturally, we won't be stingy with our support. He added that the resources they were obligated to provide would eventually far exceed even these. Yang Xiao smiled as he accepted the gift, feeling genuinely moved by the clear appreciation Zhang Hui showed him. He knew that if he chose to develop his powers in secret and then suddenly reveal them, he might surprise everyone. However, he also realized he would likely be killed by a single strike from an enemy race's throne. While exposing his talent now was dangerous, he trusted that the human race would never stand idly by. They weren't just using their trump cards to mobilize protection, they were also granting him 500 life crystals. They even handed over a chain circle fruit worth 1,000 contribution points, without a second thought. We see that humanity values him not just for the summoned creature's power, but for his true potential. It is his unique talent, after all, that grants such terrifying strength to those he summons. After chatting with Yang Xiao for a while longer, our protagonist said his goodbyes and took his leave. Returning to the mountain, he found Black Name and handed over every life crystal in the storage bag. Immediately, Black Name erupted into a spectacular display of dark, flickering black flames. As the creature devoured the crystals, its evolution value jumped by 1766 points, a third of what it needed. Guided by Xia Yi's knowledge of the local beasts, he decided to head deeper into the mountains to hunt. Over the following days, the level 50 mutant beasts in the Bailiang Mountains were systematically wiped out. Black Name devoured the crystal cores of over 100 high-level beasts, ranging from level 16 to 60. The creature grew by 15 meters, and to be honest, its 30-point attribute boost was even more impressive. Back at the headquarters, everyone was sincerely happy to see such rapid progress. With the death of these giant beasts, the pressure on the surrounding city began to lift significantly. The threat of a massive riot was finally neutralized, reduced to the lowest level possible. The rest of the area simply needs to be cleared out slowly over time. The Bailiang Mountains will remain a safe zone for the next few years. Yang Xiao nodded with a smile, though in his heart, he knew things were far from over as they began to gather. The students, they hardly dare to venture into the mountains anymore and have retreated to the base. In just a few days, they have managed to kill fewer than 50 mutant beasts. If this continues, it won't be long before those giant beasts launch a full-scale attack. Now that the pressure on the Enshan base has eased considerably, he is gathering people to support the Guzan base. An hour later, Yang Xiao called our protagonist into his office as soon as he returned. He told Chen that since the giant beasts of the Bailiang Mountains had been eliminated by him, he planned to send him to the Guzan base to assist with the cleanup efforts there. Chen nodded without a moment's hesitation, as he had been worried there were no more giant beasts left to kill here. In fact, he had already planned to find an excuse to travel to other bases to test his strength. Level 40 mutant beasts simply can't satisfy Black Name's growing needs anymore, which is a good problem to have, really. Yang Xiao smiled at this, noting that the others should be ready to depart as well. There was no time to lose, so he told him to head out immediately. We see him following Yang Xiao toward the base's large-scale transport aircraft. 50 people have already gathered here, including familiar faces like Yifei. Ing Kong approached happily, telling Chen he knew he would definitely come to offer his support. Upon hearing that the situation at the Guzan base was critical, he had agreed to come without a second thought. Yifei walked over smiling toward Diana, who was holding Chen hand, calling her a perfect little angel. She should still be in that stage. Chen, you aren't planning on doing anything strange to her, are you? Diana looked up at him with curiosity in her eyes, asking what exactly those strange things were. She wondered why her master wouldn't be allowed to do strange things to her. In an instant, countless eyes were fixed on him. Some were filled with envy, others with a hint of danger, and he could only feel his mouth twitch in response. He had no idea how to answer, so he simply boarded the transport plane with the others to head toward the Guzan base. At that moment, the atmosphere inside the Guzan base was incredibly somber. Every warrior was on high alert, and all the heavy weaponry had been activated. We see many students gathered together, discussing the situation in hushed voices. They wondered if they should even stay, now that the mutant beasts had begun to gather. An attack was definitely coming, and the military had already given them permission to leave. To be honest, there seemed to be no way to clear out all those mutant beasts now. It felt pointless to stay, and some people had already chosen to abandon the post. There was simply no way around it. Tens of thousands of mutant beasts were rushing toward them. Who could possibly stop them? His teammates sighed constantly, searching for any excuse to justify their fear. Faced with the urge to flee, Wang Feng simply clenched his fists in silence. Shen spoke up, reminding them that his family was still in Wu City. Even if the mutant beasts went on a rampage and staying meant certain death, he refused to leave. There were tens of millions of people living in Wu City, after all. Even though they had done their best to evacuate them over the last few days, the majority were still in the city. If they couldn't stop the mutant beasts, the disaster would spread far beyond just one city. Just then, a sky-blue transport plane cut through the clouds, descending slowly toward the airport at the mountain base. We returned to Fog Mountain, where Commander Chao Yu and a group of officers were already waiting on the tarmac. Upon seeing Yang Xiao disembark with the students, the commander immediately rushed forward in excitement. "General Yang, we've finally been waiting for you," he exclaimed. Evidently, he was well aware of Yang Xiao's identity as a high-level transfer expert. Yang Xiao felt quite helpless, reminding old Chao that his curse hadn't been lifted yet, so he shouldn't expect him to turn the tide. Hearing this, Chao Yu's face was instantly clouded with a look of deep sadness. The situation was critical. Countless beasts were gathering in 4 areas, led by a giant creature nearly at level 70, planning a multi-pronged attack. This made a defense difficult, and he sighed, wondering why the pressure at the ensign base seemed so much lighter in comparison. Yang Xiao simply smiled, explaining that the high-level beasts in the mountain range had been wiped out and that he was the one responsible. As he spoke, he stepped aside and pointed toward Chen Lin. Chao Yu immediately brushed past Yang Xiao to greet the young man with fervor. He mentioned his grandson was Chen Lin's roommate before leading him toward the logistics department to see the items General Yang had promised. Several soldiers brought out large black crates, and Chao Yu smiled, telling Chen Lin that everything inside was now his. He was invited to inspect the warehouse at his leisure. Chen Lin nodded in thanks and found the crates filled with rare metals and life crystals. He summoned the silver disc and began fusing the materials. Soon, the armor's weight reached 163 tons, causing the steel floor to buckle beneath him. After the fusion, the disc gained 8 layers of armor enhancement and 8 layers of wind characteristics, bringing the total to 10 layers. At this point, he could instantly kill any enemy below level 50, and he had even gained the ability to alter his appearance and size at will. Satisfied and eager to test his new power on mutant beasts, he noted that fusing over 100 rare metals had multiplied his combat strength. He then followed Chao Yu to an open area at the Fog Mountain base, where more than 100 people were already gathered. We see a familiar figure, Su Lin. Beneath her long, ice-colored hair was a delicate, pale face and a proud, upright posture, prompting him to offer a friendly greeting. She gave a brief reply as Chao Yu stepped forward with a serious expression, explaining that these mutant beasts had gathered yesterday under a level 69 Darkhorn giant. They were heading in 4 directions to split their attack, making it difficult for the defense to concentrate, as each path was led by at least 2 giant beasts. Targeting Fog Mountain, Fog View, and Cloud River, their task was to intercept the stragglers, reducing their numbers to relieve the pressure on the main defense line. The operation was to be divided into 8 groups of 20 people each, and when asked if there were questions, everyone responded in unison that there were none. Chao Yu immediately began naming the teams, but then Yang Xiao stepped forward and added that Chen Lin would act alone, knowing his power was on another level. Chen Lin had no objections, though those around him were filled with doubt, wondering what made him so special that he didn't even need the teamwork required of instructors. 2 minutes later, the 8 groups were fully formed. Chen Lin summoned the 100-meter-tall black flame and charged toward the mountain range. In the mountains, the giant black wolf ran wildly, while Diana clung to his neck with both hands, calling out to him as they sped along. Her small body fluttered in the wind like an innocent, newborn angel. She was full of curiosity and quite unwilling to remain tucked away in the dark realm's summoning space. Naturally, he wouldn't force her to stay inside. Meanwhile, in the mountain range where smoke and dust billowed, countless oversized mutant beasts crushed mud and rock, toppling giant trees and leaving a path of destruction hundreds of kilometers long. A literal flood of monsters was advancing, led by 3 terrifying giant beasts, each thousands of meters in length. They walked with their heads held high, shrouded in a fierce aura, with raw power flowing through the shadows that surrounded them. With countless mutant beasts beneath their feet, the earth for over 100,000 meters trembled constantly under their weight. The momentum was both terrifying and grand. Inside the headquarters, many officers watched through drones, their expressions growing increasingly solemn. Suddenly, an alarm blared as a figure 1,000 meters in size appeared on the monitors. A violent black wolf, surrounded by jet-black flames, burst out from the flank in an instant. Its speed was extremely fast, almost too fast for the cameras to track. The air was torn apart and exploded, and everything within a diameter of dozens of kilometers was decimated by that terrifying force. A fierce roar echoed through the heavens and the earth, shaking the very air around them. The sound waves resonated in layers, and we see every mutant beast in the vicinity instantly deterred by the sound. Stopping with a look of pure curiosity, Chao Yu stared intently at the screen as if he couldn't believe his eyes. Is it really that large? The mission, after all, was clearly meant to be a simple ambush on a solitary beast. He wondered why Chen Lin had attacked directly, especially since there were 3 giants there, one standing over 800 meters tall. 2 magical colossi, winding and massive, were shrouded in crimson spiritual flames as they slowly began to move. They demanded to know where this beast had come from and why it dared to stand in their way. Black Flame, however, offered only an icy, senseless silence before a black flame exploded, spreading 10,000 meters wide. A thick, suffocating intent to kill began to flow slowly within the spiritual domain he had created. The flames began devouring everything, snuffing out the lives of every level 40 mutant beast within range. A fierce shadow of a beast, nearly 3,000 meters tall, condensed above him, radiating a terrifying, gray, deathly intent. His double rows of eyes snapped open, staring down the three giant beasts with predatory focus. In that moment, a primal fear gripped their minds, as if those eyes alone had the power to erase them from existence. This was the sky-refining death prison, a realm where, quite frankly, nothing is permitted to survive. Even the undead, who possess no true life to lose, would find their final definition of death within these walls. From her place in the air, Diana didn't hesitate to cast a direct divine blessing upon her companion. The divine seal on her forehead flickered, and a surge of golden light began to amplify his already staggering power. To be perfectly honest, the black flame we see before us now has become something far too terrifying to describe. Even though her holy power was a distant affinity, it still managed to slightly bolster Black Flame's dark strength. Under this divine increase, the hellish sky-refining death prison instantly expanded by another 20,000 meters. The power of the Black Flame doubled in an instant, becoming something incomparably terrifying to behold. In just a few seconds, hundreds of level 40 mutant beasts were reduced to nothing but drifting ash. Even the golden stone of life, as sturdy as it was, found itself swallowed whole by the relentless flames. They were practically begging for death as they prepared to attack and kill him. The three giant beasts let out a collective roar and charged forward with everything they had. But right at that moment, we see the sky and the earth suddenly plunge into total darkness. A faint, ghostly moonlight descended, bringing with it a chill that felt like a horror story come to life. It was a cold so deep that it made every single mutant beast in the area tremble with fear. Diana rose high into the sky, her face solitary and distant as she completely ignored the massive enemy before her. A full moon floated behind her, accompanied by 9 interlocking rings of deep crimson, while the ring of final annihilation circled her body. In a flash, she struck out, cutting directly toward the giant demon-tongue beast. The demon-tongue beast roared, pushing its power to the limit as strange, ghostly lines appeared across its ghoul-like skin. However, the ring of final annihilation sliced through it with ease, leaving a wound dozens of meters deep that caused the creature intense pain. The beast tried to halt its advance and strike the ring with a massive palm, but the weapon nimbly dodged the blow. Under Diana's mental control, the ring sliced upward along the creature's arm, tearing open a deep scar 100 meters long. Seeing that Diana had already engaged her target, Black Mane, not wanting to be outdone, rushed toward the remaining 2 giants. The lesser beasts blocking his path were simply tossed aside, their bones shattering upon impact. The giant golem beast let out a frenzied roar, swinging its massive arm covered in crimson spiritual scales. It struck out with immense force, aiming directly for the black wolf as he attempted to dodge. The frenzied shadow needed no instructions. Its demonic palm, burning with black flames, struck back instantly. He tore directly through the golem's spiritual scales, leaving 4 deep wounds that reached all the way to the bone. Nearby, the giant void beast saw its opening and unhinged its horrifying jaws. It launched a sneak attack, but Black Mane reacted with incredible speed, instantly raising his claw to strike back. Without missing a beat, he aimed for the creature's skull and bit down hard. The semi-red armor shattered under the pressure, and his fangs sank deep into the flesh. Purple, poisonous blood erupted as the void beast howled in agony, coiling its body tightly around Black Mane. Countless sharp bone spines were unleashed against him, but they were all deflected by an immovable layer of golden light. Black Mane simply hoisted the void beast up and threw it aside with terrifying strength. It slammed into a mountainside, where it was buried under an avalanche of falling rocks. He followed it down, crushing the rocks with his paws and pinning the beast's head to the ground while he tore at it savagely. At the same time, we see a swarm of cloaked flying beasts diving through the air toward Diana. Her expression remained completely unchanged as she commanded the ring of final annihilation to spin back toward her. The 4 cutting rings rushed into the dark crowd of flying monsters, crisscrossing through the air with lethal precision. One by one, the cloaked beasts were decapitated, falling from the sky like rain. Just then, the demon-tongue beast suddenly lunged at Black Mane, hoping to catch him off guard. It wanted to eliminate him first, but Black Mane let out a fierce roar and swung his claws without a hint of fear. Still pinning the void beast's head with his foot, he instantly became locked in a brutal struggle with the demon-tongue giant. The 4 colossi fought relentlessly, and as they struck one another, the earth cracked into 10,000 pieces while the very sky seemed to peel away. The demon-tongue beast recoiled with a terrible roar, and seeing the carnage, the lesser disguised beasts fled in a panic, leaving the headquarters in a sudden, eerie silence. Cao Yu watched the scene in total disbelief, thinking to himself that this wolf was far more ferocious than he ever imagined. At only level 20, he is already capable of holding his own against 3 giant beasts at once. The level gap is a staggering 46 points, a fact that made many of the watching officials swallow hard. With their eyes fixed on the screen in disbelief, we see the mountains have been transformed into a purgatory of burning black flames. The giant beasts fought with a desperate madness, creating a momentum that felt truly transcendental. The shadow of the ferocious beast loomed over 1,000 meters high, dominating the landscape. It radiated a terrifying, tyrannical aura that seemed to devour millions of lives, making the air feel almost suffocating. At that moment, high in the sky, Diana came to a sudden halt. The hundreds of flying disguised beasts had been completely wiped out, their broken bodies piling up below as her annihilation rings began to merge. The crimson light grew more dazzling as a terrifying power began to circulate, literally annihilating the air around it. The rings joined together to form a single, dark crimson circle 100 meters long, suspended directly in front of Diana. A smoky breath that terrifies every beast in Tigu began to spread, and the true force of crimson annihilation spun with the ring. The silver moon behind her was gradually stained a deep red, casting a bloody light across the world as if it were falling into hell. And so, the strongest form of the final smoke destruction of the round moon finally descended. Diana's voice, cold and utterly relentless, echoed slowly across the battlefield. Accept your death. In an instant, the dark red light of the Wheel of Truth of final annihilation flashed with blinding speed. Transforming into a terrifying red shadow that tore through the sky, it surged toward the defenseless giant beast. At the moment of contact, the Wheel of Truth of final annihilation didn't slow down for even a second. It tore straight through the 1,000-meter-long body of the giant beast as if it weren't even there. Within a few short seconds, the massive creature was reduced to nothing more than blurred, unrecognizable remains. A single strike had directly ended the life of the level 65 giant beast, which, to be honest, is quite the statement. Even I couldn't help but be surprised by such a display. The defense-piercing effect of Diana's final smoke destruction form is truly terrifying. It's almost as if armor doesn't exist to her, and she still has an even more fearsome sun and moon form. However, we see the crimson round moon begin to dim slightly at this moment. Obviously, a move of this magnitude takes a significant toll on Diana. But she still had energy left, and the Wheel of Truth, controlled by her mind, instantly lunged toward the nearby ghost word giant beast. The giant beast's mind practically exploded with terror the moment it saw her coming. It immediately sprouted thicker, harder scales, but they were useless against the Wheel of Truth, which instantly split its body in two. Immediately after, the crimson circular moon in the sky could no longer sustain itself and rapidly collapsed. Diana's slender, perfect form shifted instantly back into her childlike state. A trace of innocence returned to her face, replacing that distant and lonely expression. She blinked and quickly fluttered her wings, sobbing as she searched for her master's figure. Meanwhile, Blackmane also made quick work of the giant golem. Blackmane stood tall amidst the sea of jet-black fire as the dark flames devoured the fallen giant's body. Back in the command room, Cao Yu felt a little lightheaded from the sheer scale of it all. To her, it seemed simply unbelievable, as this was originally just a mission to intercept a small portion of the enemy. But he had managed to intercept and scatter every mutant beast, single-handedly wiping out an entire zone of tens of thousands. His impact was several times greater than that of everyone else combined, which is quite the feat, to say the least. In this way, the danger threatening their advance toward the objective would finally be resolved. Cao Yu's face radiated with excitement, finally dispelling much of the sadness she had been carrying. Originally, we see that the defenses might not have been enough to hold out. But now, there is hope, as the jet-black fire in the mountains soon devours all the corpses and life essence stones. The flames then return to Blackmane's body, and under this converted energy, he grows another meter while his attributes increase. At the same time, this process also grants his master an extra point in every attribute. The giant's converted energy isn't much for Blackmane anymore, but for a human, it's a different story. Even receiving only a third of that power, the boost he feels is anything but small. Currently, his attributes are not much worse than those of a level 30 occultist, which is impressive, to say the least. With the terrifying blessing of the sinister butterfly, he can now destroy level 40 mutant beasts right alongside her. As for the level 50 beasts, it only takes a dozen more hits to face down the weaker giants among them. He realizes this is no longer a problem, and as he thinks this, the black spirit returns to its normal state and approaches. Suddenly, a distant and heavy roar echoes, spreading for countless miles across the black cloud range and reaching every ear. An attack is coming, and Xun Lin looks solemnly into the distance toward the source of that sound. He wonders, naturally, what kind of method was used to ignore such a vast distance. Accompanying this heavy, distant roar, the atmosphere shifts entirely. Tens of thousands of mutant beasts roar in response, their gazes turning ferociously toward the edge of the mountain range. They are heading for the cities, the very places where tens of millions of people live their lives. Kaoyu's face darkens instantly as she realizes the gravity of the situation. It seems the giant beast plans to completely scatter the attack to overwhelm them. If they do that, the individual impact of the mutant beasts will be smaller, but far more widespread. Deep down, she knows it is absolutely impossible for them to deal with everything at once. In other words, there will always be powerful mutant beasts capable of breaking through the defenses. And once they do, it would only take them a few minutes to utterly destroy a city. After analyzing the situation, it seems likely they will target the nearest zones first. Specifically, the 5 cities located within the Black Cloud range. Kaoyu's expression grew solemn. They had originally judged that the giant shadow beast would attack Gushian City and the Guzan base at 3 o'clock. Because of that assessment, the vast majority of their firepower and personnel were stationed at those specific locations. The 3 adjacent cities further away were prepared for defense, but their numbers were woefully insufficient to resist such a massive horde. With the giant shadow beast attacking so suddenly, there is simply no time to transport heavy energy cannons or high-power weaponry. She orders the mobilization of all available reinforcements, telling the students and instructors in the mountains to return immediately. But before she could even finish speaking, Kaoyu suddenly stopped. We see that on the screen, there were already 3 separate groups of people in trouble. In a very short time, they had been surrounded by thousands of mutant beasts, falling into a truly desperate situation. To be honest, it looks as though they will find it difficult enough just to save themselves. Yang Xiao frowned at the sight, as he had a very bad feeling about how this was unfolding. He realized that these giant beasts are capable of developing a dangerous level of intelligence. Underestimating them is a complete mistake, as intelligent giants, like this shadow beast that knows how to plot, are not as rare as one might hope. Nothing like this had ever happened before, but just then, an urgent request for contact arrived from Chen Ning. The officer in charge of the operation connected the call without a moment's hesitation. The request was simple: give me the exact location of the giant shadow beast. As soon as those words were spoken, everyone in the room understood exactly what he intended to do. Kaoyu immediately ordered her team to share the locations of the mutant beasts detected by their thousands of drones. With the giant shadow beast's movements tracked, the operation map began to look like a complex, intelligent brain. Out in the mountains, we see Chen Ning take a quick look at the data. His face grew solemn. The situation was clearly urgent, judging by the sea of red codes on the screen. It was plain to see, and without a moment's hesitation, he made his decision. He chose to send Black Man off in the direction of Yun City. Chen Ning touched him gently, telling him to go and keep moving until he reached the city. Protect those two, he said, as Black Man whimpered softly and rubbed against his master one last time. And the very instant he turned around, the creature launched itself forward. Not long after, he had completely vanished from sight, heading toward the city. Then he turned to Diana, telling her that she would also have to act on her own. Diana nodded and flew off in the direction Chen Ning pointed out. A drone in the air immediately followed her to track her progress. Deep down, she knew she carried 3 types of power: the great sun, the full moon, and the sacred. Because of this, she still had more than enough strength left to fight. Once his summons had dispersed to intercept the threat, Chen Ning himself shot out from the area. He headed straight toward the nearest target he could find. His speed was a bit slower than Amy's or Diana's, which was only natural, really. Therefore, by choosing a closer target, he could arrive before the beasts could launch their attack. At that same moment, a shrill alarm suddenly echoed through 5 cities, ringing out across the Black Cloud Mountains. The civilian beasts began to riot. All residents immediately retreated to the shelters, listening to the voices echoing from the sky. Fear was visible in everyone's eyes. The memory of terrible casualties from fallen cities forced countless people to rush toward safety. Very quickly, every street in the city became congested with the panicked crowd. Fortunately, we see military personnel stationed at every junction to maintain some semblance of order. The defense barriers on the outskirts were deployed rapidly, and numerous heavy weapons were installed in record time. Then, they waited with bated breath. The missile system was locked and ready. High-altitude energy cannons were already charging up for the coming conflict. The entire city had entered a state of total preparation to resist the impending impact. Meanwhile, our story returns to the Black Cloud Mountains, which had already descended into a tragic slaughter. 20 people from the Balin Academy found themselves surrounded and hunted by hundreds of these civilian beasts. And as the battle moved further out, it only seemed to attract even greater numbers. 3 instructors were forced to join forces, barely managing to resist the overwhelming tide. Then there was Xiao Yun, the giant beast clad in black armor. He massacred the crowd of beasts without showing the slightest hint of fear, his body shrouded in thick, pitch-black fluids. His battle halberd swung constantly, cutting through the nearest enemies while the terrifying black fluids swirled around him. It was as if the very source of his life had been exposed to the outside world. Every strike dealt devastating damage as Xiao Yun pushed deeper into the heart of the carnage. Soon, he was surrounded by nothing but monsters, leaving him with no apparent way to survive. He muttered constantly under his breath as the pitch-black darkness gradually filled his eyes. Kill, kill, kill. He told himself that if Chun Ning killed 1,000, then he would kill 1,000 as well. You civilian beasts, he growled. Not a single one of you is getting out of here alive. Just after Xiao Yun had leaped from the fighter jet, he noticed his smartwatch was displaying Chun Ning's current stats. The number of civilian beasts Chun Ning had killed was already reaching nearly 1,000. He simply couldn't imagine how Chun Ning had managed to pull that off. As he tightened his grip, the more he thought about it, the more a certain madness began to flicker in Xiao Yun's eyes. The power of that pitch-black fluid swirling around him became even more terrifying than before. His pace quickened. Soon, his entire body was encased in the dark substance, making him look like a monster himself as he slaughtered the beasts. The 16 remaining students from Beilong watched as Xiao Yun vanished into the distance, and they grit their teeth in determination. Damn it, one of them muttered. Are you really going to keep risking everything like this? Fine then. If he was willing to throw his life away, they weren't about to be left behind. He huffed, refusing to let a simple heartbeat or a rival get the better of him. With that, Li Long struggled to his feet, though it clearly wasn't an easy task. A sickening snap echoed as he forced a broken bone back into place. He pulled out a recovery agent, bit down on it, and swallowed the contents, glass bottle and all. In an instant, he forced his body to explode with every ounce of its remaining potential. With a roar, he threw himself at a level 50 civilian beast, barely blocking the creature's jagged blade. At this point, we have to wonder, shouldn't they have considered retreating to their original position?